In the temple, no gods were worshipped. Instead, a colossal and bizarre creature stood, an upright frog donning a samurai helmet, towering far above Ishiyama Yokozuna. Where is this place? Shao Chun eyed Ishiyama Yokozuna warily. This is the Kappa Labyrinth, Ishiyama Yokozuna explained. It connects to any level you've visited before, but you must first solve their puzzles. The name of the Lux weapon, I see it clearly, altering the font makes it obscure to many, he added cryptically. Shao Chun arched an eyebrow. He had long suspected something off about this man, and now he had proof. According to the game settings, Ishiyama was supposed to be a brute, yet he understood these puzzles intimately. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben, however, remained engrossed in their conversation, oblivious to the suspicion brewing. Research. Without hesitation, Shao Chun raised his wrist and activated his broken watch. A burst of light erupted. Whoosh! The four-handed overlord emerged, stretching his muscles. This place feels off. Better transform first to be safe. Ishiyama Yokozuna's eyes narrowed. Didn't expect you to turn into such a giant. Impressive. Tension crackled between them. Tien Zoben rushed over, forcing a smile. Hey, let's not be so tense. We're all friends here. The four-handed overlord grabbed Tien Zoben and leaped onto a pillar, his gaze locked on Ishiyama Yokozuna. We just met, forgive my caution. You shouldn't suspect me, Ishiyama Yokozuna sighed. This is all the work of the villain's spiritual power, it's making us enemies. Tien Zoben interjected. Yeah. The villain has countless tricks, form switching, mind control, clones. Too many transformations. The four-handed overlord, already on edge, paid no heed. Unnoticed, the pillar behind him subtly deformed, morphing into a massive dark blue king cobra. With a soft hiss, the serpent's icy breath slithered over the four-handed overlord. Villain. Ishiyama Yokozuna recoiled, pointing past the four-handed overlord. Ha! The four-handed overlord released Tien Zoben and spun around. The enemy unfurled itself, towering at 6 meters tall, its forked tongue flickering. Baji collapse. Double fist strike. The four-handed overlord flexed his arms, muscles bulging to twice their size. He clenched his fists and slammed them into the ground, sending deep cracks sprawling beneath him. What terrifying strength! The villain's pupils shrank. You'd make excellent prey. Boom! The four-handed overlord launched a devastating punch, striking the enemy's skull with the force of an earthquake. A deafening hum filled the temple. The villain's head shattered into countless fragments of digital data. His body flickered and vanished instantly. Too weak, the four-handed overlord muttered, kneeling to catch his breath. Tien Zoben glanced at Ishiyama Yokozuna. Aren't villains supposed to be stronger? Ishiyama Yokozuna, still in shock, muttered, unbelievable. The four-handed overlord wasn't done. That ridiculous frog expects me to solve a riddle, he scoffed, raising a fist and shattering the massive statue in front of him. Boom! As the idol crumbled, a golden portal shimmered at its base. Tien Zoben's eyes widened. It worked. That's our way to the next level. That's right. Smirking, the four-handed overlord stepped back as Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben approached the portal. But Ishiyama Yokozuna hesitated. If I'm not wanted here, I won't force myself to stay, he sighed. The four-handed overlord narrowed his eyes. A strategic retreat? He let out a dry chuckle. Fine. Get lost. Come on, don't be so hostile. Tien Zoben protested. We should trust Ishiyama. Fine. The four-handed overlord crossed his arms. But if he causes trouble, you're responsible, Zoben. Ishiyama Yokozuna smiled gratefully, stepping onto the portal. Meanwhile, in the real world, Mark yawned as he glanced at his still-running laptop. These guys don't even turn off their computers. Are games really that fun? He absent-mindedly picked up the game case, flipping through its manual. Bad Bandits, the embodiment of fear. Yokozuna Ishiyama, a warrior who never retreats. The old lore remained unchanged. Boom! Mark pressed his finger against the keyboard, pausing the entire game. Whoosh! Just as the four-handed overlord and the others stepped onto the floating cursor, soaring above the first floor of the arena, the cursor suddenly froze. Everything around them stopped, motionless, as if time itself had been suspended. What's happening? The four-handed overlord strained to move but found himself completely paralyzed. Whose power is this? It's terrifying. Ishiyama Yokozuna scanned the surroundings in disbelief. Wait, did someone just pause this single-player game? Realization dawned on the four-handed overlord. His panic grew. Grandpa, can you hear me?
Grandpa.
Meanwhile, in the real world, Mark hovered his finger over the power button of his laptop, hesitating. A strange feeling washed over him, like someone was calling out to him.
Grandpa. Grandpa.
On the laptop screen, the pixelated forms of four-handed overlord, Tien Zoben, and Tien Xiaowen were vividly displayed.
No way.
Xiaoban, Xiaochun, and Xiaowen. Mark's jaw dropped as he slumped into his chair.
Grandpa, it's me, Xiaochun.
We've been pulled into the game world. Don't turn off the computer or we'll disappear too, the four-handed overlord pleaded. How am I supposed to communicate? Thinking quickly, Mark grabbed his headset, slipped it on, and activated the microphone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hearing his grandfather's voice, the four-handed overlord sighed in relief. How can I help? Mark asked directly. Check the manual and look for online guides. Also, don't delete the game. Keep the computer powered on. Four-handed overlord instructed without hesitation.
This game is still in beta.
There are no guides online yet. I'll check the manual and ensure nothing disrupts the system, Mark assured them. With that, he navigated the game's interface, activated a lightning protection function, and flipped open the manual.
The world resumed.
Whoosh! The cursor continued its ascent. Ishiyama Yokozuna let out a sigh of relief. So this really is a game world. Tien Zoben responded absent-mindedly while keeping his focus on their surroundings. As the cursor finally stopped, they arrived at a vast arena, surrounded by towering empty stands. Lux Broadcasting Station. Tien Zoben and Ishiyama Yokozuna exclaimed in unison. The four-handed overlord stood alone in the center of the ring, fists clenched, scanning the environment with sharp eyes. Where are the villains?
Boom.
A skeletal figure appeared in the stands, legs crossed, observing them with an eerie grin. Villain, drop the act and show yourself. Ishiyama Yokozuna demanded, pointing at the figure. Whoosh! Without warning, the skeleton disintegrated into a swirling mass of dark gray smoke and shot toward Ishiyama Yokozuna. Swish! The mist coalesced into the form of a massive serpentine shadow, a ruthless bandit in disguise. Instead of striking Yokozuna, it abruptly lunged at the four-handed overlord.
Boom!
The four-handed overlord reacted instantly, his four powerful arms seizing the serpent by the neck. The creature bared its deadly fangs, aiming for his throat, but he held firm, locking it in place. Whoosh! The bandit coiled tightly around the four-handed overlord, attempting to constrict him, but only his limbs and head remained free.
Xiaochun.
Tien Xiaowen gasped, grabbing a massive kunai and preparing to hurl it at the villain's neck. Meanwhile, Ishiyama Yokozuna silently crept toward Tien Xiaowen. Swish! A gleaming blade pierced through Ishiyama Yokozuna's chest. His body flickered, his life counter vanishing. He turned in disbelief to see Tien Zoben standing behind him, gripping a samurai sword.
Why?
Ishiyama Yokozuna whispered.
Tien Zoben smiled.
Sure, Sean was a warrior who never backed down. He wouldn't cower in fear. Also, when Grandpa paused the game, you didn't react like the rest of us. That's because you already knew, you weren't affected by the pause. You were talking to me just now to make me trust you, to lower my guard, weren't you?
Tien Zoben accused.
Ishiyama Yokozuna's face twisted with fury.
You? Tien Zoben's voice hardened. Reveal your true form, villain. Whoosh!
Before their eyes, Ishiyama Yokozuna morphed into another being, a towering warrior clad in samurai armor, his head bald except for a single ponytail. Though aged, his presence radiated unyielding power. This was no ordinary foe. This was the villain's strongest form.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another video of FanFic Canon. Before we dive in, I want to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy our content. It really helps a lot. Also, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Let's get started.
Damn brat, the villain was holding a long sword and directly aimed at Tien Zoben. Taste. The number of lives on Tien Zoben's shoulders also went out. The figures of the two appeared looming at the same time, and finally disappeared together. Tien Zoben? Tien Xiaowen shouted Tien Zoben's name and panicked instantly. She kept looking around, in the auditorium, and off the stage. If you can't find it, you can't find Tien Zoben at all. Tien Zoben died in the game, which also means that he really died. Small class. The four-handed overlord was stunned at first. Before his eyes, his September 13 was unhappy with Tien Zoben, and he felt guilty and indebted in an instant. Even 1 second before Tien Zoben died. The four-handed overlord still did not say in person that Tien Zoben's previous strategy was right, and he was right. In other words, the last memory of Zoben left to him. It's just a memory of reprimanding Zoben. It's like when your best friend dies, and you and him parted ways for the last time, the pain is heart-wrenching. The villain just sneered, this is the end of disobeying me? You too, it's better to take me to the real world, otherwise, I will let you die without a burial. Taste? 1, 2, 3. 3 arms of the four-handed overlord bulged out steel-like muscles, and even the snake body of the vicious bandit was rapidly deformed. What? The malicious face changed? Ah! The four-handed overlord roared angrily, and as the vicious robber's snake body became more and more tense, his arms stretched out little by little until the vicious robber's body was stretched in half. Taste? The head of the snake is on the left hand, and the body of the snake is on the right. The two halves of the villain instantly turned into a pile of data codes and disappeared. Ho. The four-handed overlord's 3 arms were exhausted and slowly lowered, kneeling on one knee on the ground, panting heavily. Xiao, how is Zoben? Xiao-chan. Mark's unbelievable voice sounded and kept asking. The four-handed overlord rested for a while, then reluctantly raised his head and responded, it's just that he died in the game, it should be fine. Haha, death in the game means that he is completely dead, don't be delusional. Taste? The humanoid villain in samurai armor reappeared on the arena, and he just twisted his body lightly, by the way, I am immortal. Immortal, right? Then I'll kill you 1,000 times, 10,000 times. The four-handed overlord stood up with a face full of flesh and roared angrily. Bayu? At this time, the pattern in front of the four-handed overlord began to flicker, and along with his frozen expression, that domineering body turned into a human state. Xiao-chan. Call out? Xiao-chan unhesitatingly pulled out the Excalibur sword, the magic light surged all over his body, and the purple chi attacked. Too weak, compared to me, your form is simply vulnerable. The villain raised his palm, and a dark red hilt appeared on the palm of his hand. The elegant sword with a snow-white body was full of terrifying evil energy. Call out? Instant time? A purple figure and a dark red figure are intertwined? Cough cough. The villain instantly knelt down on one knee, a crack appeared on his chest, and he spat out a small mouthful of blood. Win, great. Tien Zoben cheered, excited. Research. Xiao-chen over there. The hand he held the Excalibur sword was unscathed. The other hand fell slowly, and as soon as it touched the broadcasting station, it turned into a bunch of code symbols. GGG, you only have 1 life left, cherish it. I have countless names. The villain turned around and looked at Xiao-chen indifferently, sarcastically. Xiao-chen also looked very ugly. 1 hand, gone? This is the first time he has experienced the taste of red-haired shanks. There. Mark frantically rummaged through the strategy, but the strategy just said that the player who played Yokozuna Ishiyama at the beginning was actually the incarnation of a vicious bandit, and he needed to see through this before he could find the cheats for customs clearance. On the last page, it says this is a beta version, for reference only. If you encounter game bugs, please report back to the staff. What is this called? Mark irritably dropped the manual, went back to his seat, put on his headphones, and kept typing on the keyboard. Xiao-chen, who lost an arm, looked at the vicious bandits who were attacking step by step with a heavy heart. Stop! Tien Zoben over there jumped high and hit the malicious body with his own body. The two fell into the ring together, and both fell into the void. Taste? The unscathed figure of the villain, and the figure 4.5 of Tien Zoben reappeared in the ring. The difference is, there is only one red light on Tien Zoben's shoulder. Xiao-chen, run away, you are the only hope among us. Tien Zoben said decisively, holding up his samurai sword. She dressed as a samurai, different from the short hair of the past, but with a touch of bangs, looking handsome. Bayu? Okay. Xiao-chen was taken aback. The small broken watch on my wrist suddenly dripped a few times, and then returned to normal. In front of the computer screen, Mark clicked on F1 to open the game background, and entered a transformation on it. Don't think about changing. When the villain saw this scene, he moved directly in front of Xiao-chen at high speed. His tied hair was scattered. He raised his samurai sword and swept towards Xiao-chen's arm, not giving any chance to transform. Stop! Tien Zoben threw the huge kunai forcefully, and immediately jumped on it. The whole body hit the villain with the weapon, and rolled down the arena with him. Goodbye, Xiao-chen, it's a pleasure to meet you. Tien Zoben waved at Xiao-chen with a smile on his face, leaving one last look of nostalgia. Small tattoo? Xiao-chen's heart only throbbed for a second. He had to endure this emotion, and quickly opened the small broken watch to choose the second alien. Ultimate Thunder? Boom! His palm captured the pattern. The light is shining. 16 die. The vicious bandit holding a samurai sword was resurrected again, appeared on the ring, hurried to the green light, and stabbed straight with his sword. Ping! The incomparably sharp katana pierced into the light, but it was as if it had touched something indestructible, and it was instantly shaken back. The vicious bandit couldn't touch the samurai sword at all. He just stepped back, his face full of shock. Crack! Kick! The ultimate Hongtian Li slowly walked out of the halo, twisting his limbs, moving his joints, and his titanium alloy skin was daunting. Revenge! Revenge! He stood there, repeating the word over and over. SHHHHHH. The vicious bandit hurriedly approached the ultimate Thunder, first switched to Orakai mode, and wrapped around the ultimate Thunder, but it couldn't stop at all. He switched to a human form again, kicked, punched, and performed all kinds of tricks together, but he still couldn't beat the ultimate Thunder. Fire! Thunder! The vicious bandit raised his finger again and placed it in front of him. The air that he blew was split due to the obstruction of his finger. The left side was actually fire, and the right side was thunder. Boom! Thunder struck and fire burned. The ultimate thunderbolt is still unscathed. But he also stared blankly at the villain, but did not do anything. Because his brain almost exploded. In his mind, countless figures of thundering thunder appeared in his mind, and the clansman died tragically in front of him. The pain of being in a high-tech, powerless, almost made him unable to control his thoughts. Just think of one word. Revenge? Even. He will also have a "Why am I in this table? You should be in this table? Go in," and so on. With a low growl, ultimate Hong Tian-Li finally controlled his thoughts and looked domineeringly at the villain who was scraping himself. The villain didn't say a word. Boom! In the end, Hong Tian-Li threw up his palms neatly and hugged the latter sweetly, and the evil crown instantly shattered into countless codes and disappeared. Taste? In the distance, the frightened vicious bandit appeared there, too. Too terrifying. Your combat power is simply too terrifying. You're just a piece of shit, too. A little weaker than the Mohath of this universe. Ultimate Hong Tian-Li said with a blank expression. Waste? The villain had never been called that in his life. His face twitched heavily, and he spread his limbs in rage. Taste? Shhhhhhh. There were 10, dozens, and 100 identical shadow clones beside him. And each shadow clone has the same sense of oppression, the same momentum. It's a bit too much. Ultimate Tian-Li became troublesome, his brows wrinkled, and his body directly turned into a large titanium alloy ball. Boom, boom, like a bowling ball, he smashed out many villains, and the same strength was enough to crush one villain, or even severely injure 2 villains, but if it rebounded on 7 or 8 villains, it was insignificant. He bounced back and forth, stunned that he couldn't kill a vicious bandit, but it only made them a little tricky. This guy is too strong. Ultimate Hong Tian-Li thought in astonishment. Shishan Yokozuna, come out and help Xiaochan. Mark in front of the computer screen, typed in the last line of code again. It's the code to clear the level directly. 913. Taste? Moment. The figure of Ishiyama Yokozuna appeared next to the ultimate Hong Tian-Li. He looked astonished, and after a few seconds he said, "Congratulations to you, brave. No, why should I say this? It's too late to explain. Ishiyama Yokozuna, your opponent is 100 villains. Do you have the confidence to fight? I'm looking for my shapeshifter." The ultimate Hong Tian-Li shouted anxiously. Although I don't know how Grandpa is doing it, he must find the shapeshifter pattern before he can leave this ghost place. 100. I'm not afraid. Ishiyama Yokozuna looked domineering and walked towards those villains. In the next second, he was swallowed by the army of villains. The ultimate thunderbolt quickly rolled into the ring of the arena, and as the ring continued to rise, he flew through the sky, came above the atmosphere, and even broke through space. On a distant satellite. Impressively neatly placed all the alien DNA. Although Hong Tian-Li didn't adapt to the universe, he barely swam over and got the shape of the shapeshifter with difficulty. Taste. When all the alien patterns are available. In the end, a look of joy appeared on Hong Tian-Li's face, and he waved his fist excitedly. It was a success. Don't want to leave. At this time, hundreds of thousands of vicious bandits flew over the atmosphere, flying in the form of giant snakes. The number of them made the scalp numb. Even the ultimate evolution of the thunder is difficult to compare. Damn, this guy's abilities are terrifying. In the end, Hong Tian-Li turned around to look. There was a hint of anxiety in his eyes. He raised his palm and patted the pattern on his chest. Call out. In an instant, his appearance switched to a shapeshifter. The shapeshifting monster immediately got into the space station with its body, found the rocket in Nita's space station, wrapped the rocket, and flew out. Boom! The moment he flew out, the space station was bitten into pieces by countless evil snipers, and immediately vanished into ashes. Want to run? Keep chasing. The villains are chasing the shapeshifting monsters one after another. Grandpa, move the mouse cursor to me. Hurry up. The shapeshifter shouted anxiously, looking at the dense army of villains behind him, goosebumps all over his body. Taste. Mark hurriedly moved the joystick, and the joystick moved the cursor to the shapeshifter. That moment, the white cursor becomes a cursor with a shapeshifter pattern. Taste. Immediately afterwards, the pattern covered the entire laptop like a tide, until it covered the mouse. Has it changed back? Mark put down the covered handle nervously and stared at this scene with a stunned expression. Quickly, the shapeshifter slowly climbed out of the laptop, fell to the ground, and gathered into its own human form. Xiaochan, where are Zoben and Xiaoan? Mark asked quickly, looking at the shapeshifter in front of him. The shapeshifter looked heavy and said, "Grandpa, I will definitely find a way to save Zoben and Xiaoan, don't worry." Saying that, he sat in front of the laptop, holding the gamepad, but he couldn't control Ishiyama Yokozuna. Look in the upper right corner. Ishiyama Yokozuna's health bar is 0. The protagonist of the F***CK game was actually killed by the villain. Now the villain in the computer screen is still staring at the shapeshifter outside the screen, and he has broken the existence of the third wall. "Grandpa, show me the set." The shapeshifter said hurriedly. Mark also hurriedly handed the set to the shapeshifter. The shapeshifting monster looked at this, the conspiracy of the vicious robbers, and found the set about the bad robbers, and was dumbfounded on the spot. Malicious, immortal, indestructible, with the power to destroy the surface, infinite clones, free deformation, manipulation of the weather, control of fire, thunder, and electricity feng shui, with a mechanical army, the world's #1 swordsman. The setting of this villain is just like not wanting money, crazy. Although he knows that there are many comic book writers who like to add random settings to their characters, it is quite terrifying that such a character actually appears. Damn, it doesn't say how to defeat the villains, even the protagonist Ishiyama Yokozuna is offline. The shapeshifter's head was sweating, and he kept looking at it. The last page says beta version, if there are bugs. Bug? If there is a bug, maybe I can take advantage of it. The shapeshifter snapped a picture of the pattern on his chest, and the transformation time was shortened again. He directly transformed into a little surprise soldier and jumped around in front of the laptop. Soon, the games folder was opened by him, and he began to query all the codes in it. Found it? Xiao Kaibing's expression became excited. Unlimited life code? Startup? Take effect? SHHHHHH. On the arena, Tien Zoben, and even Ishiyama Yokozuna appeared again, and they all looked stunned. Fu, resurrected. Tien Zoben looked at his hands in disbelief. Tien Zoben said, "It feels like it's only a second before I feel like I'm dead." Ishiyama Yokozuna's face was heavy, and he said solemnly, "Leave the villains to me to deal with, two brave men, this is not your world, let's go." But Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben wanted to say something else. The deformed monster that changed back again wrapped the laptop again, and Tien Zoben on the screen began to disappear. Call out? Off the screen, Tien Zoben appeared there wearing casual clothes. Ishiyama Yokozuna, come on. Before leaving, Tien Zoben took a step forward and gave Ishiyama Yokozuna a hug. Ishiyama Yokozuna patted his back and praised, "You are a warrior with both wisdom and courage. You have advantages that I don't have, and you will become stronger." Thanks. Tien Zoben nodded heavily, and his body began to appear looming. At last, he also appeared off-screen. "Nud is good, everyone is back." Mark wiped the sweat from his forehead and showed a happy smile. "It's not over yet." The shapeshifter got off the laptop and looked at the screen with solemn eyes, and the rest of them also looked at them one by one. Hundreds of vicious bandits, exerting different weather forces, killed Ishiyama Yokozuna infinitely. It's like doing it on purpose for everyone to see. The shapeshifter clenched his fists angrily. "It's so despicable. Just shut down." Tien Zoben immediately closed the laptop, opened the CD-ROM drive, and directly removed the game CD. On the cover of the game disc, it is a picture of Ishiyama Yokozuna confronting the evil bandits, and the background is a pole place. Evil bandit. He winked at the crowd. Post Tien Zoben violently opened the game CD. "I'm going to break this damn CD." Holding the disc in his hand, he couldn't use any force, and sighed, "I can't do it." After the transformation, Xiao Chen looked at the game disc with a thoughtful look. "There is no need to destroy. The game world in this disc has already come true. It's very suitable for us to train, isn't it? The most important thing is, we got the bug inside. Take advantage of it. This is the best training ground. Although, it is dangerous." In the end, everyone decided to put the game CD in the trunk of the old broken car, store it, take care of it, and keep it well. The strength of the villain is really strong. His individual is weaker than Maha's, but after he has been cloned into 100, he is simply too powerful. Xiao Chen muttered to himself. And at the same time, in the game world, after the villain ordered his 3 clones, 913, to hold Ishiyama Yokozuna tightly, he plunged into the pole field and sat down with his knees crossed. SHHHHHH. There were hundreds of clones beside him. Each of the clones held a book in their hands. Mathematics, English, chemistry, physics. Although I don't know exactly what code is, it must have something to do with the textbooks in the human world. From today, 1,000 avatars will learn textbook knowledge at the same time, transfer learning progress to each other, and research until they can break the boundaries of this world. Until the villain stood the samurai sword in front of him. As long as he dared to sleep, the samurai sword would penetrate him immediately. All the villains, at the same time, start to study like crazy. Even if it's an out-and-out villain, he is also willing to carry out boring studies for his determination, and let himself break into the so-called real world. It's been peaceful all day today. The most frustrating thing was Tien Zoben. He tried to buy games from other video game stores, but he couldn't find the plot of the villains, so he just bought a few CD-ROM games and kept playing video games there. Tien Zoben completed his homework little by little according to his own schedule. Xiao Chen put on the combat equipment, and he was going to find out what happened to the ultimate thunderbolt. After checking the old broken car, Mark looked at the lightning protection system again, and finally rested in the driver's seat with confidence. Tired, he not only had to take care of Xiao Chen and others' food, clothing, housing, and transportation, but also needed to prepare everything an old broken car should have. Grandpa is really working hard. After Tien Zoben sighed, he continued to play video games. That's all. A day has passed. Everyone is busy. Only Mark still had to drive the old car, took everyone to the music carnival, and then drove everyone to the next destination without stopping. These 2 days have been peaceful times. Xiao Chen was also full of praise, and couldn't get out of the combat equipment. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben began to play video games in a boring way, enjoying the joy of the new game. Taste? Wow, At this time, the old broken car that was running on the road suddenly, stopped, and it was Mark who stepped on the brakes and frowned. What's the matter, Grandpa? Why did you brake suddenly? While talking, Tien Zoben looked out the window. Not far from both sides of the road were rows of low houses and farms. Why are we parked in such a bad place? We can't even connect a laptop to the network? Call. Mark took a deep breath and said, the water tank is almost bottomed out, and I can't continue to drive it. Don't you have someone to prepare the water tank? No, we usually want to be superheroes, and after finally resting, how can we be so busy? Tien Zoben said it as a matter of course. Mark frowned and continued, Ziowen, I know it's not easy for you to protect the world, but I'm not idle either. You should also help me with household chores. It's not fair. Why don't you say Xiaochan? Tien Zoben, as a good friend and a bad friend, immediately pointed to Xiaochan who was carrying the combat equipment. Mark said bluntly, let Xiaochan solve the emergency by himself, and you two help me with the housework, isn't it okay? Come on, Grandpa, we're good at saving the world or fighting the bad guys. But if you let us do housework, forget it. It's summer vacation. Yeah, summer vacation should be more relaxed. I'm still thinking about reading more books. Tien Zoben and Tien Ziaoan rarely reached an unanimous goal. At this time, Xiaochen over there took off the combat equipment and looked at the three with a puzzled expression. What's going on? Is the water tank not enough? Should I find a way to find water? No. Mark looked out the window. There shouldn't be any equipment for adding water to us around here. The three of you didn't notice such a big thing. Hearing this, Xiaochen was speechless. The three of them are busy saving the world, and when they have time off, they will completely relax and do what they want to do. But ignore Mark, the man who can't rest every day. At this moment, a pleasant voice came from the radio station. Want to breathe fresh air? Do the children at home disobedient and don't understand the meaning of hard work? Come to Dolly Village to sign up for a week-long rural fun family camp and have the most authentic rural life experience. Grandfather. Xiaochen's complexion changed slightly, and he said with a guilty conscience, I personally prefer rural life, but I am afraid that rural life will disrupt the rhythm of our summer vacation life. And Grandpa, you don't like that kind of place, do you? Maybe there's a lot of chicken poop, cow dung, or something. Tien Zoben followed Xiaochen's words. The three of them were a united front at this time, and they always refused to go to the countryside to experience life. I didn't say I would take you to live in the countryside. Why are you so nervous? Mark showed a wicked smile, and then said, also, we still have more than half a month left in our summer vacation schedule, and it is enough to take a day or two to experience life at the farm banquet. Grandfather. Tien Zoben asked weakly again, people ask for a week. I'll give you a week's worth of money, can't you just leave without going for a few days? Let's go, I believe you will like this kind of life very much, just the old broken car's water tank is enough to last us. Mark smiled, said, driving the old broken car, all the way to the countryside, there are cows and sheep screaming everywhere. All around, there are golden wheat fields. The environment is still quite good. Trust me, you will love it very much. When I was young, I often went to the countryside to experience life. On Uncle Jedia's farm, I learned how to work hard, knowing that all the food we got was hard-earned. Mark gushed. Xiaochen whispered to Tien Zoben beside him, Grandpa is a living warrior of love. Grandpa must be super decent, I really don't want to go to the countryside. Tien Zoben said distressedly. Xiaochen expressed fearlessness. Anyway, as long as you have a computer and your own toiletries, it's the same wherever you go. Taste? The old broken car drove through the road, and gradually, the backs of industrious people appeared on the farmland, and there were people sitting on the harvester to harvest rice. Everything was peaceful and normal. It's just some children, running around in horror, constantly talking to their adults in the countryside. No, this world actually has mummies. And they're dark creatures trying to take Earth. Trust us, please. The children's jokes, the adults were amused, they just wiped their sweat and laughed at each other. Haha, the last time the Hulk would appear and destroy the world, the last time Godzilla would appear and destroy the world. This time it was replaced by a mummy. An adult squatted in front of the child and pinched the child's face. So, children should not go to watch horror movies secretly, they will think it is true. Not a horror movie. Several children struggled to speak. Listen to it all. Xiaochen's listless eyes lit up slightly. He didn't take these children's words as a joke. Isn't there more than one mummy? The last Yanussi should also belong to the kind of aliens that haunt at night, and dark creatures are quite in line with their style. Xiaochen faintly noticed another huge conspiracy. Taste? The old broken car ended up parked in front of a farm. There was a harvester parked at the entrance of the farm, and a middle-aged woman in an apron, with a child, stood there waiting. Mark got out of the car first, walked over, and didn't shy away. How are you? For flowers. You are the Tien family, right? I am Mapua, this is my son Todd. Mapua said. Beside him his son, Todd, was standing there holding a cute pink piglet. Maybe he rolled with the piggy, so there was a lot of mud on his body and a big lump on his face. Little class, let's go down. Xiaochen was quite calm, he pushed open the door, his shoes stepped on some soft soil, and some soil was stuck on it. The air was full of the smell of wheat and cow dung. This mixed feeling is like when you were just pulling Wang Xiang's toilet put air freshener in general. Well, I can get used to it, and it's not that I haven't been in my previous life. Tien Zoben, on the other hand, put on the broken shoes that he didn't like and walked down reluctantly. Tien Zoben was a little better and came down with Xiao Chen. Hello, I'm Todd. Todd was quite enthusiastic and looked at the three people in front of him curiously and said. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben reluctantly nodded as a greeting. Xiao Chen smiled and said kindly, your little pig is very cute. He praised you for being cute. Todd immediately lifted the little pig up, facing the pig's face, and said happily, haha, when the pig grows up, you can. Looking at this scene, Mapua deliberately made fun of his son. No, Todd hugged his piglet nervously, and the piglet shivered with him. Seeing this scene, everyone would smile, and the tense atmosphere disappeared invisibly. Okay, chat time is over, we're going to work. Mapua returned to his lazy look and urged. 100 million rural family banquets are mainly to help with work. Xiao Chen and the others followed Todd to the farm warehouse, and moved out the pig feed that the pigs were going to eat one by one. Each one weighed at least 10 kilograms and needed a lot of force to resist. Todd's small body can barely hold a bag of pig feed. Mark walked fast against 2 bags of pig feed. Xiao Chen can also easily withstand a bag of pig feed. After all, his physical fitness has also been super strengthened. If it weren't for the special attention, he would have shown greater strength. Your name is Xiao Chen, right? On the way to work, Tao got close to Xiao Chen and looked at the Omnitrix on Xiao Chen's wrist with bright eyes. Did you buy your watch from the city? It's so cool. Of course. Xiao Chen smiled slightly and shook the Omnitrix on his wrist. I know that many alien heroes also have this pattern. Todd said suddenly the next second. This made Xiao Chen's face stiff, and there was a faint trace of worry. But Todd quickly said, there are many peripherals of alien heroes, and this one of yours is the coolest. It's not bad. Xiao Chen breathed a sigh of relief. The fame of the alien hero has led to the flooding of the surrounding area, but it has helped him to better cover his identity. However, I have cooler news. Todd's expression became mysterious, and he actually learned how to attract jade. What? Xiao Chen looked at him curiously. Todd lowered his voice, you must not believe it. What happened to me last night? I only tell you this secret. Todd, don't talk to each other, work hard. Seeing this, Mapua over there immediately urged him unhappily. Todd immediately corrected his attitude and moved the feed honestly with Xiao Chen. He maintains a good impression of his peers from this city who are still able to endure hardship. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben were not used to it from the beginning and gradually got used to it. Everyone was busy from morning to afternoon. Xiao Chen could be said to have a sore back, and his eyes were glistening from hunger. I feel like I'm about to become a howling wolf. I'm starving to death. Tien Zoben kept rubbing his teeth, as if he was about to transform into a dark creature. All right, the meal is ready. Everyone, it's time for dinner. Mapua took control of the restaurant and greeted everyone in the living room of the house. Xiao Chen and the others ran faster than rabbits and immediately went to the table obediently. Don't say it yet. Farm-raised chickens beat eggs, fried poached eggs, milk from own cows, homemade sausages, barbecue dinner. Every dish is full of flavor. Xiao Yu took a deep breath of the aroma of the food. It's so fragrant. I don't know if the food is delicious or because I'm too hungry. I'm gonna start now. Tien Zoben devoured it. Mark, Todd and the others did the same, so Tien Zoben could barely maintain his posture, mainly because Xiao Chen was here, so she could only eat carefully. By the way, you should like this very much. Todd also ran to the kitchen and brought out a bowl of rice. This tooth smiled. Thank you. Xiao Chen nodded with a smile, took the rice, as if his soul had returned, and ate it in big gulps. After dinner, Maplewood and Mark went to wash the dishes and wipe the table. Xiao Chen, Todd and the others are free time at night. I'll show you first, the place where we're going to rest. Todd led the three of them up the stairs, to the second floor, and then to the roof. There are 2 bunks on the roof, just enough for 4 people to live, and a window is opened not far away, and you can see a large golden wheat field at a glance. The only thing that is missing, there's a bit of chicken shit in there. Xiao Chen's mouth twitched. I should be able to get used to it. No, Tien Zoben frowned. Grandpa definitely won't allow us to rest in the old car. It's so boring. I'd rather go to work than torture boredom. Yes. Tien Zoben nodded rarely. My schedule is completely messed up. Both of them seemed to be asking Xiao Yu for advice. Can you use your own abilities to find fun? Of course it's fun. Todd said confidently. Do you know mummies? I saw a mummy that big not far from the farm, a real living dead. Saying that, he put his hand on top of his head, still standing on tiptoe. Xiao Chen and the 3 looked at each other with interest. 4.5. Todd misunderstood something and said anxiously, I know this is strange, but you must believe me. You may not believe it. We've all seen werewolves and vampires, so we're going to have a mummy. Tien Zoben waved his hand and said helplessly, so, when are we going to look for a mummy? Stay up till the night. It's a word. Tao excitedly extended his thumb and buckled with Xiao Chen and others. Call out? Not far away, the pink little pig came running, bent up hard, and put a pair of pig hooves on the thumbs carried by everyone. Okay, children, it's time to rest. Those who don't sleep well at night will be captured by monsters. 8 p.m. Mapua walked into the roof, looked at the 4 people who covered their clothes obediently, couldn't help telling a hell joke, and then staggered out of the roof. She just walked on her forefoot. Shhhhhh. 4 pairs of eyes opened at the same time. Todd's bed was filled with a pink pig's head, and he opened his eyes with a sigh of relief. My grandpa should be sleeping on the sofa. Xiao Chen quickly deduced. My mom would go to the bedroom to rest, and for about 5 minutes she'd be snoring loudly, Todd said rudely. The crowd fell silent tacitly. Been waiting for hours at this place. They don't mind waiting a few more minutes. If it really doesn't work. Tien Zoben came to the skylight, pushed it open slightly, and showed a smile. It's not impossible to walk from here. The 16 roofs of Todd's house are in the shape of a person. They are at the highest point and can slide down through the eaves and finally fall to the ground. It just needs actual difficulty. It's dangerous, don't be silly. We're all kids. Todd, who knew nothing, did not realize what kind of person was in front of him. Taste. Xiao Yu opened the skylight, sat down on the eaves with no expression on his face, and slid down all of a sudden. At the moment of failure, he rolled directly to the ground, and after a beautiful roll, all his strength was removed. He got up, patted the dust on his hands, and shrugged at the dumbfounded Todd from the skylight upstairs. It's my time. Following Xiao Chen's example, Tien Zoben slid down quickly, but ran after him several times when he landed. Fortunately, Xiao Chen wiped it off, otherwise he would have fallen. Tien Zoben was the most relaxed. She got up, slid down nimbly, and landed as lightly as a swallow. Her movements were full marks. You, too, are too powerful. Todd and the pink piggy in his hand were all dumbfounded. Coco Piggy twitched the pig's nose and motioned Todd to hold it and slide down with him. Todd smiled reluctantly. Forget it, my hands and feet are not that good. He tiptoed across the roof, the second floor, the first floor, and then quietly came out through the gate. Todd. Xiao Yu pointed to the wheat fields in all directions, and said, now you should tell us how to get to this place. During the day, I can still tell where is where, but now I can't see it at all. Coco. Before Todd spoke, the piglet in his arms broke free and plunged into the wheat field. Go. Xiao Chen immediately followed, and the others followed one by one. Todd went straight to the back of the car. He looked at Tien Zoben, who was faster than him, with a dull expression. Who the hell are they? The 4 quickly followed the pink pig, across the field, bypassing the railings protecting the field, and came to a large lawn with scattered trees in the distance. There was also a huge pothole in the lawn, with a diameter of more than 10 meters. The little pig stopped in front of the big pit and looked very impatient. This pit, it's weird. Xiao Chen knelt on one knee on the grass, observed the big pit, and frowned. It stands to reason that mummies will only appear in mausoleums. As far as I know, we won't have mummy mausoleums here. Tien Zoben walked over and said, only possible aliens. Xiao Chen muttered to himself. How can this group of people be more eloquent than me? Even Todd, the peer at the side, couldn't help muttering. Coco. The little pig made another discovery and ran to the lawn not far away, where the lawn was extraordinarily strange and was glowing with purple light. Xiao Chen hurried over. It was not that the lawn was glowing with purple light, but that there were a pair of footprints on the lawn. The footprints were at least the size of a cow's hoof. The strangest thing was that the footprints exuded a faint purple light. Along the footprints, looking towards the lawn in the distance. Endless view? They can't even see the end of the footprint. Moonlight. Xiao Chen raised his head slightly again, when he saw a silver moon in the sky, just swaying the footprints on this lawn. He had a bad premonition. 913. Moonlight, what does it mean? Bang bang bang? The lawn is shaking slightly. Xiao Chen's body tensed instantly. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben were on the left and right, and Tauda was hiding behind them, at a loss. Call out? The piglet jumped directly into Todd's arms and got into his clothes. The verge of lawn trembling is getting bigger and bigger. Far away, a burly figure appeared one after another, perhaps because the speed was too fast, so it appeared pitch black. Their figures quickly approached, a pair of sharp and powerful feet appeared on their heads, their bodies gradually became larger, and their dark skin glowed with a layer of purple light, like a layer of purple fluorescent powder. It's the black bison. 2 ends. Xiao Chen looked at the 2 black bison and judged instantly. These 2 unusually burly bison are running towards them quickly, and their aggression is unbelievably strong. This is a bonus of 5,000 points for Q. The point isn't a few heads, it's that they're coming. Todd stepped back in horror and said to Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben, you spread out, I attract attention. Xiao Chen looked ahead and said coldly. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben quickly dispersed, hugged Tauda and his little pig and walked out. Tauda was very puzzled. You just leave him there alone? No discussion. Tien Zoben said quickly, you think we don't want to? But there can be no nonsense in this crisis, and a decision must be made immediately. If you can't make a decision yourself, let someone who can make a decision do it. Taste? Xiao Chen looked at the 2 black bison in front of him, stomping on the lawn with heavy footsteps, making a loud noise. 2 stupid cows, here I am. If you have the ability to hit me, I will send you to the slaughterhouse tomorrow for a meal. Beautiful beef hot pot. Roar. 2 black bison attacked with red eyes, the cow ladder shook the lawn, and even Xiao Chen's body was shaking violently. The bison was getting closer and closer, the sharp horns almost collided with Xiao Chen's body, and the snort swept across Xiao Chen's clothes. Taste? He jumped sharply, crossed the bodies of the 2 black bison, and landed a beautiful somersault not far away. Broken pieces? The two black bison didn't have time to break. One ran out of the lawn and rushed into a field of wheat, and the other was a bit unlucky. One hit a big tree and fell to the ground together with the big tree. Pretty. Tien Zoben waved his fist. Todd and his piggy were dumbfounded. What the hell are you guys? Stuntmen. We are just a group of passers-by. Xiao Chen ran over quickly and instructed Xiaoben, I'm going to attract attention. You two are adaptable and find a way to subdue the bison. Good. No problem. Tien Zoben and Tien Xiaohong nodded. Xiao Chen took a deep breath, followed suit, and laughed loudly at the black bison in the wheat field, and Xiaoben also ran away quickly. Bang bang bang! When the black bison threw up the cow ladder again and rammed towards Xiao Chen. Monument? Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben hugged a rope together, wrapped the two ends around two big trees far away, and tightened the rope. Taste. It seems that because he was worried, Tien Zoben raised his hand slightly, and the pink light wrapped the rope, making the rope indestructible. Xiao Chen stood in front of the rope, fearless. What? Detect sinuable object, crazy buffalo? The host chooses to fall down or hit the star, the bison. You cannot use any aliens to transform, release the potential, and you can complete the sign-in. At this time, the sound of the system sounded. Xiao Chen was stunned, but did not expect to trigger the mission. It seems that even this kind of angry wild can trigger system quests without using any abilities. At best the reward is not good enough. Then try. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and took a step back. Boom! The bison rushed in front of him in just a few seconds, and the cow ladder hit the rope without any suspense. The rope immediately deformed and bent, and even the two big trees were twisted slightly. The bullhorn is getting closer and closer to Xiao Chen's body, and it will give him a chill taste. Xiao Chen jumped and landed directly on the back of the bison, holding on to his pair of horns. Tien Zoben's face twitched slightly, and he kept controlling the magic power so that the rope would not be broken. Boom! Finally, the bison dragged the rope and slammed into it for a distance of several meters. The rope and the trees were completely deformed towards its side, but it was at the end, and it couldn't take a step forward. Its cow ladder began to get slower, and gradually lost its strength. Boom! The two big trees suddenly bounced back at this moment, and the rope flew back like a rubber band. The wild was like a shell that was shot out and flew high, and Xiao Chen's body also flew high. Both of them were slammed into the wheat field, making a deafening sound. Xiao Chen. It's all right. Except for Todd, who was dumbfounded. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben rushed into the wheat field in a hurry and found a large pothole and a small pothole. The bison lay on the big pothole and passed out. Cough cough. Xiao Chen slumped on the small pothole with a helpless expression on his face. I'm sorry, I forgot to use the Aiku, Neo Dihao, Tile Divine Sword. It hurts me to death. I don't think I can walk in a short time. Fool. Tien Zoben clenched his hands and couldn't help saying. Congratulations to the host. Direct draw. Xiao Chen said without hesitation. Obtained white reward. The physical fitness of human beings is slightly strengthened, and the injury is healed. Okay. In an instant, a warm current poured into Xiao Chen's body, and the injuries all over his body were swept away. Although it was not obvious, he could feel that his physical fitness had improved, and his fists were extraordinarily powerful. Even the dark wounds he left in the decisive battle with Jas were healed together. Taste post? Xiao Chen couldn't help jumping high. His whole body relaxed like never before. What? Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben, who were on the side, quickly took a few steps back, but even so, their hair was also carried by a gust of wind. You call this an injury? Tien Zoben looked at Xiao Chen with a strange expression. Xiao Chen fell to the ground and patted the wheat on his body. I'm sorry, my body has suddenly recovered, and now I feel so much better. What? Sudden. There was a scream from Todd in the distance. Xiao Chen and the three of them looked at the big lawn in an instant, and hurriedly took steps to run towards the lawn. When they got out of the golden wheat field, the lawn was empty and could not see anything. Is gone. Tien Zoben was dumbfounded, looking at the devastated lawn in front of him. There were only 2 buffaloes left. Where is their Todd? Even the pink little pig was gone. Todd. Xiao Chen's face was a little angry, and he grabbed his hands. We will save him out. 913. You wait. Taste? He raised his wrist, opened the small broken watch, opened the screen, and chose an alien hero with an unusually strong sense of smell. Boom. After he was filmed. Oh, it's this guy again. Tien Zoben looked at the sturdy howling wolf in front of him and shook his face, as if he had seen his own dark history. You come up. Howling wolf said in a low voice. His body switched to wolf mode, and his limbs fell to the ground. Although he shrank a little in this mode, he was still much bigger than a wolf, similar to a juvenile tiger. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben sat one in front and the other behind him, grabbing his wolf fur. Taste. Howling wolf's nose quickly smelled, and there was a strong smell of chicken excrement, cow dung, and a very slight rotten smell in the air, which was very nose-piercing. Cough cough. He retched directly, and his body ran after him. Xiao Chen, what's wrong? Tien Zoben patted Xiao Tianlang on the back and asked. My nose is too sensitive, but it has become my weakness. I can't stand it anymore. Xiao Tianlang looked like he was breathing. Nose, be strong. When his nose kept twitching and the howling in his heart grew stronger and stronger, the power of that animal fruit was controlled by him again. Call out. His nose instantly became extremely dark, and the tip of his nose grew a small horn, and his sense of smell instantly became extremely powerful. Cow dung, chicken feces, and the scent of wheat, all the scents are divided into countless strands, drifting in all directions, which allows Xiao Tianlang to easily distinguish which scent he should catch. The nose, the strengthening is successful. This is also the ability of the devil fruit, which can strengthen my various organs alone. Xiao Tianlang was a little surprised, but he didn't have time to sigh. He found the faint rotten smell in the air, and instantly ran in that direction. Shhhhhhh. He turned into a gust of wind, the surrounding trees began to blur, Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben swayed from side to side. Tien Zoben shouted loudly, I finally know the function of seat belts. Howling Wolf's speed was getting faster and faster, ran out of the farm, and ran fast on the road beside the farm. Of course, it wasn't the road from which the old car came, it was just the road between the farms. As he shuttled here, the rotten smell in the air became more and more serious, and the surrounding lawns were also empty. He couldn't see the people who lived there, only companies and factories. There. Howling Wolf stopped abruptly, his eyes fixed on a position not far away. That is a factory. Factory gate. A strange figure is pulling the big hole, digging deeper and deeper, exuding bursts of purple light, a light that is different from demonic energy. And not far away. It is a big and a small figure, wrapped tightly. Yanussi, mummy. What are these monsters trying to do? What do they have in common with the Excalibur on me? Howling Wolf changed into a werewolf state, got up, put the two of them aside, and walked towards the strange figure step by step. Taste. The figure stood up. The light illuminated his body. It was a tall mummy with a pharaoh headgear on its head and looked like a supreme weapon. Different from other enemies, he looked at the Howling Wolf and was stunned for a while, then he stretched out his hand and waved it, as if he knew the Howling Wolf. I'm not the monster you know. Xiao Tianlang coldly interrupted the mummy's warm greeting, and said coldly, I'm here to save people. The mummy's face became colder and colder, her body bent sharply, her hands like ribbons flew into the pothole, and the purple light actually appeared on his body, like layers of lines, engraved on his physically. His breath also became more swollen and cold, strengthened. Howling Tianlang's expression changed, revealing a cautious expression. So, his nose is back to normal. Let's go to war. Call out. Mummy is an impatient master, and as soon as he came up, he waved a light bandage, and slammed the Howling Wolf fiercely. Howling Wolf bowed his arms, a look of disapproval. What? The bandage fell on his arm, but it left red marks one after another, with incomparably terrifying power, as terrifying as a steel whip. Hiss. Xiao Tianlang's arms trembled a little, and the burning pain made him blushed. The bandage on this guy's body is definitely not the kind of bandage on Earth. It looks light and fluffy, but it's actually the same as a steel whip. He immediately retracted his contempt and rushed towards the mummy's body quickly. Flavor? The mummy released long bandages towards him, but all of them were flashed by Xiao Tianlang's accurate judgment, combat experience. Even beyond the mummy, he quickly came to the front of the mummy, who was looking down at him with his head down. Go to hell. Howling Wolf sneered. His teeth slammed open, biting the mummy's body fiercely, biting off a large piece, and spit out the paper ball. It's just like paper, it doesn't look like anything. Broken pieces? There was a tingling pain in the back of Sirius, and before he could react, a thin belt was gradually trapping his body. The bandage that the mummy had put out came back, and when Xiao Tianlang was not paying attention, he sneaked up from behind and wrapped him up. Damn. Soon, Howling Wolf's body was wrapped, he couldn't even struggle, only his head was outside, and the nick on the mummy that he bit off was quickly restored. The recovery speed of this guy is terrifying. Only at this moment did the mummy show a bloodthirsty expression, looking at the bound Howling Wolf, as if enjoying the brilliance of victory. Damn, if the strength is not enough, then try to strengthen it. Howling Wolf took a deep breath, and the muscles of his arms swelled up impressively, as developed as the muscles of a four-handed overlord. With a low roar, he spread out his arms, all the ribbons on his body were shattered, and he broke free. The mummy took a few steps back in shock, and the bandages on her hands recovered quickly. Every finger on a pair of big hands was a long bandage, which looked terrifying. As for the Howling Wolf in front, his arms were as mighty as they were injected with gas. He has strengthened his arm strength. Thank you for letting me learn to use the power of reinforcement better at a critical juncture, so please go to death. Howling Sirius slightly rotated his arms and roared in a low voice. There. Tien Zoben tore the thin belts on Todd and Xiaozu, and rescued one person and one pig in the past. Tien Zoben quietly came to the big pit, and the big pit was glowing with purple light, making him unable to see what was underneath. That purple light let his eyes gradually blurred. In a trance, a werewolf stood in front of him, overlapping his figure. What? Tien Zoben suddenly scratched his face irritably, but his face was itchy, as if his nails were too long. Boom! Howling Wolf waved a pair of punches, hitting the mummy hard, causing it to retreat. Look at my paws. He waved his 5 fingers again, and the claws of the 5 fingers were exceptionally sharp like knives. A trace of fear appeared in the mummy's pupils, and she took a few steps back. For flowers. The cold wind still followed his body and wiped the ground beside him. Coffee drink. That piece of ground was torn apart. On the body of the mummy, there are also several penetrating huge cracks. It seems that the attack effect is good. Xiao Shenlang grinned and said with great satisfaction. The mummy's body was rapidly healing again, but the healing speed was obviously slower, and his expression was a little flustered. Howling Wolf then walked towards him and waved his claws, and you are not immortal, you almost startled me. Taste? The mummy hurriedly stretched out 10 fingers, turned into 10 terrifying bandages, and wrapped them around the Howling Wolf. Taste? Howling Wolf's arm muscles quickly returned to normal, and he raised his claws instead. Yeah? Each claw was actually 20 to 30 centimeters long, like a long sword, firmly in front of him. All the bandages just touched the claws of the Howling Wolf, and they were quickly divided into 2. It doesn't even need the Howling Wolf to exert his strength. Seeing this scene, the mummy retracted 10 fingers in fear, and his 3 fingers were directly broken. Die. Howling Wolf walked towards him without hesitation. Tender Wu. This moment, a long wolf howl sounded between the heavens and the earth, and it was the wolf howling of the Howling Wolf. Xiao Shenlang was stunned for a moment, and then quickly looked aside, only to see Tien Zoben, who was covered in wolf hair, standing beside the big pit, staring at Xiao Shenlang coldly, grinning. Xiao Tianlang's face became ugly. Restore the werewolf Zoben. Yi, taste? Although the mummy is very important, Xiao Tianlang still focused on Tien Zoben. Taste? Tien Zoben looked to the side in fright, and ran over in an instant. Xiao Tianlang had no choice but to give up the goal of mummy, and rushed towards Tien Zoben. Xiao Ban, Xiao Chen? Tien Zoben watched this scene anxiously, pacing back and forth around Todd and Xiaozu. Fortunately, the mummy didn't embarrass her. She just walked to the big pit, stretched out her fingers and picked up something, and left here in a hurry. The light of the big pit has dimmed a lot. Monument? Xiao Tianlang held Tien Zoben's 913 firmly on the ground, pressed one knee on his back, and said loudly, Zoben, calm down for me, calm down. Ao. Tien Zoben wanted to speak anxiously, but he only let out a burst of wolf howls. It was obvious that he had not been used to the change in his throat, and could not express his words. He just looked at the distance and cried anxiously. Moonlight attracts Zoben? Howling Wolf was startled at first, and looked at the moon in the sky, but the moon was already covered by clouds and mist at this time, and it was definitely not the moon's cauldron. So, Xiao Tianlang's eyes fell on the big pit. Is it that thing that emits purple light? It must be this. This thing. He was not sure what would happen if he encountered it, so he had to leave that thing behind. Boom! Xiao Tianlang stopped talking nonsense. After stunned Tien Zoben with a knife in his hand, he carried Tien Zoben's body with his left hand, walked to the big pit, buried the pit with one hand, and jumped back and forth several times, stepping on it abnormally. Sturdy. Tien Xiao's tattoo followed by floating Todd and Piglet. Will that mummy come back? Xiao Tianlang looked into the distance with his deep eyes. It shouldn't be. The guy is just like a human being, and he is afraid. After he runs away, he will start thinking about whether we will follow. Let's go. Good. Tien Zoben hurriedly nodded and followed Xiao Tianlang back to the countryside. Call out? After returning to the roof, Xiao Tianlang tied Tien Zoben firmly with a rope and stuffed him with a piece of wood to prevent him from screaming. Tien Zoben put Todd and Piglet on the bed. Bayu, Xiao Chen is back. He looked at Tien Zoben, who was tied up, and rubbed his temples with a headache. I hope Zoben doesn't go crazy and scream for no reason. Does that thing make him lose his mind? What the hell is that? How should we explain to Todd? Tien Zoben asked. Xiao Chen was stunned. I just told him that he was dreaming before. As for Zoben, cosplay is an entertainment activity for us in the city. Tien Zoben smiled reluctantly. Hope it can be successful. Night. It seems very long. Xiao Chen and Tien Zoben still couldn't hold back their sleepiness, so they went to their own shops and fell asleep. The night passed. Todd's scream caused Xiao Chen to wake up suddenly. He rubbed his eyes, tried hard to adjust to the light, and resisted getting up. Todd, what's wrong? Man, Xiao Chen, Zoben, look, what's going on? Todd's terrified voice sounded, and I seemed to see a mummy last night. He knocked me out, and then I don't know what happened. Heard. Xiao Chen quickly removed his palm and looked at a pillar supporting the roof. The completely werewolf Tien Zoben was tied to it, biting a piece of wood. A werewolf beast with a full height of 1.8 meters. Could this F***ck be a 10-year-old pretending to be? Xiao Chen said, last night, you had a nightmare. Zoben and I went out hunting, and when we saw this wolf looks a bit unique, we caught it. Don't be surprised. Nightmare? Got it back? Really? Tauda had a simple face, and after a few seconds, he looked at Tien Zoben. Well, isn't this wolf too unique? Haven't you learned it? Mutant creatures or something, it's normal. Tien Zoben smiled reluctantly, explaining that it was unusually pale. Whoa! The piglet ran to the two of them and looked at them angrily. The guilty Xiao Chen took a step back and bluffed. Why? Believe it or not, I eat roast pork legs. Whoa! Xiaozu twisted his body abruptly. The skin drum was facing Xiao Chen and the others, and the pig's tail was replaced with a straight line. My pig's tail has always been bent, so straight 4.5, someone must have carried my pig and walked away. It's the mummy. Todd said excitedly as if he had seized the evidence. Xiao Chen sighed. Tien Zoben covered his face, speechless. Was seen through a pig. So awkward. The little pig ran to Todd's side. Puff! A piece of wood. It flew out and fell to the ground. The eyes of the three and the pig fell on the wood, and they were all stunned when they looked at the delicate grooves on the wood. Everyone looked at Tien Zoben slowly. Tien Zoben opened his eyes and looked at the crowd with a smile. This werewolf is coming out. Taoda's eyes trembled, and he looked at Tien Zoben in extreme horror, stepping back step by step, like a devil's pace. Xiaoban, calm down, keep calm. Remember. Xiao Chen comforted Tien Zoben constantly and walked forward to him. Todd reacted instantly. Zoben? He actually changed from Zoben. You are indeed a group of strange people with unique skills. Oops. Xiao Chen's mouth twitched, and Tien Zoben looked at each other. A small mistake just sold Zoben. Woo, woo. But after hearing Xiao Chen's words, Tien Zoben still rolled his eyes anxiously and roared in a low voice, not loud, but a wolf howl. He seems to be trying to tell us something. Tien Zoben waved his hands and said. Xiao Chen frowned. Xiaoban, do you want to speak but can't say it now? If yes, nod your head. 16. Tien Zoben nodded quickly. Xiaoban, you can't speak, is it related to the moonlight? Xiao Chen continued to ask. Tien Zoben shook his head. Is it related to that purple light? Tien Zoben nodded desperately. This time, Xiao Chen also understood what was going on, and said helplessly, you can slowly get used to the way of speaking. Xiao Chen, Zoben, and Xiaoan, come down to do farm work. Soon the sun will hit you all. Then there was a loud roar from Mark downstairs. Zoben has become like this. I don't have time to do farm work. Let's talk to Grandpa directly about the situation. Xiao Chen said simply. Taoda and Tien Zoben became nervous. No. Xiao Chen glanced at the two of them suspiciously. What's the matter? What are you afraid of? If I let my mother know that we sneak out at night, I'll be finished. Todd said pitifully holding the piglet. Tien Zoben also agreed and said, Xiao Chen, you usually don't get scolded, so you don't know how terrible it is to take Grandpa's lessons. Zoben and I will definitely be unlucky. Xiao Chen, with black lines all over his head, sighed, then let's do farm work first. Let's go. He walked downstairs with Todd and Tien Zoben, and Maple Wu had already prepared the early morning meal. A big pot full of corn mash, with simple side dishes, eggs, and some sashimi. Xiao Chen picked up the bowl and knife and fork, made some corn paste, and ate it on the spot. It was much more delicious than Grandpa's dark dishes. Where's Zoben? He won't come down. Maplewood asked. Xiao Chen quickly took cover. Xiaoban is still sleeping. Haha, let him sleep for a while. Tien Zoben. Mark stood up unhappily. We came to the countryside to experience life, just to understand the hard work of being a farmer, but he is better, and if he sleeps late, what's the point of our coming? I'm going to wake him up. Seeing that Mark was about to go upstairs angrily, Xiao Chen bit his head and stopped Mark from smiling awkwardly. Grandpa, it's like this. Zoben was the hardest worker yesterday, so he was so sleepy that he didn't get up. Let him have a good rest. Saying that, his hands fell on Mark's body, reluctantly blocking Mark. Okay. Mark didn't doubt Xiao Chen's words, but he was surprised to find that he couldn't push Xiao Chen away with a little force. Even when he's giving it his all, Xiao Chen is no worse than him. In other words, the current Xiao Chen's physical fitness is a little stronger than Mark's, and Mark's physical fitness is running around with a laser gun of dozens of pounds, and his weight is more than 100 pounds. Xiao Chen's physique is comparable to a superhuman physique? Is Grandpa trying to test me? His strength is so strong that I have used 70% of my strength. Xiao Chen gritted his teeth slightly. Mark took a step back and said, forget it, have a good breakfast. Call. Xiao Chen, Xiaoan, and Taoda. Chi breathed a sigh of relief. After breakfast, the three of them began to work on the farm again. Help with weeding. Then I have to go to the pasture and send the female 930 cows that have left the fence one by one back to the fence. Taoda is quite handy, while Xiao Chen and Tien Zoben are completely at a loss. This kind of thing cannot be solved by brute force. While driving a cow, Todd said with a smile, Xiao Chen, I'm not as good as you in dealing with the bison, and you're not as good as me in dealing with the cow. Xiao Chen helplessly shrugged his shoulders. Then please, if you move too slowly, I'm afraid Zoben will be in a hurry. Bang bang bang. Sudden. All the cows in the pasture panicked. What small class? Xiao Chen looked around suspiciously, but on the ranch greenhouse, he saw a powerful figure. Tien Zoben was above the greenhouse, looking at Xiao Chen and the others with a pair of green eyes, as if he was going to eat everyone. Xiaoban, crazy. Xiao Chen instantly stood up, clenching his hands nervously. Gollum, Gollum. Tien Zoben's stomach rang. Practice. Forgot to give Zoben breakfast and lunch. Oh. Tien Zoben held the unfinished corn batter and ate it in big mouthfuls, gobbling it down. Xiao Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Auntie Maipuo still has a lot of cornmeal, so I just brought a can. Here, Zoben, eat some eggs. As if feeding small animals, Todd also brought a few boiled eggs and handed them to Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben gently touched it with his teeth, and the eggshells shattered and swallowed. When swallowing, Tien Zoben's gloomy eyes looked at Taoda. He kept looking at it, and gradually locked on the pig tail exposed behind Taoda. Little Pig hid behind Todd, shivering, for fear of being seen by Tien Zoben, but he didn't expect his tail to betray him. Don't mess around. Xiao Chen held the Ectowa divine sword in one hand and immediately stood in front of Tien Xiao. This sword broke his thoughts. Tien Zoben quietly lowered his head and continued cooking. Sword. When Todd saw this, he was already a little numb. The werewolf Huitian Zoben had already opened his eyes, and accepting this Excalibur was nothing. After eating, Tien Zoben got up and grinned at the cow like a shepherd dog. Bang bang bang! The head cow immediately ran back to the enclosure, too scared to come out. Tien Zoben patted his chest with a proud look. In the afternoon, I went to the warehouse to move things. Tien Zoben avoided Mapua and Mark, followed Xiaochen and others into the warehouse, and walked like an enclave to help move things. The efficiency of several people's work was terrifyingly fast, and all the farm work was done in a short period of time. Zoben, you did a good job. Xiaochen sat on the ground and gave Tien Zoben a thumbs up. Tien Zoben smiled, and then lowered his head sadly. He might be afraid. I am afraid that I will not be able to change back to that human being. Todd patted Tien Zoben on the shoulder and said with a smile, it doesn't matter, anyway, you have our group of friends, we won't despise you. Hearing this, Tien Zoben nodded. Bang bang bang. At this time, there was a knock on the warehouse door. Damn it, Tien Zoben said, because Zoben wants to come in to help carry things. I closed the door of the warehouse, but it was not locked. I'll block the door. Xiaochen made an immediate decision. But it was too late, and the people outside pushed open the door and rushed in. Tien Zoben jumped behind a few bags of feed and huddled there, while the wolf's tail was outside. Mark stood there, looked at everyone helplessly, and locked the door. If I hadn't helped you open Mapua, you would have been discovered long ago. Xiaochen was startled. Grandpa, you already know. Taste? Mark threw a cut rope to the ground. I went upstairs to look, and only found the broken rope. This lie of yours is so fragile that you only need to go upstairs to see it, and it can be pierced immediately. Zoben, don't hide, come out bar. Tien Zoben walked out dejectedly, as if he was waiting for the training. It's not your fault. Mark took a deep breath and comforted everyone. I teach you a lesson. Usually, I will teach you because you have done something wrong or have any problems with your character. In this case of Zoben, he is the victim. How can I do that? Blame him? Next time there is a situation, you must tell Grandpa in time. He is very clear. Faced with this situation, direct lessons, beatings, and scolding will make Xiaochen and the others dare not tell him next time. What if, next time, it becomes another creature and misses the best chance because I don't tell him? So after the lesson is left in hand, when solving the problem, you still have to be patient. Thank you Grandpa. Xiaochen, Tien Zoben, and others were moved. Okay, tell me what happened. Mark sat down cross-legged and asked. Xiaochen nodded and explained the ins and outs of the matter. Purple radiance, underground? That should be something like ore. Old Marceau went out again after a while, and when he came back, he had a detection radar in his hand. This is an instrument for detecting energy sources. We're going to find what you call the purple glow? I'll go too. I'm familiar with this place and can help you cover. Todd said immediately with great interest, and at the same time did not forget to show his value. Mark nodded and said, promised, let's go together then. Time flies tonight. With adults helping to cover up, Mark even brought a lot of food to the warehouse, letting Xiaochen, Tien Zoben, and the others have a hearty meal. Immediately after, all the talents officially set off, walked out of the wheat field one by one, and walked along the road. The smell of rice that I miss very much, and the occasional cold wind that blows at night, is very depressing and cool. Mark said with emotion. They walked for about 10 minutes. Gradually, there were no wheat fields around, but abandoned factories. And Mark's detector. Drop drop drop. A violent energy reaction begins. Ring. Mark held the detector in his hand, and several small red dots flashed on the detector. It was news from a dairy product factory not far away. Let's go. Xiaochen said in a low voice. While being vigilant, he and Mark brought everyone close to the dairy product factory. The factory is closed. In the security room at the entrance, the security guard was sleeping in Hohoda sleep, sleeping very sweetly. Go to sleep. Xiaochen warmly walked to the security room, glanced at the security guard, and then walked to the gate of the dairy product factory. Door is concealed. He opened the door gently, and squeezed in. Mark, Tien Zoben, and others also got in one by one. The inside of the factory was very dark, and the smell of milk was everywhere, but the red light on the detector in Mark's hand became more and more dazzling, and it directly became the only light source. Whoa! Tien Zoben became anxious again, and gestured at Xiaochen, Mark, and the others for a while. I think. He could even barely utter a word, but the pronunciation was rather inaccurate. Xiaochen asked quickly, have you found the enemy 930? Tien Zoben shook his head. Do you know where that thing is? Xiaochen pointed to the light spot on the detector. Tien Zoben nodded heavily. Xiaochen and Mark looked at each other, and they both showed overjoyed expressions. Very good. Next, Tien Zoben led the way, led them to bypass the factory machines, found the entrance to the basement, and walked down the basement stairs. The basement here is also quite large, with various corridors, various rooms, very winding. Tien Zoben precisely used his nose to find the source of energy, and Mark also judged by the brighter light on the detector. The crowd gradually came to the end of the corridor, and there was a large covered box. The box is 1 meter 5 in height and half a meter in width, which is quite thick. Whoa! Tien Zoben pointed at the box, and the meaning was quite obvious. Todd said, I'll go and help open the box. No, wait a minute. Xiao Chen hurriedly stopped Todd, with a cautious expression on his face. I'm afraid it's not just that or in such a big box. There may be traps, or even enemies. Todd took a few steps back in an instant. Mark nodded affirmatively. I think you need to be careful. I'm going to. Tien Zoben tried his best to speak, and swayed to the front of the big box, spread out his claws and hugged the lid of the box, and lifted it fiercely. The box has been opened. Zoben, be careful. Seeing Tien Zoben holding the lid in both hands, Xiao Chen was very nervous. The little broken watch in his hand was ready to transform at any time. Boom! Tien Zoben threw the lid aside and made a loud noise, rippling back and forth in the corridor, scaring everyone to a jolt. Xiao Chen covered his mouth and nose, and patted the raised dust with his hands. Xiao Ban, take it easy. Tien Zoben showed an apologetic smile at everyone, and then pointed to the box. Taste? There was a burst of purple light from the box, which was extremely dazzling. No danger? Looks like we've really managed to steal the base camp of those dark creatures. Xiao Chen ran over excitedly, tiptoed, grabbed the edge of the box with both hands, and could barely see the contents of the box. I saw small, irregular purple crystals placed on the box, and the purple crystals were placed down. Defy was covered with a thick white cloth, which was used to cushion these purples, which shows how precious this thing is. This is. Mark came over, looked down at the purple crystals in the box, and thought for a moment. This is Ding element. It is a high-energy mineral, which is rare. It can enhance the genes of certain aliens or creatures, making the genes forward mutation happens. No wonder those dark creatures want it. There are so many nail elements here. Tien Zoben was also beside him, and he was fascinated. Only the little pig in Todd's arms was shivering all the time, so nervous that he didn't dare to approach. What the hell is this pig afraid of? Zoben won't attack you, don't worry. Xiao Chen looked at Zoben funny and comforted. Sudden, a cold feeling came from his back, the hairs on his back stood up straight, and a special sense of fear swept through the body. Taste? He turned his head suddenly, looked at Ding element in the box, and held on to it. In the end is. Bang. Next second. The thick cloth bag under Ding element moved, floated instantly, cooked to a height of 2 meters, wrapped around at a very fast speed to form a human shape, and opened his eyes on his head. Yes. Mummy? Taste? Boom. The mummy waved 10 fingers in an instant, knocking Xiao Chen, Mark, Todd, and everyone else out. Tien Zoben was also hit, but he just took a step back, and he gave a warning roar, rushed towards the mummy's body, and bit him. Taste. The moment Tien Zoben landed, the pink light enveloped her, causing her to land gently, and she helped Mark and Xiao Chen non-stop. Give. Xiao Chen stretched out his hands to grab Todd and Piglet who flew out, and helped them down with great difficulty. Everyone landed smoothly on the ground. Xiao Chen looked at the mummy in disbelief. That monster actually folded his body into the box. And he closed his eyes, the skin of his eyelids were all colored, and he couldn't see it at all. Taste? At this time, Tien Zoben had been searched by the mummy into a dark room, and there was no sound, and Ding element was also taken away small class. Xiao Chen stared straight ahead, the small broken watch in his hand lifted up, and shot it straight down. Taste? With a burst of light, Xiao Chen incarnates as Howling Wolf. Far away, Mark covered Todd's eyes with his left hand and the pink pig's head with his right hand, making a timely cover. Rescue? Howling Wolf took a deep breath, and the pair of wolf rays became brighter and sharper, and his night vision ability was suddenly strengthened, and he could see everything around him clearly. Clear. He immediately walked to the door of the room, slammed the door open, and broke in. There are rows of lockers everywhere in the house. On both sides of the wall, there are 2 rows of lockers alternately with chairs, which is a dressing room. Xiao Tianlang squinted slightly, walked up the first aisle next to the door, and walked around the chairs. He walked past the first row of lockers and leaned from the wall to the second row of lockers. Take a look at the aisle. It's still empty here. But on the outermost floor of the second row of lockers, there is a small bandaged corner. It was so inadvertent. I can tell. The mummy should be holding his hands, hiding next to the second row of lockers, ready to sneak up on Howling Wolf when he walks past. Pity. He showed a small horn. Taste. After Xiao Tianlang sniffed the air, he quietly walked to the end of the second row of lockers and took a deep breath. Beside him, there is only the last vertical row of lockers left. Just take a step forward. About to encounter the mummy. Call out. Howling Wolf stepped forward abruptly, walked out of the aisle, and looked at the empty space beside the locker, as if he saw the figure of a mummy. There. But there is only one broken ribbon. Not here. Howling Wolf was stunned, looking down at the bandage fragment. Could it be a trap? Taste? At the top of the locker, the mummy stood up from the prone state, looked down at the Howling Wolf standing there, and suddenly stretched out 10 fingers and turned it into 10 bandages to wrap it around. That little corner. He did it on purpose. Taste. Howling Wolf's nose seemed to move again. Bang bang bang. What did the 10 thin strips directly break down into powder? The mummy looked at the ground with overjoyed joy, but was surprised to find that her 10 thin straps had only penetrated the ground and submerged in a small part. The Howling Wolf had long since disappeared. I found out long ago that your bandaged horn was left there on purpose, trying to lead me there, but in fact you are not here at all. Accompanied by an icy voice, Howling Wolf's strengthened arms hugged the mummy's body fiercely, and shrunk directly. Mummy's pupils shrank suddenly, looking up at the ceiling. His body gradually deformed, but his fingers fell to the ground, and he couldn't hit. Serious? Do you think that I have no combat experience as a child? I have experienced more life and death battles in one summer than you have in your life. It's too funny that you want to fool me. Howling Wolf had already smelled it with his nose. The mummy was hiding on top of the locker with that rancid smell. That little horn must have been left by him on purpose beside the locker, a trap. He used the trap to kill the mummy. This human, first accelerated his leg strength to move behind me, and then strengthened his strength to hug me. It's terrible. The mummy also analyzed the Howling Wolf's combat technique, and his heart became more and more shocked. His plan was completely seen through, and he was played around. Ask for flowers. Die. The Howling Wolf exerted all his strength and pulled the mummy's body out of the crack. In just a few seconds, this guy will definitely die. Not far away, Tien Zoben was tied up with straps, with only one head outside, curled up in the corner, and said something to Xiao Tianlang with difficulty. Xiao, don't worry, Zoben, this guy was locked up by me. Xiao Tianlang first looked vigilantly, and after realizing it was Tien Zoben, he said with confidence, don't call me by my name, haha, it's too difficult to say. Full of heart? 0. Tien Zoben suddenly said something else. Taste. The last row of lockers. A figure suddenly jumped onto the locker, and like a black lightning, it slammed into Howling Wolf's body from the side. Boom! The Howling Wolf who was attacked directly fell down with the mummy, hit a row of lockers, smashed the lockers directly, and made a deafening sound. Taste. On that side of the locker, it was a werewolf figure. Yunusi looked at the Howling Wolf lying on the locker with his icy eyes, his eyes filled with hatred. Be careful. Tien Zoben finally said these words with difficulty. That wolf howl last night. Not his wolf howl. It was Janusi shouting. Janusi has been around the mummy. Tien Zoben's own consciousness at that time was a little vague, and it was difficult to confirm whether there was the existence of Yunusi, and it was difficult to express this complex emotion in words. 2. Xiao Tianlang supported his body and slowly got up. Most of the lockers under his feet were broken, and his eyes couldn't hide his surprise. Janusi and the mummy are there. 100 million Howling Wolf reacted quickly, and he switched the energy that strengthened his teeth to his arms. Click, click. His arm muscles began to swell, becoming as terrifying as steel, and he roared in a low voice, no matter why you are together, I will kill you all together. Roar. The mummy was still a little frightened, and did not dare to move forward to attack the Howling Wolf. Yunusi is a combination of old and new hatred. Every time he sees Xiao Chen using his DNA to beat him up, there is a feeling of being green, even worse than that, and made him angry. Taste. Yunusi took advantage of the moment when Howling Wolf strengthened the 930s, and pounced on Howling Wolf's body, his teeth biting the neck of Howling Wolf fiercely. Go away. Howling Wolf raised his knee in pain and slammed into Yunusi's abdomen. Puff. Yunusi let go subconsciously and ran back several steps, still biting a small clump of dark blue wolf hair in his teeth. On the Howling Wolf's neck, a faint tooth mark appeared, and light blue wolf blood flowed out. Taste. The mummy suppressed the fear and stretched out the bandages to wrap around the Howling Wolf's legs instantly. Yunusi attacked while taking advantage of the chaos, tearing his claws one by one on Howling Wolf's chest, leaving bloodstains after another, and even slowed down Howling Wolf's strengthening. Hiss. Howling Wolf sucked in a breath of cold air and roared in a low voice, I will make you die miserably. Boom. His pair of arms have been strengthened, they are full of strength, and they are extremely firm, and each piece of tendon is even more protruding. Yunusi's claws fell again, but it was only bounced out, and he couldn't help Xiao Tianlang's body. Go away. Howling Wolf stretched out one hand to grab the bandage on his foot and pulled it hard, shattering all the thin bands. Roar. Janusi's mouth spread out like a flower, and a terrifying sonic attack instantly erupted. But that sonic attack. He was unexpectedly raised by Howling Wolf and smashed into countless volumes with a punch, spreading to the surroundings, causing the room to tremble, but it couldn't help him in the slightest. What a powerful force. This guy, it's hard to deal with. Yunusi and the mummy stepped back in unison, with horror in their eyes, but they were still confident. Call out. Howling Wolf chose to take the initiative to raid. His fists were like rockets, and he launched a fierce attack on the mummy and Yunusi on the left and right sides at the same time. Boom. The mummy's 10 fingers wrapped around Xiao Tianlang's arm, slowing down his strength, so he barely used his body to resist the heavy punch. Yunusi attacked with a sound wave again, and the sound wave collided with the fist. Give it to me, back. Howling Wolf was hysterical, his eyes were blood red, and during the battle, he could feel more and more that the devil fruit power in his body was thriving. As a werewolf, he is a perfect match for this devil fruit. Boom. His footsteps moved forward a little, and the mummy and Janusi stepped back a little. Tien Zoben's face was full of surprise, and he used his wolf eyes to see the clue. I don't know if it's my illusion, the Howling Wolf is getting stronger little by little, gradually suppressing these two monsters. The strength of these two monsters is equivalent to 2 6 or 6 monsters. Howling Sky Wolf suddenly exerted force on his left arm, and actually slowly lifted the mummy up, over his head, and suspended in midair. Janusi raised his eyes in horror and looked at the mummy in the sky. Boom, boom. One more time, one more time. Howling Sirius raised the mummy with one hand, and the mummy's bandage was also wrapped around his arm. It can be said that it was quite firm. Using the mummy's body as a heavy hammer, he slammed the Yanussi in front of him fiercely, and his strength continued. Increase? Mummy and Janussi were dizzy when they collided. Janussi's sound wave gradually stopped, and he began to walk lightly. With a bang sound, a big hole broke out in the ground. Yanussi fell into the big hole, and the mummy in Xiao Tianlang's hand also flew out. Huh? Are they all gone? Xiao Tianlang was stunned for a moment, and first he looked at the big hole in front of him. Yanussi was lying there, his eyes were white. Look ahead again. The mummy was used to fly out, and a big hole was actually smashed into the wall, and it was stuck in the big hole and could not move. He deeply regretted the stupid thing that he had wrapped around Xiao Tianlang's arm. Fortunately, he let go at the last second and flew out with the strength of Howling Wolf. Otherwise he and Janussi will be crushed to death. It's useless to escape. I would also like to thank you 4.5 for making me more powerful. Maybe this is the reason why the system didn't give me the task, because I can rely on you to become stronger. Howling Wolf pointed at himself, and said with a stern expression, the muscles in his arms seemed to expand even more. Points? Yesterday. In potholes. Yanussi slowly picked up a purple ore, crushed it with his teeth, and swallowed it in his stomach. Okay. Xiao Tianlang's expression changed slightly, his eyes sharpened. Taste. The mummy's bandage slowly wrapped around the purple ore, and the light was like paint, instantly dyeing him a layer of purple. The ore disappeared. The breath of the two monsters was terrifying. Those two purple ores are the calcium tin element. After the mummy quickly absorbed a complete D element, the whole body was dyed purple, releasing a powerful breath, and at the same time, his eyes were a little painful, and this energy could not be absorbed too much. A computer you give him suddenly squeezes a lot of power. The computer motherboard CPU is all finished. The same is true for ding elements. Roar. Under. Yanussi stood up abruptly, his arms became fuller, comparable to the strength form of the Howling Wolf, and even the wolf hairs on his body stood up one by one, like needles piercing the forest. The whole person became majestic, unparalleled. Taste? He jumped out of the pit in an instant. All of them have eaten ding elements? Xiao Tianlang's determined expression gradually became ugly, and his eyes were full of caution. Hiss. 16. The mummy gave a low voice and was about to move forward, but was stopped by Yanussi with one hand. Yanussi slowly shook his head at the mummy, and looked at Xiao Yu with provocative eyes again. The meaning is self-evident. This prey. Let him come. Real peace. Howling Wolf's eyes slowly jumped up. Taste? In the next second, the two werewolves jumped high at the same time, turning into two black lightning bolts, collided instantly, and flew to the other party's original position, making a boom sound, and the wolf hair fell off the ground. Xiao Chen, come on. Tien Zoben clasped his hands tightly, his face extremely worried. Monument. Howling Wolf fell to the ground. He just stood there for a few seconds. He half kneeled on the ground suddenly, holding his chest, a trace of blood seeping from the corner of his mouth. Damn, my rib was almost broken. What? Tien Zoben was stunned. Xiao Chen lost the battle? The mummy was complacent. Yanussi slowly turned around and looked at Howling Wolf, unscathed. He slightly raised his left palm, ready to pursue the victory, but at the moment when his left palm exerted force. Taste. The entire left arm was abruptly disconnected and hung down weakly, causing Janussi's face to be constantly stunned. Xiao Tianlang bared his teeth and smiled. You aim at my key point, and I will aim at your key point. Obviously, I'm still better than you in every way. Taste? In an instant, the mummy did not talk about martial arts, and launched an attack directly from behind, and a thin band quickly wrapped around the body of Howling Wolf. The purple bandage was actually stronger than steel, and it was tightly wrapped around Howling Wolf. Roar? Yanussi let out a low roar, stretched out his fists directly, and punched the bound Howling Wolf, one punch after another. Poof, poof. Howling Wolf's mouth kept opening, sometimes spitting out wolf blood, and sometimes spitting out droplets. But the power in him. But it keeps on rising. That devil fruit ability, when matched to a werewolf, is not only several times faster than that of ordinary people, it is geometrically multiplied. Janussi, do it, kill him, don't take it lightly. There is a very strange power in this kid, and that power fits him perfectly. You and I both know what this means. It means that he has a strong potential that has not been realized. The mummy let out a roar, in fact, anxiously urging Janussi to kill him. Yanussi was extremely cold. In the Nawe tribe, I was taught too badly by him and his damn comrades. If I don't beat him back hard, I can't bear it. This idiot. Looking at the waves of his teammates, the mummy can be described as anxious and helpless. Xiao Chen, damn it. Tien Zoben struggled angrily, but unfortunately he was tightly bound by the mummy. But at this time, the werewolf form was fading little by little, otherwise he could still rely on the advantage of the werewolf. Break free, then turn into a steel werewolf again and save the audience. Boom! With one punch, one claw, Yanussi kept leaving a series of scars on the Howling Wolf. Everyone, including Howling Wolf himself, didn't notice. His blood kept flowing. A new power is constantly filling his body, gradually, truly integrating, allowing him to master this power. 930 Zez. The mummy's 10 fingers began to tighten, and the bandage was like a python wrapping its prey, constantly shrinking the howling wolf's body and rubbing against his bones. It turned out that the mummy couldn't stand it any longer, and was also chasing and beating the howling wolf. Howling wolf screamed, and the wolf was bloodshot yesterday. Today, it was his worst day. The body is getting weaker and weaker. Pain seems to be diminishing. Only his heart, sudden, chug-chug, like an imperial engine, beating wildly. The power of the devil fruit flowed into his werewolf heart along with all the blood, and completely changed. There is a power that I seem to be able to use? Xiao Tianlang's dazed eyes suddenly opened. Now, the power of devil fruit spreads all over the body. Okay, Mummy and Janussi stopped the attack at the same time. They found out. An incredible change is taking place in the howling wolf. The control realm of devil fruit can be roughly divided into 5 levels. First, the first ability. This level has just acquired the devil fruit, and can only display very basic abilities. Second, skilled use. At this time, the devil fruit can be strengthened everywhere in the body, and the devil fruit can be used freely, and the existence of this power can be felt. Third, in the perfect state, the power of the devil fruit is perfectly integrated with you. Only a very few geniuses, or people who are born suitable for this fruit, can reach this stage, and the devil fruit has been developed to the extreme. Fourth, the transcendence level, referring to Luffy, can develop the 4th level anti-Skytrix and play the devil fruit. Fifth, the fruit awakening, needless to say, is an existence that defies the sky, and the howling wolf at this time. His body actually began to swell up, and the contraction of the bandage could not stop his expansion at all, and his more and more terrifying and complete aura. What's going on? Janussi looked at this scene in shock. Mummy said sternly, I can feel it. His potential, it seems that because we crushed him without causing death, it helped him, stimulated his huge potential, and let that potential merged with him. This is not like potential, nor is it an elemental power, it is a very strange, but also very powerful force. Janussi's eyes were filled with fear. Boom! Finally, the 10 fingers of the mummy were broken in unison, and the trend of the majestic figure could no longer be stopped. Howling wolf continued to expand, his body elongated, and his head gradually faced the ceiling, making Mummy and Janussi have to look up at him and stand there. This is. Howling wolf lowered his head so he could barely stick to the ceiling and looked at his hands in disbelief. The power flowing in his body at this moment. Already the pinnacle of all his aliens. It is as powerful as the Vampire King, and even more terrifying in close combat, directly suppressing Mahaz, but his ability is much less than that of the Vampire King, and his overall quality is a bit worse. How did I get so tall? Howling wolf said in shock. This is a very powerful state. When he was on the verge of death, he desperately released the power of the devil fruit and successfully released this state. Too powerful. Tien Zoben murmured. Roar! Janussi roared at the howling wolf in fear, raised his claws instantly, and landed on the belly of the howling wolf. Clap clap! His wolf claws rubbed against the belly of the howling wolf, only splashing out a lot of sparks, leaving white, shallow claw marks by the way. It hurts, get out of here. Xiao Tianlang turned red, instantly clenched his left fist, and hit Janussi hard. Boom boom boom. The walls and ceiling were cracking, and the lockers were all thrown out by the fist wind, and the punch landed heavily on Janussi's body. Janussi suddenly flew out, smashed a wall and flew out of the room and fell into the corridor, leaving a big hole in the corridor. Cough cough. Janussi got up tremblingly, but when he was walking, he was crooked and limped, looking at Xiao Tianlang with a look of fear in his eyes. Such a punch. 3 or 4 times. He will be beaten to death. It's amazing. Howling wolf let out a low roar, and Mu Ren looked at the sluggish mummy behind him. In order to thank you for helping me develop this stage, I will let you all die easily. Shhhhhhh. The mummy's fingers quickly recovered, and he stepped back in horror, but Xiao Tianlang stretched out his hands, rubbed the mummy directly, and picked him up. What? The whole body of the mummy suddenly turned into a bamboo pole, which was gradually smashed to pieces under the action of the strange force. You'd better not resist, that way you can take it easy. Howling wolf said without hesitation. Taste? Sudden. He looked ugly. His body began to shrink slightly, and his strength was weakening a little bit. Although he had mastered the power of the devil fruit to a new height, he was injured after all. And this is the first time to open this new form, it is really unfamiliar. It didn't even last a minute? If I unleash my potential, promise good, I will definitely die. Am I going to let the tiger return to the mountain? Although these villains can really make me stronger, if I lose once, I will face extinction. Howling Tianlang kept thinking about it, but the current situation is not whether he wants to let go, but his strength is weakening, and the pain caused by the injury is also increasing. In desperation, Howling Wolf raised the mummy high, rubbed it into a bowling ball, and smashed it hard at Janussi. Boom! Janussi and the mummy both took off, rolled into the depths of the corridor and disappeared, until a deafening sound came, and the entire basement was constantly falling ashes. The basement was smashed to pieces. Whoa whoa! Bayu! The howling wolf gradually became smaller, and finally, with a crisp sound, he changed back to Xiaochen. Xiaochen's clothes were torn apart, and there were many scars on his body. He collapsed there with an ugly look on his face. Tien Zoben, who was completely shrunk, obviously felt that the straps had shrunk a lot. He pressed the reactor and rushed out, finally saving Xiaochan. And Mark and the others were not idle outside. They found all the ding elements, kept them by Mark, and handed them over to the Tien Guild. How could this be? But when the two teams met in the corridor, Mark and Tien Zoben were stunned at the same time. Why is Xiaochan so miserable? In their cognition, even if Xiaochan faced the devil, it wouldn't be so miserable. Tien Zoben shrugged his shoulders and said helplessly, "It's a long story. Let Xiaochan go to rest first. Everything is over." Good. Mark hurriedly picked up Xiaochan, and Tien Zoben habitually handed the lucky charm to Xiaochan, and every time she took it back quietly after the danger was over. Several people hurriedly walked out of 930. Tien Zoben turned around and looked. In the pothole not far away, there seemed to be something glowing purple. Tien Zoben walked over and dug a hole. After lifting some broken bricks, he found a prismatic element. "This thing can make me turn into a werewolf, a short-term genetic mutation," Tien Zoben muttered, slowly hiding the element. "As long as I wear clothes or armor, nothing will happen. Leave one in on me, as a lifesaver." His werewolf transformation, wearing a steel battlesuit, is still quite powerful. Taste? After collecting ding elements, Tien Zoben left here. When everyone returned to the farm one by one, it was already late at night. Mark went to explain everything to Ms. Mapua, while Xiaochan rested on the bed on the roof, all wrapped up. "Have a good rest." Tien Zoben gently placed a wet towel next to Xiaochan. "If you feel uncomfortable, wipe it." "Good." Xiaochan answered with difficulty. 2 days passed in a flash. The farm is still calm. Tien Zoben, and Mark were doing farm work as usual, but the three of them would go out from time to time for a period of time, or in groups. "By the way, you're one. What about that little Asian boy? The one who looks more cute? Why haven't I seen it?" Maple Wu, who was working in the wheat field, asked curiously. It's nothing. He's out doing his summer homework. You know, city high school is pretty strict." Mark interrupted with a smile. "My son and the pig don't know where they went, really." Maple began to mutter again. Far away. It was a lake. Next to the lake was a piece of woods. The environment was beautiful and quiet. Todd was sitting on a stone with the piggy in his arms, his eyes shining brightly at the figure in the river. Shhhhhhh. Xiaochan, who transformed into a howling wolf, kept waving his fists and kicking in the river, and his attack speed was quite fast. "I didn't expect you to transform," Todd said in disbelief. "I only found out yesterday. I didn't tell you before, that's why I'm worried." Howling Sirius smiled. This place was the place that Todd brought him to choose the day before yesterday, and he came here specially to train Sirius, an alien. Several days of contact let him understand Todd's character, not even covering up. Taste? The muscles of Xiao Tianlang's legs swelled like a gas injection, and he jumped so hard that it was more than 10 meters high, like a cricket. What? In midair, the muscles of his legs contracted violently, but the wolf hairs on his whole body became floating. Each one was sharper than the other, and he landed unscathed. The legs are strengthened, and the wolf hair is strengthened. Strengthening the power, I can already handle it with ease and switch seamlessly. Howling Wolf used the water droplets on his hands and murmured quite satisfied. Todd asked carefully, "Xiaochan, I heard about this monster. Howling Wolf. Your Howling Wolf, I heard Zoben say, can also become a super werewolf. It's called giant wolf transformation. What is a super werewolf? It's not a super Saiyan." Howling Sirius twitched the corners of his mouth speechlessly. His devil fruit power was squeezed to the extreme during that battle. This makes him have more power over the devil fruit, the so-called potential. For example, giant wolf? What? There was a sound from the bones of the howling wolf, the sound of the bones constantly stretching. The muscles began to swell, and the body gradually reached a height of more than 3 meters, covering the sky and the sun, like a giant. Compared to the first giant wolf transformation, that is, the breakthrough when he was on the verge of death, that time was quite unstable, and it was just a flash of inspiration under the pressure of death. 2 days of special training. It enables him to choose to turn on the giant wolf, control it freely, and further control the power. However, I have thoroughly understood the development of the wolf fruit after reaching this stage. If I want to go a step further, reach the awakening of the devil fruit and become a cosmic monster, it is quite difficult and requires time and effort. Take it easy, Howling Wolf murmured. At least, the current self is indeed strong enough. Goodbye, Zoben, Xiaochan, and Grandpa Mark. Todd was holding the pink pig, crying and standing beside the road with Maple, looking at the few people beside the old broken car. Xiaochan walked up to Todd and patted him on the shoulder. "Thank you for your care, we have been very comfortable these 5 days. Will you come next time?" Todd asked expectantly. "Maybe yes, come when you have time." Xiaochan shrugged his shoulders and said with a smile. "Bitch, by the way, I'm full of the water tank." Tien Zoben over there patted the body of the old broken car and said as if taking credit. Tien Zoben also went on to say, "There is also the communication system of the old broken car. I also checked it, and there is no problem, and I can go on the road." Seeing this, Mark smiled with relief. Mapua said to Mark, 5 days of rural life have taught your grandchildren to work. It seems that these days are still worth it. Let's take a slow walk. Thanks. Mark nodded lightly and led Xiaochan and the others into the old car. Watching the group leave, Tauda couldn't calm down for a long time. On the contrary, the little pig on him broke free from his embrace, ran to a wheat field, opened the straw with the pig's nose, and picked up something. That thing glows in its mouth and is swallowed by it. The old broken car went all the way. Xiao Chen and others started to get busy with their own affairs after checking the old broken car. Mark was very relieved. He drove the car along the road and continued to move forward, turning on the radio and listening to the surrounding radio stations. You must have been working hard these days. I will take you to relax and talk about what you want, where to have fun. Playground. Visit a famous school. Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben said quickly. The two stunned each other for a while, and immediately looked at Xiao Chen in unison. It seems that I have to choose. Xiao Chen smiled bitterly, avoiding Xiaowen's eyes. I have no idea about playgrounds, but if you want to go to a famous school. Night. The lights in the playground are very bright. After playing a round of the project, everyone had a great time, sitting on a bench, watching the people going back and forth in the aisle, and the roller coaster passing the track overhead accompanied by a scream that ripped through the sky. Everything. They all seemed so comfortable. I'll go get some ice cream. Xiao Chen found some change from his pocket and went to a supermarket in the park to sell some ice cream. While eating chocolate ice cream, he handed the ice cream to Xiaowen and Tien Zoben. I want to eat low-calorie ice cream, so I won't gain weight easily. Tien Zoben said a little tangled. Tien Zoben replied with a smile, it is recommended that you eat ice cream wrapping paper instead of ice cream, so that you will not gain weight. Tien Zoben, like you. Tien Zoben goes back ironically. Alien baseball, if you hit a home run, you can get an alien co-branded Walkman. From a stall on the side came the sound of the owner using a loudspeaker, which just covered the second half of Tien Zoben's words. Tien Zoben's eyes lit up instantly and ran to the booth. I saw a table in the corner of the booth, and on the table was a Q-version hand bully king, a total of 6, placed there like a stack of R-hits. As long as you use baseball to knock out all four-handed bullies, you can get a four-handed bully Walkman. While talking, the shop owner patted a brand new Walkman on the counter. It has the pattern of the four-handed king printed on it. It was obvious that he was doing well. Ask for flowers. This group of people used my aliens to make money. Did they get my consent? Did they pay royalties? Xiao Chen followed, and when he saw this scene, he put his hands in his pockets a little unhappily. Give you the money, and I'll come and play. Tien Zoben happily took out a few coins and handed them to the boss. The boss handed a baseball with a diamond god of war pattern to Tien Zoben, making Zoben 2 meters away from the four-handed overlord on the table. 2 meters is enough. Tien Zoben took a deep breath, held the baseball tightly, and threw it fiercely at the 6 four-handed overlords. 0. Boom! His baseball was in the middle of the four-hander, and the 6 four-handers all bent back. Monument. At this time, the boss smiled, took out a controller from the counter, and clicked the button on it. Boom! The four-handed overlords who had just bent and were about to fall, actually bounced back together and threw the baseball out. Hey, it's not fair. Tien Zoben immediately protested to the boss when he saw the flying baseball. Ho. The boss looked away and whistled, pretending not to hear. Obviously. Got hacked by a black shop. Did you hear what I said? Did you do something? Tien Zoben asked again angrily. The boss's expression changed, and he immediately reprimanded impatiently. Don't play if you can't afford it. To be honest, what I hate most is you little brats, who will do whatever they can for what they like, and they can say anything. You bastard? Tien Zoben clenched his hands instantly and looked at the boss angrily. I'll come on. Xiao Chen patted his shoulder, moved forward calmly, picked up a baseball, and put down a few coins. 100 million. Looking at Xiao Chen, the boss secretly laughed. This one looks more bullying than the previous one. Boy, I won't give you the baseball first. The boss held down Xiao Chen's hand holding the baseball with a suspicious look. You promise me first, don't be like your friend, don't admit it when you lose, understand? I'd like to bet. Xiao Chen ignored the boss's words and just said non-committally. The boss then let go of his hand, whipped up a few fries, and ate them one by one, without even looking at Xiao Chen, with a nonchalant look, as if he thought Xiao Chen couldn't hit at all. Xiao Chen, come on. On the side, Tien Zoben clenched his hands and shouted at Xiao Chen, 930 in a low voice. Taste. Xiao Chen put his wrist behind him, rubbed the baseball, and leaned slightly. Click, click, fake handle. The boss looked at Xiao Chen, and after muttering disdainfully, he looked around irritably. Taste. Where did this sound come from? Okay. The boss suddenly looked at Xiao Chen's palm, and saw that his palm was raised above his head and placed behind him, and the baseball in his hand was already showing bursts of fingerprints. Hey, isn't this? The boss got up hastily. Taste? Xiao Chen's palm suddenly turned into an afterimage, and when he slammed it forward, the baseball in his hand turned into a phantom and flew out. In an instant, boom, the 6 four-handed bully dolls on the table were instantly knocked out, and the baseball pierced the back mat and flew away without a trace. The four-handed bully dolls fell on the ground one by one, and there were broken places on each side, revealing the cotton inside. All broken. The boss stopped abruptly and stared blankly at this scene. Xiao Chen simply picked up the Walkman on the table and said to the boss, remember in the future, don't bully people, it's wrong to bully people. Cough. Well. The boss nodded dully. Here. Xiao Chen turned around and handed the Walkman to Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben danced happily. It's so cool. Xiao Chen, I didn't expect you to be so strong, so much stronger than me. Xiao Chen chuckled, that's it. His physical quality is a little stronger than that of Mark, the leader of the people on Earth. Tien Zoben quickly disassembled the Walkman, happily put it in his pocket, and returned to the bench with Xiao Chen. They also talked about the ins and outs of the matter. Baseball? Speaking of baseball, I saw a poster just now, look at it. Mark suddenly remembered something, took out a rolled-up poster from his jacket, and spread it out. Above is the pattern of two groups of primary school students wearing sportswear, one is blue and the other is simple brown. Caption, Cannons and Gentlemen in the championship game, who will win the Minor League World Series. Xiao Chen has heard about the Little League World Series. The so-called World Series is actually a group of elementary school competitions. It can be understood as the elementary school baseball game. Wait, the Cannons are my elementary school's baseball team? It's amazing, my school's baseball team made it to the championship game. Tien Zoben cheered. Your school. Xiao Chen was a little surprised and looked at the corner of the poster. The championship game will be held tomorrow, at the Williamsport Stadium. Grandpa, can you? Tien Zoben looked at Mark pleadingly. Mark happily said, of course, to be honest, I really hope that you will participate in outdoor sports and exercise more. Before that, you have to solve this matter first. His fingers pointed forward. Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben, and others looked over there. A group of robbers driving a car came to the playground and began to threaten the staff of the playground. Boom! With bursts of light, Tien Zoben flew over, the flashing star rushed forward, and Tien Zoben dressed as the lucky woman also quickly approached. 10 seconds later, the robbers were tied with ropes and knelt there. The flash star stood in the middle, Tien Zoben and Tien Zoben stood on the sides. The three of them looked like they were not surprised. Well, there is a robber, and there is a high probability that it will be fine today. Oh my god, is it an alien hero? I love alien heroes so much. But Iron Man is handsome too. Alien hero, you have to decide for me. I met a bully child. I suspect that he was changed by aliens. He bullied me. The people around showed undisguised admiration for the three of them. The most outrageous thing was that the original shop owner came to the flashing star crying and complained constantly. The flash star put his hand on his waist, and raised a 4.5 hand and pointed to the shop owner. How do you make money with my copyright image? The robbers said, those who do piracy can make millions of dollars a day from the image of aliens? They make more money than us robbers. That's it. Another gang of robbers said. Damn it, you scumbag slanders. The shop owner's face turned blue and then white, and he jumped up to fight with the robbers. Naturally, the three of them were too lazy to deal with such a thing as persuasion, so they dispersed. Tien Zoben was the most excited. I didn't expect him to have a small reputation. This is the way to Williamsport Stadium. The sky was clear this morning and I didn't encounter any traffic jams, just a little more traffic when approaching Williamsport Stadium. Soon, the old broken car was parked at the gate of Williamsport Stadium. With the identity of the Heavenly Union, Mark can pass easily. The game has not yet started, and the seats are basically booked out, so the entry and exit are also quite strict. You three, go to the stadium and have fun, I'll buy 3 good tickets. Mark directed at Tien Zoben, Xiao Chen, and the three of them instructed, and then walked towards the backstage of the Williamsport Stadium. Wow, what a huge stadium. Tien Zoben ran to the green grass court with great interest, as if the glory belonged to him. Hey, small class 16. Long time no see. At this time, a tall, thin man with a head as fast as a flashing star. One wears glasses, is slightly fat, and looks like a standard villain. The two blocked Tien Zoben's way. No way. Tien Zoben's expression became worse. How could it be the two of you? Case. Ziaja was stunned. He looked at Tien Zoben, but instead of lowering his head, he looked straight at him. Tien Zoben, this little shrimp, seems to have grown a lot taller. Case said with a smile, looking down at Tien Zoben slightly, but he's still shorter than me, isn't he? Weak chicken Tien Zoben. His palm fell on Tien Zoben's shoulder involuntarily, and tried to lift Tien Zoben with all his strength. Taste. Case's palm burst with blue veins. No matter what, he couldn't pull out Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben stood on those feet as if they were rooted, and he didn't move. Even if Keith exerted force with both hands, he couldn't pull Zoben in the slightest. His face was full of astonishment. It seems that someone is going to be unlucky. Tien Zoben watched this scene with interest, and folded his hands on his shoulders. Xiao Chen said with a smile, Xiao Ban's body is genetically enhanced, although it can't reach my level, but it is still much stronger than his peers. Case, stop joking with Tien Zoben and greet him directly. Ziaja was still laughing, thinking that Case was joking. Case let go of his hands and smiled bitterly. Haha, of course I'm joking. Tien Zoben doesn't look as weak as before. Tien Zoben's eyes were full of fighting spirit and confidence, which was completely different from before, etc. He was startled suddenly. Why are you here? Why are we here? Case and Ziaja looked at each other, and immediately, they both burst out laughing. Haha, Tien Zoben, you are still as dumb as always. Look at our clothes. Broken pieces. They patted their breasts. They were wearing dark blue uniforms with numbers printed on them, and they were the cannon's uniforms. Isn't it? You two are actually members of the artillery team. Tien Zoben stared at the two of them dumbfounded. Case seemed to have regained his self-confidence and smiled smugly. Of course it's because of our excellent sports performance. Unlike you, our results are not good in all subjects, and even our sports results are so bad. Actually, it's because more than half of the bench players and the regular players have had an accident, so we were selected. Xiaoja whispered to the side, but was beaten hard by Keys with his elbow. The two of them stared at Tien Zoben again, and Tien Zoben's expression gradually changed. At this time, Xiao Chen walked slowly and came between the two sides. Don't quarrel. Hey, who are you? Mind your own business. Xiaoja said arrogantly to Xiao Chen. Case didn't speak. His eyes were full of astonishment, looking at Xiao Chen in front of him. He always felt a little dangerous, but he couldn't say it. Is it an illusion? You boy, are you the weak chicken friend of the weak chicken Tien Zoben? If you don't let go, you will be finished. Case took a deep breath and reprimanded Xiao Chen with contempt. Only weak chickens can be friends with weak chickens? Look around. Xiao Chen was calm as water, but reminded the three people beside him. Tien Zoben, Case, and others looked around. There are 4 white lines on the field, and the 930 white lines are connected together, making it a square. At this time, a group of baseball players in brown clothes are standing on the white lines, holding baseballs. A man from the gentlemen? What do they want? Case and Xiaoja were instantly stunned. Go, practice. With a dark-skinned team member taking the lead to break the silence. The rest of the gentlemen, expressionless, raised their baseballs, facing each other in both directions. Xiao Chen, Case, and the others, stood in the middle, watching the baseballs from both sides keep hitting. Are you crazy? But someone. Case and Jay, writhing comically like a dance, struggling to avoid the baseballs, roaring in exasperation. Tien Zoben's actions were much quicker. In his eyes, that's way slower than Mohatha's laser line. Xiao Chen stood there, motionless, just shaking your head, sideways. These simple actions, is to avoid all baseball, taste. After Xiao Chen easily dodged the baseball 4 or 5 times, the players all turned to look at Xiao Chen. Immediately afterwards, they were very neat. There were quite a few more people, and they raised the baseball madly at Xiao Chen. Boom! Xiao Chen, who didn't have time to react for a while, was hit by a baseball in his shoulder, and it hurt. He was instantly furious, but he had to suppress his anger, speed up his body, and dodge more baseballs. Haha, deserve it. Who told you didn't dodge? Have to block over there and let our baseball? That's called deserved. Why didn't you smash this guy out? A group of gentlemen's team members sneered at Xiao Chen quite gently. Crack. Xiao Chen clenched his fists tightly and glared at the gentleman team player in front of him. He hasn't been so bored yet. Got smashed around by a gang of guys with baseballs? Boom! When he was angry, another member of the gentleman's team showed a mocking look and gave Xiao Chen another hard touch on the back. Damn it, he dares to bully the friends of the weak Tien Zoben. Only we can bully. No one is allowed to bully. Case watched this scene furiously, hugged Xiao Yu and fell to the ground on the side, dodging the sneak attacking baseball. Tien Zoben, be careful, we'll beat you back. Xiaoja on the side was also furious, patted Tien Zoben on the shoulder, and said loudly, down with all these weak chickens. The corners of all the gentlemen's team members raised their mouths and said sneeringly, what are you doing? Didn't you see anyone on the field? At this time, after buying the tickets, Mark angrily walked to the middle of the arena, pulled Xiao Chen up, and scolded the gentlemen players on both sides. Saw someone coming. The members of the gentleman team restrained, snorted coldly, and looked away, showing a nonchalant attitude. It's not the gentleman's fault. A tall coach with blonde hair and blue eyes in a hat came up with a stern face. What do you mean? Xiao Chen narrowed his eyes slightly and asked in a cold voice. Coach Gao directly frowned, raised a slap, and slapped Xiao Chen's cheek. What kind of attitude do you have towards your elders? Are you worthy of speaking to me in such a tone? Boom! Mark blocked Coach Gao's slap with one hand and said angrily, I ask you, why can the gentleman beat Xiao Chen and the others, and these 2 children? Coach Gao looked at Mark stubbornly, and after a few seconds, he said sarcastically, who told you to stand on the track? Don't you know there will be someone training here? You deserve to be beaten. Did you hear it? You deserve it. Haha, deserve it. With the support of the coach of the gentleman team, the people of the gentleman team are also quite gentlemen, and they greeted Xiao Chen and his party cordially. Incomprehensible, incomprehensible. Mark shook off the tall coach's palm, took a few steps back, and asked Tien Zoben, Case, and his party with concern, is everything all right? Fine. Case took a deep breath and clenched his fists fiercely. Damn it, our artillery team, our Bell City face, we will all lose our face. Zoben, you hid well just now. Thank you, Case, let's put our grievances aside and figure out a way to beat them with baseball. Tien Zoben narrowed his eyes with a rare anger in his eyes. What about Xiao Chen? Everyone looked at Xiao Chen slowly again. Yesterday, what a jerk. Xiao Chen stood on the spot, clasped his hands tightly, his teeth collided constantly, his face was covered with blue veins, like a beast, in a trance. Everyone seemed to see purple exhaust gas flickering beside him. Of incompetent fury, this kid. The men of the gentleman team were about to continue to mock, but Xiao Chen's aura was really dangerous, and they couldn't help but shut their mouths and just stared at Xiao Chen. His aura is terrifying. It's an illusion, it must be an illusion. Case, Jay stepped back, startled. Comment. Mark put one hand on Xiao Chen's shoulder and patted it. Xiao Chen's face slackened a little bit, looking expressionless. He turned his head to look at Case and Xiaja. Is the canon team still bad? I want to join. I'm going to participate too. Tien Zoben also said. Case and Xiaja were stunned, looked at each other, knew how, and immediately laughed. Have you two studied baseball? It doesn't seem to be. What's so funny? Do you want the cannons to be embarrassed on the field? Or, being humiliated by those guys with baseball is nothing to you? Let's go, we'll fight back. Xiao Chen clasped his hands tightly and said angrily. He's going to fight back on the field? These words pierced the hearts of both of them. A long time. Case and Xiaja looked at each other, and finally took a deep breath. Tell me your name, age, and height. Both you and Tien Zoben can join. Take back the face of our artillery team. Tien Zoben said in a low voice. After Xiao Chen and Tien Zoben finished speaking, Kesby made an okay gesture and said, you guys stay in the audience first, we will help you find a way. Good? Xiao Chen nodded, and Hishin Zoben, Mark, and others sat in the auditorium. The gentleman coach walked up to the gentlemen, gathered them, and said with a cold face, remember, although we scored 20 or 30 goals in the last game, the other side scored us several goals. This is not an honor. Shame? Next game, let them not score a single goal. Okay, shave their heads. Haha, make them never want to play baseball for the rest of their lives. The gentlemen's team members were expressionless, and they were all as cold as monsters. Coach Gouda led them to continue the practice. Looking at Xiao Chen on the stage, Mark and his group had itchy teeth. Mark quietly said to Xiao Chen, I think something is wrong with this group of people 930. You will play later. If they are human, treat them normally. If they are not human, just shoot. Don't worry, those gentlemen players. The actions are all the same. The same goes for baseball moves. Like a bunch of robots. Xiao Chen's face gradually cleared up, and his smile became brighter. Grandpa, with your words, I feel a lot better. The number of people in the audience gradually increased, and the time for the game was getting closer and closer. Inside the locker room, Case and Jay leaned against the two changing rooms, holding a large bag full of Coke Sprite. Case, we said it was given to them, and they would definitely drink it. Xiaja said with a smile, I added a strong laxative, and I'm sure it won't come out after drinking it. Case said, are you crazy? We are not decent people, and suddenly we give drinks. Who dares to drink? I teach you, you should do it. After the two discussed it for a while, they leaned there as if nothing had happened. Shortly after, two members of the artillery team came in and went out again, while Xiaja wanted to go there, but Case refused. Two more team members came in, this time one with glasses and the other with a short stature. Case skillfully walked to the two of them, hooking one hand on one's shoulder. The expressions of the two of them were somewhat submissive. Case, although we were selected by luck, we are a big artillery team anyway, don't go too far. Case pointed to the bag in Xiaja's hand. Did you see it? There's Coke and Sprite in it. It's super delicious. You can buy a cup for 5 yuan. You can only compete. What? You're making black money. Forcibly buy and sell. Hearing such an expensive Coke Sprite, the two people's faces were filled with rejection. Case's expression instantly became unhappy, and his voice began to threaten, you must buy it for me, otherwise. Xiaja sneered, do you know about Tien Zoben being hung on a tree? Does anyone else want this? Bjit, good, buy. The two gave $5 without tears, both bought Coke, and no one bought Sprite. Case threw Sprite in the trash, and with some pity, poured out the remaining glass of Coke. Must be finished. 5 yuan Coke, don't drink it for nothing. The two players who bought Coke picked up the Coke indignantly and drank it. Soon, grumbling, the stomachs of the two of them rang, and all of them showed embarrassed expressions, jumping in the same place. Case said generously, go to the toilet, even if you are late for the game, I don't blame you. Alas, in the summer, drinking an ice Coke might have caused diarrhea. Good. Under the effect of stomach pain, the two didn't think too much, and they rushed into the toilet and began to make an earth-shattering sound. Case and Xiaja looked at each other, smiled, and gave each other a high five. You are still in the mood to beat the hall. Locker room door. Xiao Chen walked in and asked speechlessly. Tien Zoben also opened the door and walked in, fanning it with his hand. The toilet stinks. Why did you guys come in earlier? Case looked at the two with a puzzled look. Xiao Chen said without hesitation, the auditorium is almost full. There are only 5 minutes left until the game time ends. If Zoben and I don't come in again, the two of you won't even have enough time to find us. Change your uniform. Case anxiously handed the uniforms of the two players to Xiao Chen and Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben's dress was a little ill-fitting. Xiao Chen wears it, and it feels that the clothes are made of steel, which is a bit uncomfortable to wear. This friend, we don't know what your name is yet? I'm Case. Little J. The two were quite polite to Xiao Chen, who was as tall as them but with a more imposing manner. Xiao Chen simply said, my name is Xiao Chen. Now let's go out and shave that thing called the gentleman. Good. Tien Zoben, Case, and Xiaja raised their fists in unison and responded loudly to Xiao Chen's words. Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben and others, under the watchful eyes of all the audience, slowly walked out of the locker room, each with a radiant face. Wow. There was thunderous applause in the audience, and the cheers were endless, and people in pairs were cheering. My god, is this the applause prepared for us? Tien Zoben enjoyed the applause excitedly. Case hit Tien Zoben on the shoulder and said speechlessly, "Idiot Tien Zoben, listen carefully." What? Tien Zoben was stunned. Xiao Chen's face turned ugly. Because the vast majority of the audience were cheering gentlemen? Gentleman's team is invincible in the world, blow up that bullshit cannon team. It sounds ugly. Haha, the cannon team has 2 crooked melons, a brown-haired guy who looks like a bully, and a baseball player who wears idiot of the watch, laughing to death. The gentleman team members on the track enjoyed the applause, and looked at Xiao Chen and others with mocking eyes, and even the group of fans with the gentleman team were extremely defiant and mocked. Only Mark and Tien Zoben were calling their names on the stage. Oh, it's so tiring, those people are all couples, they are in pairs, and they shout a lot more than us. Tien Zoben leaned back on the chair and complained, "Grandpa, when will you find a grandma? Give us a shout out." Mark looked at Tien Zoben and said with a smile, "I think your grandfather and I were with your grandma back then, and she was very beautiful at that time. My recipes are also based on her appetite." After Zhong Zoben heard the word recipe, he instantly skipped this topic. "By the way, how should I stand?" Xiao Chen and Tien Zoben joined Case and Ziaja, who knew nothing about baseball. Boom! Case almost fell to the ground, with a black line on his head, and quickly said the rules. Ha ha ha. When the gentleman team members heard it, they laughed so loudly that they couldn't straighten their waists. This is a random group of people who were caught from the main road and formed a wild team, right? I don't even understand the rules. They feel more relaxed. Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben, and others took their places one by one, and the 2 teams stood in their respective positions. The audience also gradually quieted down. The referee walked to the center, expressionless, with the count tables of the 2 teams beside him. The cannons play the gentlemen. The second round, start. The gentlemen serve. Damn, the gentlemen have the upper hand. Case stomped angrily. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and said confidently, "Don't worry, Zoben and I are here. Take it, you bastards." A yellow-haired gentleman raised the baseball bat and swung it hard. The baseball quickly turned into an afterimage and flew towards Xiao Chen, who was also holding the baseball bat. Behind him is Tien Zoben wearing gloves. Appeared, it is the superpower of the gentleman. The perfect parabola. The referee touted the gentleman enthusiastically in an instant. Obviously, it was unbiased. Xiao Chen looked at the flying baseball. Soon, Case, Jay, and the rest of the members shouted. But in his eyes, not so fast. But he has to learn slowly and learn how to play this baseball before he can play it back. Xiao Chen, do you call or I'll pick up? Tien Zoben's voice was unusually relaxed. Obviously, he was ready. Xiao Chen said quickly, "I have to learn to see through his movements and figure out how to fight back. Zoben, please. For flowers." "It's okay, I won't let them score," Tien Zoben said lightly. During the conversation, the baseball flew over Xiao Chen's side, and the gentlemen's team members were instantly happy, and the referee couldn't wait to announce the result. It seems that the gentlemen's team. Boom! In an instant, Tien Zoben turned to the side, his palms wearing thick gloves grabbed the flying baseball, and he played steadily. The audience was ready to applaud, but they held back abruptly, and the referee's expression became much gloomier. 0. This guy. Pretty. The men of the gentleman team looked at the server with a gloomy look, but Keith, Ziaja, and the others cheered and looked at Tien Zoben with a little more admiration. Start running? Tien Zoben ran with the ball. After some twists and turns, the ball fell back into the hands of the gentlemen's baseball players. The score was a rare 0-0. Damn, must succeed. The baseball player swung hard and smashed the baseball out in an instant. Xiao Chen analyzed the action again, and his experience in dealing with it became more and more abundant. Boom! Tien Zoben, who was behind him, also caught the baseball with great force, without holding back. The score is still 0-0, and some people seem to have become tortoises, and they don't know how to fight back. The referee said sourly. The audience applauded one by one, expressing their deep contempt for Xiao Chen and others' disgraceful style of play. The coach standing not far away, looking at Tien Zoben over there, his face gradually became cold. Member, there should be several more. The power of a few goals should be able to solve that difficult guy. No need to be polite to them. 100 million taste. Boom! A player slowly wiped the baseball, raised it, and aimed at Xiao Chen not far away. Murderous look. Xiao Chen was keenly aware that there seemed to be a faint murderous intent on that person. This murderous intent was a powerful killing intent directed at one person or a group of people. The gentleman's players are going to kill. I can't observe anymore, I have to do it. Xiao Chen clenched his baseball bat and decided immediately. Tien Zoben said immediately, Xiao Chen, wait a minute, just observe for a while. I hope you can win this game with 90%, instead of giving up halfway. Bring the artillery team and win. Understood. Xiao Chen's expression was full of solemnity, and his eyes no longer had any contempt for this game, but instead were full of solemnity. He knows. It's not just about taking responsibility on the field. There is also Tien Zoben and the glory of everyone in the artillery team. A little bit. Call out. Boom. The gentleman's team player was fierce, with 5 clear small dents on the ball, flying towards Xiao Chen, so fast that it was difficult for him to even see it. Tien Zoben was stunned. Immediately, the baseball hit his chest, causing him to scream in pain and slumped to the ground. Ah! He growled in a low voice, his face full of pain. Xiao Ban? Referee, what is he doing? Xiao Chen hurriedly looked at Tien Zoben and asked the referee angrily. So many people in the audience watched this scene, and their expressions were a little wrong, and they even began to whisper to the team member. Referee, we are willing to send this player off. The coach immediately filled with a hypocritical smile, walked onto the court, took the player away, and replaced him with a substitute. The expressions of the substitutes are the same, and the posture of holding the bat are exactly the same. It can be said that this group of people is like being cloned. This also makes it easier for Xiao Chen to see through the tricks of this group of people. Okay, send one off, stop pretending. A boy is still so squeamish? It doesn't mean that he will die if he is beaten. The referee first spoke kind words to the gentleman, and then looked at Tien Zoben with disgust. Said, you saw it. Tien Zoben resisted the severe pain, showed a smile, and stood up swayingly. Xiao Chen's face twitched slightly, but he didn't say a word. In the auditorium, Tien Zoben's seat was empty, and Mark made a phone call. Hey, that's it, I guess this game is the last game he presided over in his career. Haven't waited for the artillery team to react. Taste? In the exact same scene, a member of the gentleman team clenched the bat again and smashed the ball over, hitting Tien Zoben on the shoulder. What? Tien Zoben's shoulder, which was an arm wearing thick gloves, instantly knelt on the ground halfway, wrapping his shoulders and screaming. That member was sent off again. What are you doing? Ma, courting death? Seeing Tien Zoben's horrible appearance, Case and Xiaja instantly became furious and shouted at the group of people. Those people were mechanically cold. Without saying a word, Xiao Chen walked to the gentleman's team step by step, staring straight at one of the players in front of him with sharp eyes. The players also looked at him coldly. The smell of gunpowder on both sides was instantly strong. The referee hurried over to pull Xiao Chen, and scolded him while pulling. What's the matter? Do you want to hit someone? This is the arena, not a place for you to run wild. Get out of the way. Xiao Chen, however, stood motionless. No matter how much the referee pulled, he was watching. What happened? In the sunshine, the skin on the shoulders of the gentleman's team members has become lighter a little bit, as if it has faded. It's a robot? The gentlemen are all robots? Huh. Referee, I'm sorry. Xiao Chen suddenly raised his head and smiled at the referee beside him. His smile was bright, but a little cold. The referee was stunned and watched Xiao Chen slowly return to the team. This kid. Why is it so strange? Court death. Next time, let him go. The gentleman's player still looked arrogant, and the baseball player went down again and put on another person. Tien Zoben wrapped his shoulders and couldn't get up for a long time. The severe pain made him unable to move at all. Case and Xiaja were also pulled back by the referee, so they had to bow their heads and say in despair, if Zoben can't do it, we will lose. It's over, we don't even have a substitute. I should. Tien Zoben tried to remember, but fell to the ground with a pop. Forget it, I'll come. A pleasant voice sounded. Xiao Chen, Case, Zoben, and the others looked to the side in disbelief. Tien Zoben, who was wearing sportswear, wiped his bangs up and looked valiant, like he was dressed in the game world before. Girls? No, there's no such rule. And if you come to catch the ball, it will be even worse. Case and Jay said one by one in disbelief. Not anymore? Xiao Chen didn't change his face, he just said lightly, they won't play a ball with me anymore. Ha ha ha, just let her play, 4.5 is whatever. If the artillery team loses now, and we are 0-0, the score is too bad. It's better to let the woman come on, and we will score again. The gentlemen were very generous, smiling sarcastically, while agreeing to Tien Zoben to play, setting a precedent. The referee looked irritably at Tien Xiaohong over there. What a nonsense and a waste of time. Forget it, since the gentleman's team has agreed, let her go. When the audience saw this scene, they basically believed that the artillery team would lose. Taste. The gentlemen couldn't laugh. They saw clearly. Xiao Chen over there. There was a purple light on him. What's behind him? Xiaja looked behind Xiao Chen in astonishment. At the place on the collar behind him, the hilt of the Excalibur was outside, and the body of the sword was inside Xiao Chen's body. His whole body was flickering with a faint devilish energy, which was caused by the suppression. The people in the audience couldn't notice the difference at all, they were far away, and the sunlight covered Xiao Chen and others, so they couldn't see what happened to Xiao Chen at all. Nothing, just some fluorescent lights to make us more visible. Xiao Chen just gave an explanation casually. Case and Xiaja didn't get into it either, and returned to their positions dejectedly, apparently not having the slightest confidence in Tien Zoben. We surrender directly, it may be better than having our heads shaved. Stop talking nonsense, let's start. Xiao Chen grabbed the baseball bat and growled. The expressions of more than 16 people instantly became serious. Tien Zoben propped himself up and leaned on the runway beside him. He was considered a VIP audience. Although the gentlemen's team members were strange, they all returned to their positions, and the baseball player who served the ball stared at Xiao Chen. No matter what fluorescent lights you have on your body, I'll just smash you to pieces. Let's see if you can pretend. Taste? As he threw the ball with great force, a crack appeared on the bat, and the baseball hit Xiao Chen at a very fast speed. That speed is comparable to the speed of a bullet. Xiao Chen stared at the flying baseball, took a deep breath, and the baseball in his hand hit the approaching baseball in one go. Boom! The moment the baseball touched his bat, it turned violently, creating a violent spark, like a piece of steel. Can you stop it? Is this really still baseball? Case Xiaoja, and Tien Zoben at the back, the emotions of the three were rarely nervous. Taste. As Xiao Chen's hand hall burst into purple light, the power increased, and the potential was released to the extreme. His baseball bat swung out. Baseball is gone. What? He actually blocked it. How can this be? The members of the gentleman team on the opposite side were all taken aback by the scene in front of them, and they couldn't even laugh. And the baseball that was beaten back by Xiao Chen, their electronic eyes can't even catch it, because that's beyond the limit of what their eyeballs can see. Boom! Hearing a boom, the baseball that Xiao Chen hit appeared on the glove of the robot behind the baseball player. He held the baseball subconsciously, but the baseball was like a cannonball. It flew high with him, and disappeared without a trace. All their actions. It was even predicted by Xiao Chen. Next, I will knock you out, your backup robots, and knock you all to pieces. Xiao Chen slowly stood the baseball bat there, his face full of icy expressions. Said word by word. The referee and the tall coach were stunned for a long time. The surrounding auditorium was also silent. You, what are you doing? You kicked people out. The referee frantically ran over and accused Xiao Chen. You are attacking other players on purpose. I will send you off. Nice shot. Hey, bastard, what are you blocking? Get out of the way. An unprecedented roar broke out in the audience instantly. Countless people saw this earth-shattering ball. They stood up to applaud, scolded the referee, and told him to go away. Okay, that's amazing. Boys of the same age all stared blankly at Xiao Chen, who was shining brightly. And some girls looked at Xiao Chen with a hint of shyness in their eyes. Why do you think he looks handsome? This. Looking at the audience around, the referee instantly took a few steps back. Whoa! Case Xiaoja and others jumped up and down excitedly, and Tien Zoben showed a reluctant smile and gave Xiao Chen a thumbs up. Coach Gao's face was extremely ugly, and he held his hands tightly. What are you doing? It's 1:0. The gentleman, find a way to call me back. The referee hurriedly changed the score to 1:0, and the gentleman's robots turned grim as they held the baseball bat tightly. This time, it was Xiao Chen's turn to serve. He slowly looked at all the robots of the gentleman team in front, suppressed his voice, and said, Xiaoan, the lucky magic pendant is in my pocket. I think, knock everyone down in an instant? 07. Tien 930 Xiaoan hurriedly stuffed the lucky magic pendant into Xiao Chen's pocket. Call. Xiao Chen took a deep breath and felt a lot more relaxed, clenching his hands and leaning forward. With baseball jumping high, his baseball bat turned into an afterimage, collided with the baseball, making a bang sound, and the baseball bat actually had a tiny crack. The baseball was packed with unimaginable force and hit the opposing baseball player. Then, pop out and hit the second person. Bounce again, smash again. In just a few seconds, the baseball just hit everyone on the gentleman and finally bounced to the ground. I've been measuring just now, where can you robots play baseball, and how can they knock you all down based on your position? Xiao Chen looked at the fallen group of gentleman players. Said lightly, the lucky magic pendant helped him eliminate all the factors that were unfavorable to him. Just finished the lore. At this moment, the audience was extremely quiet, with only the sparse sounds of drinking and eating snacks. Damn it's bastard. Each member of the gentleman's team covered the place where they were hit, tried to get up, and looked at Xiao Chen angrily. Their reactors seemed to be damaged, they couldn't get up, they lay on the ground and glared at Xiao Chen. At this time, the referee reacted and ran in front of Xiao Chen angrily, pointing at him excitedly. You. Now, the light on Xiao Chen's body has disappeared, and the potential release has been released. He looked at the referee in front of him flatly, and suddenly interrupted his words. I violated the rules, right? I understand, I will end now. You replaced everyone with you alone. The referee instantly understood Xiao Chen's intention, and threatened again. I tell you, if you do this, your team will lose you alone, and they will definitely win. Yes. Xiao Chen showed a weird smile. The referee was stunned and looked behind him, only to see the tall coach looking gloomily at the gentleman's players. The place where the crowd lived. There's actually a little bit of electric light. It was their robot parts that were all damaged to varying degrees by the blow of that absolute force. The coach opposite, do you still want to fight? Tell me, why are you guys so stupid? Why don't you run away? Xiao Chen asked the gentleman's coach with concern, even a little pity in his heart. It's a pity that this guy was not hit. We admit defeat. The gentleman coach lowered his head in humiliation and said this. Coach, are you kidding me? Don't worry, I will help you send this kid off the field. How are your players? The referee immediately complied, looked at the gentleman's players with concern, and tried to pull them away, palm checking for injury. Go away, say it, admit defeat. A cold glow appeared in the coach's eyes. He instantly lifted his solace and kicked the coach away, and left here with the gentleman's team members in embarrassment. The referee folded his chest and sweated profusely. He actually kicked me, you bastard. Remember. Before leaving, the coach took a deep look at Xiao Chen with cold, vicious eyes. Xiao Chen smiled back and slowly put the lucky pendant into Tien Zoben's palm. Gentlemen, out of the field. What does this mean? Tien Zoben, Case, Xiaoja, and the others didn't react yet, and they stared blankly at all this. The referee was angry, deliberately picked up the microphone, and announced loudly, I announce that the cannon team has won. The gentlemen have not scored a goal, and all the members have been given a yellow card warning. Everyone in the cannon team is a hero. He fully displayed a spirit. The name of that spirit is the spirit of the grass on the wall. Win, win. That guy, a ball knocked over everyone on the opposite side. He was there to help his friend who was bullied by the gentleman before, and he showed a manly blood. Man, this is a man. In an instant, the overwhelming majority of people in the audience burst into fierce applause, cheers, and even stood up one by one to pay tribute to Xiao Chan. At this moment, it seemed that the praises of the whole world were prepared for Xiao Chan, and even the rest of the artillery team enjoyed this praise. If they lose, then everything will be reversed. Xiao Chan spread his arms and quietly enjoyed the noise. Countless peers looked at him with envy or admiration. His earth-shattering game was naturally reprinted, but because of the shooting, the picture of the potential release was not shown. Xiao Chan, isn't this too handsome? Sure enough, he is someone I like. In a car. A dark-skinned, but very attractive girl, Xiao Chen looked at the TV screen in the car with a radiant face. Next stop. She's going to study in Bell City? Wow. The artillery team, Tien Zoben, Tien Zoben, Case, Xiaja, etc. They lifted Xiao Chen up, threw it up, dropped it, threw it up, and dropped it again. Do you need it? Xiao Chen looked at them helplessly, and hurriedly retracted the Excalibur into another dimension, for fear of accidentally falling out. But, as a baseball player, he even brought an Excalibur to help sharpen the baseball bat, which is not a good score, right? That should have been our honor. Don't worry, he's finished. Hopefully, the robot version of him can be as good as him. In the darkness, the coach and the members of the gentleman team, all with red light in their eyes, looked at Xiao Chen and his party outside. Hey, what are you doing here? You deserve it. Although you paid me money, it doesn't mean you can hit me. To be honest, I think you are too much. The referee turned his head to look at Xiao Chen, mocking the coach and others, and walked in. He turned his head and saw the coach and his group in red light, and was stunned. In a blink of an eye, he disappeared into the darkness. After enjoying the applause of praise, Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben, and others returned to the locker room, while Tien Zoben went to Mark in the auditorium. When the two team members learned about the award, they were very excited. Great, we can go on stage to win the award together? Wow, idiot, this is the reward from Tien Zoben and this friend named Xiao Chen, and it has nothing to do with the two of you. Case ruthlessly hit the two of them, and said with certainty, this. Both of them had embarrassed expressions. Xiao Chen shrugged his shoulders, it doesn't matter, it's fine if Zoben and I don't take the stage to accept the award. Anyway, reputation is not that important to us, right, Zoben? He looked at Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben originally wanted to deny it, but he thought about the popularity of the alien hero and the popularity of his Iron Man identity, so he also let go of this matter. He smiled and shook his head, me too, it doesn't matter. Forget it, whatever you want, let's change into casual clothes. Kay silently changed into his own clothes, as did the others. It is worth mentioning that Xiaja looked at the clothes of Kai 930s and another member of the baseball team. I didn't expect that you are still fans of these two guys. On the clothes of the baseball team members, there is an alien pattern printed on them, which is Diamond God of War. Have a vision and like the Diamond God of War. Xiao Chen smiled and patted the baseball team member on the shoulder. And Case, wearing a picture of Tien Zoben wearing a steel battlesuit, raised the palm of his hand. You don't understand, the Iron Man is the coolest. He is not a pure robot, but a human transformation. It is us Earth people guard the Earth, not some aliens. He is the hero. Ha, that's right. Tien Zoben said with a smile. Case patted Tien Zoben on the shoulder, and said softly, I have more backbone than you. I specially wear this dress today to let everyone see my idol. His name is Iron Man. Bjit, said he, and Xiaja and the others turned around and walked out of the locker room. Looking at Tien Zoben, Xiao Chen teased and said, I originally wanted to intervene in your affairs, but now it seems that the situation is very complicated. Tien Zoben's eyes were persistent and his tone was strong. Xiao Chen, don't interfere in this matter. Let's stay and wait for Case and the others to come back to get things. There are some things that I need to settle. This is his dignity as a man, not a boy, but a man. Locker room. Case, Xiaja, and the others held the trophy and were overjoyed. It's a pity that Xiao Chen and the others didn't come out. Tien Zoben said regretfully. Some viewers who were close also saw the clue, but their doubtful voices were completely drowned out by the enthusiasm of the crowd. The podium scene was not broadcast, and many people did not know it. The boy who hit the strongest shot didn't even take the stage to accept the award. Damn it, what a shame, that weak chicken Tien Zoben has been beaten so much. He didn't come up to accept the award, but I came up. The more I think about it, the more angry I get. Case gradually became unhappy, bowed his head in shame, and threw the trophy to Xiaja. Unhappy, the two left the playground first and returned to the locker room. Tien Zoben has been waiting for a long time. Case, Xiaja, I want to say goodbye to me, what do you think? Tien Zoben said lightly, leaning on a cabinet in the dressing room. Case and Xiaja were stunned for a moment, then laughed immediately. Tien Zoben, don't think that you have played a baseball game with us, so you avoid your nose and face. We promise you, we won't rob you of food in the future. Fix it in a man's way, wrench. Who's in first? Tien Zoben sat on the chair, put his right wrist on the table, and said to the two of them very seriously. Tien Zoben. Very serious. Original. He used the flash star to teach the two of them a hard lesson, and he was relieved. In this world, he didn't get a small break, and naturally he didn't relieve his anger. This matter became his heart knot. He wants to break the knot. Tien Zoben, if you lose, you're done. Case also put away his smile, sat down in his chair angrily, and raised his wrists. Boom! The two put their palms together. Zaija clenched his fists and shouted cheers from the side. Ah! As Case roared, his right palm burst into blue veins and began to exert force. Tien Zoben's expression became dull, and his palm fell down little by little. Case's power actually suppressed Tien Zoben? Tien Zoben was even stunned. Ha ha ha, Tien Zoben is still so weak. Zaija sneered habitually. I thought you would be scary, and I even panicked. At this time, Tien Zoben suddenly said, but the moment I compared your strength, I found that your strength is pitiful. I am no longer the me I used to be. I don't need to be afraid of anything, anyone. Stop bragging? Case was enraged by Tien Zoben's appearance. Monument. Next second, Tien Zoben's palm suddenly burst into blue veins, and with a sound, the back of Case's hand landed heavily on the table, making a crisp sound. Tien Zoben. Case looked at Tien Zoben in disbelief. No matter how hard he exerted his strength, even if he stood up and pulled out his palm fiercely, Tien Zoben could still suppress him with ease. What? Zaija was stunned when he saw it, and his words trembled. His previous impression of Tien Zoben collapsed, and even made him unable to accept such a picture. Xiao Chen can be said to be the most calm person from beginning to end. He knows. Tien Zoben will definitely win. After going through countless battles of life and death, the Tien Zoben after genetic enhancement is no longer the Tien Zoben he used to be. Even if you take off that steel suit, he could also face his fears. Case. Then, conquer this fear? The reason why I pressed your hand is to let you experience what it's like to be bullied by others. Tien Zoben let go of his palm, and Case ran 947 back several steps due to inertia, and fell on the cabinet. Tien Zoben. Looking at Tien Zoben in front of him, Case couldn't believe that it was the Tien Zoben he knew. At this time, Tien Zoben was not only relieved, but he looked at Kylie as if he had not met his grandfather, and also a bit like he had seen Kevin, and everyone was not guided by anyone. Whether it is good or bad, it is also created by the environment. The difference is that Tien Zoben is much stronger than Kevin, and Keith is sandwiched between the two. Looking at this scene, Xiao Chen couldn't help showing a relieved smile because he saw Tien Zoben's growth. Broken pieces. Tien Zoben patted the sluggish Keith on the shoulder and slowly left the locker room. Case's heart was a mess, and for a while, his entire worldview received a huge impact. Think about it, and you too. By the way, I'm better than Zoben, I just want to leave things to Zoben to solve. Xiao Chen also said something to the two of them indifferently, and then left here slowly. And the remaining two players, you look at me, I look at you, that Coke seems to have some problems. After going out, Tien Zoben was refreshed. Xiao Chen looked at him with admiration. Most of the audience in the auditorium left. Mark and Tien Zoben stood on the field and waved to the two of them. Let's go, I'll treat you to a big meal and celebrate alone. Mark said happily. Tien Zoben jumped up happily. That's great. What makes him happiest is, finally, I don't have to experience the extremely insulting thing of children under 1 meter to eat for free. Several people left slowly, found a nearby high-end restaurant, and enjoyed the dishes. The restless Case brought Zaija and several other team members to the playground and started playing baseball one by one, as if to vent his emotions. What the hell does that feel like? Case looked very complicated. It was obviously very difficult for him to understand these words. At this point, the auditorium was empty. BGF. Only they were left on the track to practice. Sure enough, after winning the championship, you still have to stay and practice. The boy doesn't seem to be leaving. No change in their numbers. The members of the gentlemen's team came out one by one, and they all had no expressions on their faces, and they surrounded Keith's group. Hey, what are you doing? Zaija instantly became dissatisfied. Didn't you see us playing? Bang bang bang. All the gentlemen's team members did not say a word, but they were just a little bit closer to little Jack Keith's position. This suppressed fear made this group of people tremble with fear. What to do? Ruined. The rest of the team members all shrank together in fear, looking at this group of terrifying freaks. They didn't dare to say a word. Case was a little overwhelmed at the moment, thinking back to the picture of how these people insulted Tien Zoben with baseball. Anger surged up. At this moment, he held the baseball bat and stepped forward as if he was not afraid. He pointed to a group of people and said, "You freaks, don't blame me for being rude if you don't go away." Case, so handsome. Zaija and the others stood behind Case and said in surprise and joy. This made a ripple in Case's heart. It was a sense of accomplishment, an emotion that he himself could not understand. Called yesterday. Next moment, Case's anger was quenched by a bucket of water. A gentleman's team member stretched out his palm expressionlessly, bent the bat with one hand, grabbed it, and threw it dozens of meters away, smashing a lawn. In front of absolute power, Case shuddered, and finally took a few steps back. A group of people, huddled together. It's really a bunch of horses. Tien Zoben walked in from the backstage slowly, with his hands in his pockets, looking at the baseball jersey on his body. The expression on his face was full of helplessness. Me, Xiaoan, and Zoben, actually forgot to change my clothes. Really? His footsteps stopped abruptly, and not far away was the scene of the gentlemen's team surrounding Case and the others. On the backs of those gentlemen, there are still electric sparks that are only found in robots. The gentlemen are all robots. No wonder those people are so powerful. Tien Zoben muttered to himself while waiting quietly. Monument. In the end, before the robot could make a move, Carrie fainted from fright. Tien Zoben photographed the reactor on his chest, and a pile of steel components instantly wrapped his body. After a few days of slow repairs, the somewhat damaged steel battlesuit was successfully restored to a new state. Great energy fluctuation response detected. Great energy fluctuation response detected. The electronic eyes of the gentleman team members kept flashing, and they all became nervous, because not far away, there was a machine with at least 10 times the energy of them. Stop. Tien Zoben walked out of the dodging point slowly, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he warned the members of the gentleman team. The members of the gentleman team looked at his attire, and instantly raised their palms, and a pair of small short cannons slowly protruded from the palms. Yeah? A burst of electricity rushed past him. Tien Zoben stood in front of him indifferently and walked towards the second gentleman team member. And this robot. Gun smoke rose from his head, and he fell heavily to the ground, and the machine helmet was torn apart. In an instant, it killed our robot companions, and even opened the robot helmets. The surrounding gentleman team members looked at the end of the robot, and instantly showed incredible expressions. Although they were not afraid of this emotion, the computer calculated the distance between them and the enemy in front of them. This numerical gap can be described as crushing. Don't come here, or I'll just... The robot who watched Tien Zoben approach, hurriedly grabbed Case below. I'm just pretending to be dizzy, do you really think I'm afraid? Case woke up suddenly and tumbled directly to escape the robot's grasp. Taste? Boom? Zoben's face also became stern, and he walked quickly to the front of the robot, kicked the latter's body heavily, and made a sound of steel and steel colliding. It's a pity that the thickness of the machine body of this gentleman team member is far less than that of Tien Zoben, and he was immediately kicked out. Thank you, Iron Man. Case looked at the Iron Man in front of him in disbelief, surprised and happy. I didn't expect you to save me. You look good on other people and don't make them hostages. Tien Zoben did not respond to Case, but only said lightly, okay. Case hurriedly piled Xiaja and the others together, watching the gentleman team members vigilantly. Then, I'm on fire. Tien Zoben leaned down slightly, looked at the members of the gentleman team around, and took a deep breath. Taste? His reactor suddenly flashed a hot light, and the energy soared to the extreme in an instant. Boom, boom. The electronic eyes of the members of the gentleman directly raised gunpowder smoke, unable to measure the energy intensity in front of them. The energy is beyond our imagination. That light-like figure crossed the side of everyone present, and it only took a few seconds. Whoa. All the gentleman's team members fell down, surrounded by electric sparks, and the body of the robot seemed to be dilapidated. Tien Zoben stood on top of one of the robots, and slowly retracted his fists and looked at Case. How is it? It's not missing, right? No, their team members are all here. Case shook his head, stood up again, and said admiringly, Iron Man, I can ask you for an autograph. Boom! A figure flew from the side. In front of Case. Ask for flowers. One kick kicked Tien Zoben out. The tall coach landed on the ground expressionlessly, with a pair of tentacles stretched out behind his back, with a terrifying cannon in the middle of the tentacles' claws, and his feet were spitting flames. Fortunately I didn't come out just now, otherwise I will be killed by you of. Boom! Tien Zoben fell tens of meters away, fell on the lawn, and directly smashed a big hole, and the whole person fell into the big hole. Iron Man. Case shouted Tien Zoben's nickname, his voice full of anxiety. Coach Tall ignored Case's words and just walked towards the pothole, expressionless. That kick just now used all my horsepower, so you must be half dead. 0. He walked over to the pothole. Tien Zoben was surrounded by electric sparks. He wrapped his chest with one hand and raised his head with difficulty. What do you want to do? Why do you guys come here to play baseball? I'm going to arrest all the powerful people on Earth, recreate robots, replace them, and realize a robot world. The tall coach looked at him playfully and said, you traitor, actually helping mankind. Or, you're human under the armor too. I'll take you to a nearby machine factory and replace you with someone else. Thank you, for providing information. A smile appeared on Tien Zoben's face under the mask. Call out? He jerked his palm away, and the reactor on his chest was releasing a scorching light. Not good. Coach Tall's eyes suddenly froze, and his body subconsciously retreated. Bang! The heat wave-like rays of light erupted from the reactor directly engulfed the small half of the tall coach, erupted towards the sky, and disappeared without a trace. In situ. Sizzle, sizzle. The tall coach was only left at the waist, and the parts inside were also exposed, and electric sparks were constantly beating. 100 million broken. As soon as the wind blew, the broken robot body slowly fell to the ground. The waist part that connected the upper body was still hot, and when it touched the lawn, the grass roots were burnt black. Tien Zoben got up lightly and patted the dust on his body. The strength of the steel suit on me is not what you can imagine. Too good, Iron Man? In the distance, Case ran to Tien Zoben excitedly, dancing with excitement. You killed all these robot freaks. You take the others with you first and have a good rest. I went out to help the hometown of the gang of robots 930, and I took it out of the nest. Tien Zoben looked up at the blue sky. Taste? He breathed fire from his hands and feet, flew into the blue sky, and gradually disappeared in front of Case. Hero's strike. Case waved his fists in excitement, wishing he would fly out with him. When Tien Zoben disappeared completely, Case suddenly remembered something and stomped angrily. Damn, the autograph didn't arrive. If I did, then I'd be the first person in the world to get a superhero autograph. In the sky, Tien Zoben kept flying forward. He didn't notify Xiao Chen and the others about his attack, because he wanted to deal with it by himself. I can do it. Tien Zoben thought firmly. In the hotel, Xiao Chen kept looking at the time on the phone, starving to the point of starvation. I'm so hungry. After the baseball game in the morning, I feel like I can eat a cow. It really doesn't work. Let's start it first, and when Zoben comes back, I'll order a few more dishes for him. Mark also looked at the time, sighed softly, and said to the two of them. Xiao Chen was not polite at all, picked up the knife and fork and started to eat a piece of pork chop, while Tien Zoben paid great attention to his image and ate the lobster gracefully. I'm starving too. Mark sighed. Gollum. Stomach. Still hungry. It was Tien Zoben's stomach screaming. No, I'm too late. If I do find the factory, I'll just hit anyone. Well, go find a fast food first. Tien Zoben thought for a while, landed in front of a cart snack bar, and said hello to the boss. Hey, you, do you know me? You're a fireman? You're breathing fire. The boss was stunned when he watched Tien Zoben fall behind from the sky, then patted his head and asked excitedly. No, I'm Iron Man, and you took it for me. Tien Zoben was stunned and replied. Come on, take a picture. The boss hooked Tien Zoben's shoulder instantly, picked up the phone and took a selfie with the two of them. Tien Zoben involuntarily showed a scissor hand. Well, after taking the photo, I want to eat an express hot dog, can I? Okay, the express hot dog. Okay, here it is, take it and go on the road. The boss packed a hot dog and handed it to Tien Zoben, very enthusiastic. Tien Zoben, who was holding the hot dog, flew up to the sky, took off his mask and started eating. Cough, cough. I should tell the boss, don't put salad dressing, you should put ketchup. It's great, I got a group photo, and we will be co-branded hot dogs in the future. The store owner happily picked up the phone and looked at the photos inside, and the more he looked, the more satisfied he became. I don't know who prostituted who. When eating hot dogs, Tien Zoben also quickly targeted a suburban factory. Think. To build a robot, you have to ensure that there are few people nearby, right? And it has to be a large factory, so only suburban factories are eligible. In one of the factories, there was a baseball bat that fell there. Apparently it's a baseball bat left by the gentleman, or maybe it's used here for practice. Then, let me, Tien Zoben, go over here alone. Tien Zoben slowly landed on the gate of the factory, looked at the gate, and took a deep breath. Boom! He raised the cannon in his palm and fired a cannon at the gate in front of him. Gunpowder smoke instantly erupted from the gate, causing a violent explosion. In an instant, all the robots in the warehouse ran out in a hurry, looking at the gate covered by smoke, and vaguely saw the broken gate. Someone attacked us. What about energy fluctuations? The group of robots instantly surrounded the place covered by smoke, because they knew it. Enemies hide their 4.5 energy, lurking in this fog, just waiting to attack them, so it can't be approached easily. That's all. The smoke dissipated little by little. The blasted door and the cement floor near the door were exposed, all of which were dyed with a layer of black paint. But no figure was seen. Taste. In the factory at the rear, in the machines used to make robots. But there is a violent energy fluctuation. The enemy just fired a cannon here, and ran to our warehouse to destroy our equipment. Our equipment is finished, said the robot in shock. Inside the warehouse. At this moment, the huge mechanical production equipment ignited a raging fire, and there was a hole in the middle that was smoking gunpowder. Catch the thief first to capture the king. Tien Zoben slowly put down his palm that was smoking gunpowder, and said calmly, Damn bastard! The first robot had already run in, looking at the picture in front of him. It was furious. As a robot, you actually have human emotions. Tien Zoben turned his head to look at the robot in surprise. The robot's face returned to normal in an instant, with a cold look. Destroy you immediately. You can't let the little ghost in front of you discover the secret and the truth. Tien Zoben's combat IQ is basically completely qualified now, but his personality is still a little informal. He doesn't care about robots, but raises a pair of palm guns. SHHHHHH. A group of robots quickly ran to the robot's side. Each of them wears clothes, including office workers, teams, and even robots in the shape of artists, obviously to break into various industries. 16 at this moment, all of them, without exception, raised their turrets and aimed them at Tien Zoben in front. Come on. Tien Zoben put his hands on his shoulders. Instead of taking an attacking stance, I actually want to see if ordinary earth weapons can move my upgraded battlesuit. Court death? The palms of a group of robots burst into light, and in an instant, the light on Tien Zoben's side continued to light up, one after another, and it never stopped. A group of robots bombarded wildly for several minutes before slowly putting down their smoking palms. The front was already obscured by smoke. Only to this extent. At this time, Tien Zoben walked out of the smoke unscathed. No, he couldn't say he was unscathed. If there was a little black burn on his armor, he was injured. The armor on him is alien armor. The robot standing at the front is the only one with emotions, looked at Tien Zoben in disbelief, and said, "Taste?" A robot doesn't care and flies directly towards Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben turned sideways, and his shoulder just hit the chest of the rushing robot? What? He lifted his shoulders again, the two forces collided with each other, and the robot exploded. Another robot flew in. It was hitting Tien Zoben head-on. Tien Zoben dodged the robot sideways, and when the robot flew less than 1 meter over him, he returned to his original position and fell backwards. He actually relied on a heavy armor to suppress the robot's body, overwhelmed it on the ground, and directly exploded, with some simple actions that do not require energy consumption. Tien Zoben eliminated a lot of robots. The emotional robot looked terrified. The strength of this robot has undergone a qualitative change, which is incomparable to an order of magnitude robot? He has terrible alien technology. Okay, I won't play with you anymore. It's time to solve you. Tien Zoben's face turned positive after surfing for a full 2 or 3 minutes. He patted and counted the time for his transformation, and clenched his hands. Bang! This moment, a golden thunder was actually hitting the entire warehouse, like a rushing thunder with a bouncing effect, with infinite power, and every place it landed was a huge hole. It is he who is sweeping the entire warehouse at an extremely fast speed. Countless robots were smashed to pieces under this violent impact, and they didn't even see a little bit of intact machine parts. The power of this man is so powerful. The emotional robot stared blankly at everything in front of him and muttered to himself. Bang! When Tien Zoben's figure stayed in front of him, he suddenly reacted. Behind. There isn't a single robot left intact. Broken. Tien Zoben took the palm of his palm and gently landed on the emotional robot's forehead, with a scorching light. Extremely oppressive. We are all robots. Why do this? I don't understand. The robot responded, without fear, only puzzlement. Because you have killed a lot of innocent people. Tien Zoben said loudly and forcefully. The robot's tone became excited. 9:30. What do you know? The Earth actually hides a big secret? Many aliens and terrifying monsters will be born or attracted, and everything will revolve around the Earth. Humans cannot protect the Earth. Our robots are a better choice to replace humans? The big secret. Tien Zoben was stunned. Thinking about it this way, since this summer vacation, since a few years ago, some strange things have started to increase, and this summer vacation is especially serious. This is based on the conclusion drawn by the computer. The Earth will surely suffer catastrophe? Only our robots can protect the Earth. You are also a robot. With such a powerful strength, you will definitely be able to protect the Earth. The robot's voice just fell. Bang! The light engulfed his body. Tien Zoben retracted his palm and said lightly, I'm sorry. I know a man from the Earth. His strength is stronger than me, and he can also protect the Earth. In a computer room. Electronic screens are everywhere. One of the screens went completely black. The people in the room hammered the table, furious. Damn it, lunchtime. Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben, and Mark, all three had almost eaten, and kept raising their phones or watches to check the time, but Zoben never arrived. Get some clothes. What about? Xiao Chen leaned against the window and thought helplessly, could it be that something happened? On the side of the road, some children were also wearing the same jersey from the Cannon team, obviously wearing them out of admiration for them, and they even waved at Xiao Chen. The other party also thought that he was one of the fans of the Cannon team. Xiao Chen, I'm afraid something really happened, go and find it. After all, Mark couldn't bear it any longer. It's been more than 30 minutes since I went out to get my clothes. Isn't it so long? The hotel is only a short distance from the competition venue. Good. Xiao Chen nodded, got up, and while no one was paying attention, he opened the screen and selected the Vampire King, and then walked outside. When he came to the gate, he pushed it open. Someone outside was also pushing in, and the two forces collided with each other, causing Xiao Chen to only push out more than half. Ah, Xiao Chen, you're too strong. Don't push or you'll catch me. A familiar voice came from outside the door. Tien Zoben's hands burst with blue veins, and he stood outside the door holding the door, looking like he was struggling. Little class. Xiao Chen put down his hands, turned sideways and let Tien Zoben push the door over. I'm almost exhausted. Tien Zoben pushed the door open completely with both hands, with a bag on his body, and the three people's clothes were placed in the bag. I'm sorry, I ran into something in the middle, and I came a little late. It's okay, just come back safely. Xiao Chen gave him a strange look and followed him to the seat. What? Tien Zoben saw the clothes mixed together, and immediately got goosebumps. Although I have no cleanliness addiction, are you sure you want to mix your sweaty clothes with ours? Stupid, I don't have time to argue with you, I'm going to starve to death. Tien Zoben only ate one hot dog, which was not enough. And Mark beckoned to the waiter and asked the waiter to come up with prawns and steaks, adding dishes to Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben, who loves cleanliness, still chose the car door, went to the old car and changed his clothes and came back. Of course, the light blue top. All three bought many sets of identical clothes, seemingly never changing, but actually changing them once a day. Looking at Tien Zoben who was gobbling down, Xiao Chen always felt a little weird, and his eyes fell on the reactor in front of Tien Zoben's chest again. Somewhat bleak. Obviously a lot of energy was used. Xiao Ban, well done. Xiao Chen understood and gave Tien Zoben a thumbs up. Thanks. Tien Zoben was stunned for a while, then touched his head embarrassedly and said. Mark and Tien Zhao and Zhang Er were confused and didn't understand what the two good brothers were selling. It's a pity that God is not beautiful. It was gradually raining outside. Xiao Chen and the others sat in their seats and watched the rain. To everyone's surprise, in this rain, mixed with a hint of purple thunder. I don't know if it's an illusion. Earth, is there really any strange law? These purple thunderbolts have something to do with those dark creatures. They shouldn't appear. Tien Zoben thought tangled, until now, his body there is also a piece of ding element, which was originally preserved. These idiots have ruined my plan? Humans are fragile, and it is right for robots to replace humans. They don't understand at all. Looking at the screen on the monitor, the people in the room looked angry and helpless. He slowly opened the door of the house and walked out. The sun shone on his armor. Heavenly Secret Organization Silver Samurai. Those guys from the Eternal Warriors want to rely on people to deal with aliens, and they also use alien weapons to deal with alien weapons? These are not the point. The weakness of human beings is the point. Not everyone is Tien Mark. The Silver Warrior spread his arms and said excitedly. As for the dark creature thing, drop, drop, drop. At this time, the voice of the walkie-talkie came from his pocket. The domineering voice of the Eternal Warrior Emoke sounded. The group of alien creatures from the Silver Warriors who came to Earth are those aliens who are very similar to the characters of horror stories. They are going to make a big move recently, and prepare for battle. Understood. The Silver Warrior nodded. What are you going to do about the alien hero? This, Niu Hao's words hit the sore spot of the Eternal Warrior. He still remembered the scene of being pitted by 10 dislikes Kevin last time, and snorted coldly. Everyone knows that it was changed by the people of the Earth and used alien technology. That's all? I will find a way to take it and use it to deal with those aliens. Haha, Eternal Samurai, your words are very righteous. If I hadn't been familiar with your behavior, I would have thought we were good people. The Silver Warrior said with a smile, and hung up the phone. In the aerospace laboratory, a doctor in a white coat was doing research, but he didn't notice that the door was slowly pushed open by someone outside. Taste. A thin ribbon is wrapped around the steel element, and the doctor in the white coat is wrapped in it. Goal scored. Anonymous from the cannons hit an absolute 1, knocked over everyone on the opposing team, and held a 1-point lead. He really did it. On the TV, the host was generously and eagerly explaining a baseball game. Although the picture of the game on the day of the baseball game was a little blurry, it also shocked everyone in front of the TV with the beautiful ball of the boy. This ball, like one of the gods of the Go world, is the finishing touch. Anonymous team member? Haha, no one should think that Anonymous is a name, right? Xiao Chen leaned back in his chair and watched the broadcast about himself on TV comfortably. Yesterday's baseball game is still vivid in his mind today. Tien Zoben scratched his hair and seemed a little guilty for no apparent reason. Scare? Mark in the driver's seat suddenly turned the steering wheel and turned sharply to the side, and an explosion-proof car passed by in an instant. Boom! The old broken car leaned against the railing and hit it lightly, causing Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben, and others to almost fall from their positions. This is the bridge, who is overtaking? Xiao Chen looked at the explosion-proof car that passed one car after another with a puzzled expression on his face. It's like hitting a go-kart? This, at noon, did the driver drink too much? Tien Zoben also said indignantly. It's not right. Mark calmed down and said, it was a prisoner's car, but I vaguely saw that the person in the driver's seat was a prisoner in a prison uniform. These prisoners should have run away by carjacking. Carjacking? Sure enough, there are different dangerous things every day, I should get used to it. Xiao Chen sighed helplessly, and as he spoke, he raised his wrist and opened the small broken watch. Taste, monument. The flash star opened the car window impressively and got out. Grandpa, you drive slowly, I'll come when I go. While stretching his limbs and moving his body joints, the flash star kindly warned Mark and the others in the car. Bang! The next moment, a strong wind blew up all around, and the flashing star disappeared in an instant as if it had melted into the storm, and only a faint afterimage could be seen. All the vehicles in front of him are like ants, and he can step over countless vehicles with a gentle walk. Ha ha ha, so cool. We're finally out. This time we also put a guy with superpowers, no one can stop us. In the driver's seat, a dark-skinned man in an orange prison uniform sat in the driver's seat and hummed an old song from 10 years ago. Extremely excited. It caused the surrounding vehicles to avoid one after another, for fear of being hit. There is a small window between the front of the car and the compartment, which can be opened so that people outside can take care of the people in the compartment and keep in touch. There is also a small sunroof at the back of the car, which is used to watch the scenery when you are bored. In the carriage, the prisoners looked excited, but they were relatively restrained, looking at a bald prisoner sitting on the ground in awe. There was also a prisoner caught in the rear skylight, watching the scenery all the time. Suddenly, His expression changed. He hurried to the sunroof at the front of the car and stood on tiptoe. I really want to see a skinny guy following our car. Someone is following us? Haha, are you kidding me? The man in the co-pilot laughed. This is the bridge. How many cars have we overtaken? How dare someone follow us? As he said that, he inadvertently glanced at the rearview mirror of the car. Ask for flowers. On the rearview mirror, a tall and thin man was reflected. Okay. The man was stunned for a moment, wiped his eyes, and looked at the rearview mirror carefully. The figure in the rearview mirror disappeared suddenly, leaving only the cars that they used farther and farther. I'm really confused. Maybe it's because the food in there is not good, I didn't eat well, and I have hallucinations. The man patted his chest and breathed a sigh of relief, and he looked at the driver's seat with a hippie smile. Brother, you. His snot came out. The chain in his hand was loosened and he flew out. A look of horror like seeing a ghost. Hey, hello, how is this car going? I don't have a driver's license. Flashstar sat in the driver's seat, holding the steering wheel with both hands, nodded and smiled at the co-pilot. On a cable on the bridge, a prisoner was hung on it, with a dull expression on his face. Apparently, he himself did not know how he got here from the car. Ah, ghost. The co-pilot prisoner jumped out of the window in fright, broke a bone and collapsed on the ground, rolling back and forth. I'm going? Such a big reaction. Flashstar glanced at the person who fell to the ground in the rearview mirror and said speechlessly. Who? Monster? It's an alien monster. At this time, the prisoners passed through the skylight in horror, saw the flashing star on the driver's seat, and shouted. Nervous what? Flashstar said disapprovingly. I'll deal with him. The bald prisoner suddenly opened his eyes. Although it will delay the gathering of me and the members of the zoo, they should be very happy to be able to catch an alien in the past. Yee, that's the brake. Flashstar tentatively stepped on a handle. Taste? The speed of the car increased a lot in an instant. Well, just like in the movie, people who can't drive can't step on what they want to step on, and step on anything they don't want to step on. Then try another one. The flashing star stepped on the other side. The speed of the car obviously began to slow down, and he was in a comfortable and leisurely state. Threat to these people. He didn't care at all. Inside the car, the bald man slowly got up, took out a purple ore from his pocket, and directly swallowed the ore. 947 This, won't this get stuck in the throat? He's crazy. The people around were shocked when they saw this scene. They leaned back on the carriage, and their throats started to hurt just looking at it. Ah! The bald-headed man suddenly changed his expression, bent down and let out a low growl in pain. His face was twisted, and his bare head was actually full of hideous blue veins. He's really stuck, said one. Another person with keen observation immediately retorted, no, it's not stuck, you can see that his throat hasn't changed at all, he doesn't seem to be stuck, but it seems that something has changed. Shhhhhhh. Quickly. The bald man's head, limbs, and body actually grew dense layers of brown-red hair, and the skin thickness increased significantly, and gradually became tougher. Under the fearful eyes of a group of people, his pectoralis major became more and more bulging, and the tonnage of the whole person was the same as that of a bodybuilder. Except for the face and chest, the rest were covered by deep hair. It looks like a red-haired gorilla. Zitsize. His teeth were clenched tightly, they were actually fangs, and his eyes were full of violence. No wonder he has no hair. I know the reason, the one on the side said tremblingly, and the rest were even more sluggish. Because, where have they seen this kind of atavistic phenomenon? The bald man seemed to be hurt by this sentence, grabbed the man with one hand, and threw it towards the back of the carriage. Boom! The man actually slammed open the back door of the carriage and flew out. The back door of the carriage was open to both sides, and it was directly deformed. At this time, Flashstar just stopped the car. All his actions were so casual, because he didn't care about the incident at all. You can solve it by yourself. Okay, it's time to send some people where they're supposed to be. Flashstar clapped his hands, stood up, and looked at the skylight on the carriage. What he saw. It is a large red lawn. What? Last night? The red lawn moved suddenly, and in an instant, 2 holes were pierced through the carriage, and a pair of strong arms suddenly grabbed the flashing star that was caught off guard. Wang Wei used it hard? Call out? The flashing star was instantly blown out by this terrifying force without any precautions, and flew over the flyover and fell into the big lake below. The bald man withdrew his hands, kicked away a thin layer of iron, got into the driver's seat, and jumped out from the driver's seat. That sudden increase in height of 2 meters, on this road, seems to stand out from the crowd. Who? Using ding elements, let me have the power of genetic mutation and master the strength of primitive humans. The bald man stretched out his arms and enjoyed the power in his body to the fullest, which unlocked the power of primitive humans. And the king of humans. Accidentally careless. Aside. A soft voice came from him. What? The bald man's expression instantly became disbelieving, and he looked to the side. The flashing star was leaning on the car body, using the water droplets on its tail, and said calmly, if I hadn't reacted quickly and jumped up from the lake, I would have been stunned by you. You alien can speak human language? You also rely on the genetic power mutated by the ding element. The bald man looked at the flashing star in disbelief, and quickly asked back. What? Flashstar froze. Humans can actually mutate with the element D? No, cows can mutate, and humans shouldn't be a problem. He thought that the gorilla in front of him was the creation of Dr. Crazy Animal? He wondered if Dr. Pinguio had been reincarnated by someone. No, you don't have a purple pattern. Even someone like me who mutated into a primitive human has a purple pattern under the fur, you don't. The bald man quickly denied his conjecture, and immediately stretched out his hand violently to grab a 4.5mm steel pipe from the driver's seat. Click, click. He held the steel pipe tightly in both hands, and the steel pipe gradually turned into something in the shape of a finger tiger, which he wore on his right hand. Be a little more serious. Flash Star's mask fell, and the whole person assumed a fighting stance. Call out? In an instant, the bald man stretched out his muscular right arm, and punched with a heavy fist, full of the destructive power of primitive creatures. Boom! That punch directly shattered the figure of the Flash Star, and landed on the body behind, penetrating a big hole. What? Dying so soon? The bald-headed man showed a look of surprise and joy. Flash Star stood behind the bald man, listening to his words. It was not difficult to guess his joyous appearance, and directly stretched out his claws to grab the red hair on one of his arms. Sure enough, there are purple stripes on human skin, which is the power of Ding element. It seems that you are also someone who has eaten Ding elements, Flash Star said as he moved his fur. The bald man's voice stopped abruptly, turned to look at the flashing star in front of him, and the smile on his face completely froze. What annoyed him the most was, Flash Star continued to fiddle with his fur as if he didn't see him turn around. You, how dare you ignore me like this? The bald man clenched his right fist angrily, and punched the flashing star in front of him with a strong punch. This time, he could see clearly that the flashing star in front of him hadn't even bounced, but his fist once again penetrated the figure of the flashing star, and the figure gradually dissipated. An after-image again? Even though I was staring at him, he could still disappear from my eyes without any flaws. The bald man felt a trace of fear, retracted his fist, kept looking around, but couldn't find it again to the figure of the flashing star. It's here. A cold voice came from the roof. The bald man's eyes narrowed, and he looked at the roof of the car. The flashing star was standing there, his back was facing the sun, and the figure and the light were just perfect. Taste? Boom! The bald man raised his right fist subconsciously, but Flash Star would not give him any more chances. The flashing star jumped high, and the foot with the pulley was impartial, like a vicious whip, and hit the bald man's chest. Yesterday, there was a crisp sound from the bald man's chest, and the whole person flew to the railing in an instant, making a bang sound, and the railing protruded a large piece outwards. Cough, cough. The bald man looked hideous again, but this time, he was hideous for a while. His eyes were white and he leaned over the railing, hung in the air, and passed out. Flash Star's full blow. How could he be able to bear it? This guy's strength is similar to that of Mohatha's robot, maybe a little more powerful. The Flash Star landed on the ground, walked to the bald man, and quickly searched the man's pocket. A bit. There is no key element. It means that this person should have only used one, or that this is the way it was originally. SHHHHHH. The fur on the bald man's face began to degenerate, and his body size gradually became smaller. Compared with modern humans, he was still tall, but compared with primitive humans, he looked petite, especially his muscles were slack. No, don't kill me. He slowly woke up, looked at the flashing star in front of him, and said in horror, I have a purple gem on me, and I even ate it. It's gone. Purple? That's called the nail element. The flashing star asked in a deep voice, I ask you, where did you get the nail element? Yes, it's a monster. I can't tell what he looks like, because it was very late that night. I drank a little wine outside, so I was drunk. When the monster ran over, I thought it was a car coming, and I subconsciously blocked it, and was sent to a processing factory by that monster. Monster? Is it Janussi? Flash Star doesn't think mummies look like cars. The bald man continued, it's just me, a few other people, and some animals in the processing factory. The monster that brought me here fed us all amethysts. The animals basically died of rage, and the people became thinner and thinner. I am the only one. The mutation succeeded. Speaking of which, his tone had a hint of arrogance. Successful mutation. Flash Star looked at him suspiciously. The bald man explained, eating a purple gemstone, which is what you call the Ding element, will cause the creatures to mutate violently, some good and some bad. I belong to a positive gene mutation, which mutates into a more powerful force. After that, they let me go, and gave me a few pieces of Ding elements. Speaking of which, 947 Flash Star gave him a disdainful look. Then you used this self-confessed superhuman power to do bad things, and finally got caught. When I was caught, I kept a small piece of it as a result of trying to escape. The bald man smiled awkwardly. How much do you know about that monster, or that monster's organization? Flash Star knows enough about the genetic mutation caused by Ding element, and he is more concerned about the forces behind this group of dark creatures. The bald man said, I only know that their organization is called the Zoo, and I don't know anything about the others. My strength is very poor, and at most I am a peripheral member with little information. Zoo? What the hell is this name? Flash Star, suddenly stunned. After asking the question, he sent the bald man to the car, locked all the people in the car, and returned to the old car before the transformation event was over. Back in the car, he discussed the matter with Mark and others. Grandpa, it seems that those dark creatures do have some kind of conspiracy. I guess they, like the Skyrim organization, are some dreamland who dominate the world. Xiao Chen leaned back on the chair, speculating that the answer was almost the same. Now the enemy is in the dark, and we are in the light, so it's better to be careful. Mark said solemnly, tell me about today's plan. I will take you to the aerospace exhibition. I believe it will give you something to gain. Aerospace exhibition? It should be very interesting to go there and buy some rocket models or UFO models. Tien Zoben said, holding his head. He was also interested in this. Today's launch plan for the Novan spacecraft was terminated because of a strange purple thunderbolt. A large number of lightning seemed to surround the sky like a storm. The launch station was behind me, but the news came on the TV. It was a host standing in an open space, the space was endless, and there was a launch site at the back. The weather was unusually bad, with purple lightning flashes from time to time in the dim sky. Xiao Chen couldn't help but looked out the window. It was sunny here, but it seemed like the end of the world was coming. Purple thunder, purple element, ding element. Tien Zoben looked at all this and said something. Mark's expression froze, he took a deep breath, turned around and looked at Xiao Chen and the others. It seems that I don't need to take you to the space show, I will take you to see some real guys. Just so, me and the people in the spaceship program connected. Grandpa went down to know the remote Nawe people, and up to the people who knew the spaceship launch plan. It's really amazing. Xiao Chen sighed with emotion. Haha. Mark smiled and said, it's just some friends I met when I was young. Call out? He stepped on the car and drove out of the overpass, and he turned straight when he should have gone straight to the place where the spaceship was launched. He didn't even need to ask for directions, he must have known where the spacecraft would be launched, but there was no option to see the spacecraft in the plan. The launch site of the Novan spacecraft. Not far from the launch station is the research room. In the research laboratory of the University of Nyo, the conference hall was full of people. A man who looked like a gorilla, with a relatively strong body and a white coat, kept explaining in front of the blackboard. The blackboard was written with lines of characters and a schematic diagram of a rocket. His hands were still touching something. The propulsion slot I redesigned will significantly increase the boost speed of the rocket. If nothing else, the accelerated rocket will allow the spacecraft to fly into outer space at once, and we will be able to let humans go further. That. The doctor gushed about, full of confidence. The people around looked a little indifferent. A well-mannered middle-aged man wearing glasses got up, sorted out the documents, and said calmly, Dr. Victor, your idea is very genius, but you should know that after the failed launch, to rebuild the rocket again, we must just re-evaluate the rocket. It's not necessary, I'm very satisfied with my design, and the performance is beyond imagination. Dr. Victor is no longer confident but overconfident and arrogant. The flight director frowned and continued, but we are responsible for the lives of the astronauts, and the weather is quite bad right now. Enough. Dr. Victor looked impatient, and clenched his fists. This is the career I love the most, it's my ideal, and I won't let it go wrong. And I'm the doctor, not you, the flight director. The flight director's face turned blue and then white, and he raised his finger again. Also, do you think it's polite to do this? Not far away. A black bison was standing there, slowly eating the fresh grass on the plate. After being pointed at by the flight director, he was not annoyed, he just concentrated on eating the grass. You are right, that cow is my good friend, please forgive me. Dr. Victor was obviously wrong at this point, and pointed to the blackboard. That's all I want to say, let's go first. As he said that, he patted the cow on the back, and the cow swallowed a sip of green grass very spiritually, and followed Dr. Victor slowly away. This guy is rude and impatient. The flight director complained. The person on the side patted him on the shoulder. Geniuses have shortcomings, don't they? He has only been here for a month, and he has improved the rocket and made performance upgrades. Hopefully, everything goes well. The flight director sighed and said. The mobile phone in his pocket suddenly rang. After he nodded apologetically to the people around him, he went out and answered the phone. Mark? Hero, you are finally willing to call me. Even if I don't get in touch. You can't not see each other for a few years. Soon. The flight director warmly hugged Mark at the gate, but compared to Mark's size, he looked like a teenager. Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben, and the others looked at the distant launch site and the research institute in front of them curiously. Everything seems so high-end and upscale. Hello, 3 children. Even when the flight director looked at Xiao Chen and the others, he didn't show any contempt. Are you thirsty on the road? Would you like some iced drinks? Coke, juice, Sprite, all are fine. No need, thank you, Xiao Chen said. Hehe, if you want, go get it. All the drinks and snacks in the vending machines in our research institute are free of charge. You can get them with just one click. The flight director said enthusiastically, then looked at Mark, and the two chatted eagerly as they walked in. And Xiao Chen, Tien Zoben, and the others followed behind, watching everything around. The walls are covered with various photos, including the first person in the human world to land on the moon, and the first discovered meteor. Who is this guy? Xiao Chen stopped in surprise and pointed to a photo on the wall. In the photo, it is a tall and thin man with heroic facial features. His eyebrows are a bit like Mark, and his eyes are as firm and gentle as 947. It's just that this person is wearing a spacesuit and holding a space helmet, which makes people a little unbelievable. The flight director put a touch of memory in his eyes and praised, "This is your grandfather Mark, that's what he looked like when he was young, and he was originally asked to be the first astronaut to land on the moon. He was the best spaceman at that time. Astronaut. What? Mark was stunned, looking at himself when he was young, with some thoughts in his heart. If he had not dealt with Mahaz at first, but had been an astronaut, he might have achieved both his reputation and reputation. Even Zioben's father will be proud of himself, and the poor family relationship will improve. I had something to do at the time, so I didn't go, but I don't regret it. In just a few seconds, Mark untied his knot and smiled indifferently. It's okay to go to the moon for another person. When, Bjit, the Earth can deal with the waste of JAS, changing people can't. It's amazing, Grandpa. Tien Zoben and Tien Ziaoan both look adored. Xiao Chen, who had long known Mark's legendary identity, was the most calm. Wow, there are a lot of young photos of Grandpa. Tien Zoben kept walking forward, looking at the photos on the walls on both sides. He couldn't stop sighing. Zoben, Zoben. Xiao Chen hurriedly reminded Tien Zoben, because Tien Zoben was walking towards him. The man watched Tien Zoben looking around, but he didn't stop, but slammed into it. What? As soon as Tien Zoben let out a doubt, he slammed into the person and was knocked to the ground. The man's face was gloomy, and his eyes stared straight at Tien Zoben. Little boy, you have to see the way when you walk, do you understand? Xiao Chen ran to Tien Zoben and helped him up, staring at the man with sharp eyes. What do you mean? You could have reminded Zoben, but you didn't. This sharp look, only a battle-hardened soldier can have, makes Dr. Victor feel a little dazed. This kid. Dr. Victor clenched his hands tightly, his face ashen. You shouldn't come here. Only the astronauts and the person in charge can come here. You are outsiders. He said fiercely. What's the name of this friend? Xiao Chen's polite tone contained terrible anger, and he stretched out his hand to ask. When Dr. Cuedo saw the watch on his wrist, he was stunned, no longer arguing, and turned and left here. This guy stinks even more than a rat in a sewer. Tien Zoben got up angrily and said. The flight director ran over and said apologetically, I'm sorry, that's Dr. K, who is in charge of our project, Dr. Vito. He is very capable, but he's a weirdo. I didn't expect him to be intriguing with your children. It's okay, friend. Mark shrugged and said, and patted Xiao Chen and Zoben on the shoulders again. Xiao Chen pursed his eyes, Grandpa, and this uncle of the flight director, I think this person seems to like my watch, I have to go check it out. I am going too. Tien Zoben and Tien Ziaoan said in tandem. This time they are going to take the initiative? Soft. The flight director immediately became anxious, but was left behind by Grandpa Mark using an invincible and muddy method. He kept joking and dragged him hard. Bang bang bang! The three of them ran towards the depths of the corridor, but the further they went, the darker and darker they became, and the voice-activated lights stopped responding at all. They had no choice but to walk forward in disguise, staring at the dark place in front of them nervously, daring not to take anything lightly. Gradually, Xiao Chen didn't know how long he had been gone, at least 4 or 5 minutes. While looking ahead, he asked aloud, Zoben, Ziaoan, you. As soon as the voice came out, Xiao Chen was startled by himself, because his voice echoed in the corridors around, and there was no one at all. Zoben and Ziaoan are gone? Little devil, I'll subdue you first, and I won't give you any means to fight back. A mob's low roar suddenly came from the darkness. Taste. The voice-activated lights turned on in an uproar at this moment, and the whole corridor was flickering with lights. A stout figure, with batteries on both shoulders, electromagnetic waves, and a strange pale green skin appeared in front of Xiao Chen. Boom! His heavy fist swung out brazenly and landed heavily on the defenseless Xiao Chen. In an instant, Xiao Chen's small body flew high, flew several dozen meters away, and then slammed onto the ground, making a deafening sound that rippling back and forth. Dr. Victor retracted his heavy punch, and a trace of unbearable flashed in his eyes. Who made you throw yourself into the trap? Obviously you can pretend to be blind. Saying that, he slowly walked towards Xiao Chen, and a smile appeared in his corner. Darkness, the three of you lose your sense of direction, separate, and then break them one by one. In a room. Tien Zoben was very puzzled. How did he get into the room? And this room is extra large, as big as a living room, and there are large devices in operation everywhere. Going around the equipment, he came to a rest area with sofas, a place to drink tea, and a large sports room for exercising. Exercise in the gym. Ho. A black bison is lying on a sofa, with 2 hooves in front of it sandwiching an oversized barbell, constantly raising and lowering it. A pair of hooves are actually full of muscles. What is this? Did I come to the wrong theater? Looking at this scene, Tien Zoben's eyes almost didn't fly out, his mouth opened wide, and he looked shocked. Can cows do this kind of exercise? As the saying goes, take a walk after a meal and live to be 99. I just finished eating a green grass meal, so I need to exercise my muscles. The bison's mouth was actually a standard human speech, and it also carried a strange proverb that Tien Zoben had never heard of. A talking cow. Tien Zoben was even more surprised and took a step back. Fortunately, it was Zoben, and the others had already fainted from fright. Wild said, what's so rare about this? Boy, I think you're pretty good. You don't dislike my old cow, you can just call me the Bull Demon King. The Bull Demon King is such a weird name. Tien Zoben scratched his ears. The buffalo looked annoyed and angry. Boy, don't interrupt. You know, I have searched many books in the world, some about dogs and some about wolves, but I didn't write about the bravery of my cattle clan. The story? The Bull Demon King, I finally found it, so I also learned the culture there. I'm sorry, then I'll call you the Bull Demon King. Bull Demon Lord, how did you become like this? Tien Zoben started chatting. But the bison snorted coldly, do you know the etiquette of hospitality? Before asking others, why not introduce yourself? Cough, my name is Tien Zoben. Tien Zoben introduced himself and began to introduce himself eloquently. But the bison didn't listen to the words behind. His eyes were filled with grief and anger. I didn't expect you to be the target, so don't blame the old cow for being cruel. What? The muscles of his limbs swelled like a balloon, and his pectoralis major muscles were full. He directly lifted the 1-meter-long barbell as a toy and threw it at Tien Zoben. Boom! The barbell pressed Tien Zoben's figure and flew out more than 10 meters away, hitting the equipment in the distance, directly causing a huge smoke, covering the surrounding equipment. For flowers. Watching this scene, the Bull Demon King wiped his tears with grief and indignation. Zoo member, Bull Demon King, has accomplished his goal. Fortunately, he did not lose his life. Tien Zoben was also in the corridor. She is rather unlucky. As I was walking, I suddenly stepped on a bandage on the sole of my foot. Then the bandage wrapped around her ankle like a rope and hung her upside down. In an instant, several bandages wrapped around her and turned her into a mummy, and hung on the floor like a cocoon. The mummy jumped down from the ceiling vent, with a satisfied sneer on his face. I know you humans will meddle in your own business. I don't know how well Janice's mission is done. Already. Be careful. Mark pushed the terrified flight director away heavily, looked at Janice who was rushing towards him, picked up the trophy on the table next to him, and smashed it in person. Janice's face was startled. He never thought that this old man would fight back. Boom! The pure gold trophy was waved by Mark with both hands and hit Janice directly on the cheek. He howled and fell to the ground with his tail tucked. Old friend. Mark raised his head, looked at Janice with bad eyes, and held the trophy tightly. This wolf seems to be lost and needs my help. You don't suggest me to help him alone and find his problem. Bar. You, please be busy. The flight director immediately changed it to honorific, because he knew that the invincible Mark was back. Billion the flight director ran away. Although it was shameful to do so, he knew very well that his abilities were limited and he could not help Mark, and staying here would only cause trouble. Call. Mark slowly raised his sleeves, raised the gold trophy with a little effort in his left hand, and picked up a club on the wall with his right hand, looking at Janice who was about to get up. I have to ask you, why you are here. We have not figured out how you bullied my grandson last time. Broken pieces. Janice took a few steps back in horror and looked at Mark, who was subconsciously scared. In the hallway, Dr. Victor slowly walked to the ground in front of Xiaochan. Xiaochan's 947 eyes were tightly closed, his head was tilted aside, and his limbs were naturally relaxed. I fainted. Dr. Victor quickly judged Xiaochan's state, and stretched out a hand and slowly landed on Xiaochan's neck. I have to start as soon as possible. I have to write a diary when I go back. Click. A clear voice rang out in the corridor. In the sports room, the Bull Demon King still felt pity for this and sighed. Crack clap. The sound of steel assembly sounded, and it came from the smoke, which looked very strange. What kind of sound is this? Where is the evildoer? The Bull Demon King said in shock. The barbell flew out of the smoke and slammed straight into the Bull Demon King's body, but only hit his pectoralis major and was knocked to the ground. Tien Zoben flew out slowly, but instead of attacking the Bull Demon King, he landed on one knee with his fist hanging on the ground, landing like a superhero. You are still alive. The Bull Demon widened his eyes in disbelief. I remember that the barbell hit you. It did hit me. Tien Zoben got up and patted his chest. I have a reactor on my chest. When the barbell flew over, the area of force, or the point of force. The Bull Demon King reminded. Yes? Anyway, this reactor is raised. It first received force feedback and then extended the suit to protect my back and chest. I fell on the equipment and finally completed the assembly. Tien Zoben nodded, and he rubbed his back as he said, it hurts so bad. Broken. Boom. In an instant, the Bull Demon King landed on all fours and exerted force violently. His entire body bounced in front of Tien Zoben like lightning, and a pair of bullhorns slammed in front of Tien Zoben. With the sound of boom, Tien Zoben directly smashed the equipment one by one, smashed the wall, and flew into the next room. The Bull Demon King got up again and rushed towards the next room, smashing a whole wall. The next room is also a meeting room. The Bull Demon King stood on the podium and looked at the seats around him, but he couldn't find Tien Zoben. Don't blame me, the weeds have to be rooted out. This is what I read in the book. Soft? What about people? All of a sudden, Tien Zoben fell from the ceiling and pressed against the Bull Demon King's back, with his arms between his arms. The Bull Demon King hurriedly exerted his strength, using his body, but he couldn't use Tien Zoben, and he used his arms to break free. Click. Tien Zoben's arms began to crack, but in the next second, strange arcs flashed across his body, and his whole body became a notch stronger, instantly suppressing the limbs of the Bull Demon King. The soles of his feet spurted flames, and he flew to the ceiling with the Bull Demon King, and then threw the ladder back with inertia, and smashed into the equipment room. Bang bang bang! Facing the Bull Demon King in the equipment room, Tien Zoben stretched out his palm directly, and boldly used his cannon, bombarding everything inside. There was a burst of smoke, and there was an endless stream of blasting sounds inside, and the whole house was shaking and falling into ashes. From the outside, the house was even more opened by the light. No matter what kind of cow you are, I'm going to turn you into a roasted whole cow today. Tien Zoben put down his palms and said domineeringly with gunpowder smoke from the muzzle of his palms. Taste? A large piece of iron suddenly flew from the smoking house. Tien Zoben raised his hand subconsciously and blew up the piece of iron. The smoke bloomed in front of him, just right, blocking his vision. Oops. Tien Zoben was in the smog, and he didn't dare to be a living target while floating in the air, and landed gently on the ground. When he landed, the ground shook, and a huge creature in the smoke approached quickly, like a car crashing. And the description of the bald man. It seems to be exactly the same. Well done, you can't beat me. Tien Zoben clenched his hands tightly and let out a low roar. He actually flew towards the bull demon king, without the slightest fear. Lao Niu, if you can hold you back, that's victory. The demon king of the bull thought silently. Boom! The figures of the two collided, the tables and chairs in the entire room were torn apart, and the walls were cracked at a speed visible to the naked eye, spreading to every corner, without exception. Broken. 4.5. Looking closely, the figure of the bull demon king retreated slightly. Haha, you monsters, appearing in a place like this purple thunderbolt, must have some kind of element, right? You have the ability to eat and fight with me. Tien Zoben frantically provoked. Talking about this, the bull demon king's face did not fluctuate, only a trace of enthusiasm flashed in his eyes. You don't know what we want to do. The mummy walked towards the movement in the hallway. After thinking about it, he decided to help destroy Tien Zoben first. This kid, the number 2 person in this team, is prone to surprises at critical moments, so it cannot be taken lightly. You should be sure of my life and death before leaving. A confident voice sounded. Mummy was stunned for a moment, then turned around abruptly, and saw Tien Zoben glowing all over, floating in the dark corridor, as elegant as an angel. She gently shook the pendant in front of her, and the various magic pendants inside, raised the palm of her hand, and hooked her fingers towards the mummy. Hey! The mummy snorted angrily and stretched out 10 thin ribbons around it. Boom! Tien Zoben's palm actually released a fiery fire. The fiery fire touched the fastest steel belt, and spread up instantly, like a snake, constantly swallowing the bandage and pulling out the dust. Oops! Mummy's expression became tense. She stretched out another finger and directly cut off the ignited finger, falling to the ground next to her, and looked at Tien Zoben floating in the sky with fear. The ability of this person is very tricky. Bang bang bang! Tien Zoben waved his hand again and continuously released fireballs to attack the mummy. The mummy rolled wildly around, moving, dodging fireballs again and again, and once a spark floated on him, he hurriedly extinguished the fire. It was actually suppressed badly by Tien Zoben. Can't hide? Try this. Tien Zoben raised his other hand at the ceiling and released several fireballs the size of ping-pong balls. Hit against the ceiling? Is this girl crazy? The mummy froze. Taste. Tien Zoben's floating magic pendant suddenly lit up. That floating force, pulling the flying fireball, actually fell towards the mummy in front. Mummy was shocked, twisted her body to avoid the fireball, and didn't have time to breathe a sigh of relief. Tien Zoben's palm was pulled back again, and those fireballs were actually shot back again, making the mummy hard to guard against. Her combat experience and skills with Zoben are also gradually increasing, and she has learned the level of various abilities. You know, Xiaochan is not the only one who has become stronger. It's just that he's become too strong. The mummy's body couldn't stop twisting, and the posture was funny, like dancing, and Tien Zoben only needed to control the fireballs with one hand to hit the mummy. It made her curious. Among the 10 fingers of the mummy, the ignited finger never grew out. Why is that? Damn humans. The mummy jumped up angrily, dodged the fireball's attack, and repeatedly backflipped, trying to escape Tien Zoben's attack range. And Tien Zoben also chased forward step by step, and fell to the ground involuntarily. Monument. When she landed on the ground, the solace of her feet stepped on the half-burned steel belt on the ground. In an instant, boom, the pin belt suddenly bent and hugged Tien Zoben's feet, causing her to fall to the ground unbalanced, and the fireball also hit the ceiling. Finally, fooled. The mummy roared excitedly and rushed towards Tien Zoben in an instant. 9 bandages wrapped Tien Zoben firmly again, and the remaining one flew back to his fingers and grew into one body again. Die. This time, he did not soften his heart at all, and tightened the bandage directly, letting Tien Zoben breathe, and gradually lost his ability to struggle. Tien Zoben and Bull Demon were still fighting for 500 rounds. Dr. Victor was in the laboratory. After recording the diary, he closed it, and then he began to continuously debug the data of the spacecraft, the effect. And Mark here. It's settled. Mark wiped the layers of sweat on his forehead, looked at Janice, who was lying in front of him like a good dog, and looked around apologetically. Photo albums, glass cases, and vending machines in the hallway were all broken. They were all used to fight Janice. As long as he has any furniture or weapons near his mark, he is invincible. What makes human beings stronger than you is that we can make good use of tools. As soon as he finished speaking, Mark raised the trophy and smashed Janice's head hard. Boom! Yanushik's eyes turned white in an instant, and he fainted, and it seemed that he couldn't wake up for 10 minutes. 947 I don't know what happened to Xiaochan and the others. Mark didn't plan to make up the knife. In fact, he stunned Yanussi with that one blow, and his palm lost his strength, so he couldn't make up the knife at all. He could only push the vending machine on Yanussi's body at will, let each vending machine press on Yanussi's body, forming a weight suppression, and then hurriedly ran into the corridor. Run more and more forward. The sound around them gradually became louder, and it seemed that someone was blasting. Small class. When Mark ran through the equipment room, he saw smoke bursting inside, two figures constantly fighting, and then looking at the corridor ahead, it was pitch black. He suddenly realized, Zoben and the others are separated. People in the dark are prone to lose their sense of direction, so Zoben is the first to get separated. It seems that Zoben is not bad, at least he can fight the enemy without falling behind. Mark moved on. Xiaoan and Xiaochen, should they be better than the other? It must be so. Mummy kept tightening the bandages, according to his calculations, let alone Tien Zoben, even an adult would definitely die. He loosened the bandage slightly, exposing Tien Zoben's head. I saw Tien Zoben's face with a little pain, still breathing the air hard, not like a dying person at all. Impossible. The mummy tightened the bandage again in disbelief. At this moment, strands of golden light permeated Tien Zoben's tattoo, like the protection of the goddess of luck. The light was so weak that when Tien Zoben was trapped inside, the mummy didn't even see it. That holy light not only protect Tien Zoben's body, but also let her live. It also shone little by little on the mummy's body. Size. The holy light was like the sun's rays, burning the mummy's body to a large area of charred black, so painful that he stretched out 10 fingers to keep the light far away from him. Lucky magic pendant, what's going on? Tien Zoben was very surprised. Maybe Xiaoan is now in a mortal situation, and there is no possibility of escaping. That is to say, the only function of the lucky magic pendant is to make Tien Zoben lucky not to die. Activate the lucky pendant directly to full power mode. In the past, Tien Zoben, her mana could not support the full strength of the magic pendant. I don't believe it. If you can't kill you, take down your magic sword first. The mummy thought angrily, retracting a finger and wrapping it around Tien Zoben's magic pendant. Bang bang bang. Suddenly, there were footsteps from the corridor, and the footsteps were dull, not like Yanussi's light footsteps. Mummy was in a cold sweat in an instant, pushed open the door of the room on the side, and hid in. Strange. Mark walked slowly through this corridor, looked around, puzzled. I heard a sound here just now, is it a hallucination? He was a little puzzled, but he continued to walk forward, because of the battle with Janussi. He looked very tired. In the room, the hiding mummy looked incredulous. Janussi got knocked down by an old man who's about to lose his teeth? If you say this, you will laugh out the big teeth of the big guy. Janussi, come here quickly. At this moment, a voice came from the mummy's pocket. He quickly removed a bandage on his body, actually took out a walkie-talkie from his body, and let out a roar like a snake. Did Janussi fail? It doesn't matter, my side is over long ago. Dr. Victor was stunned for a moment, and then said, we have to complete our great plan, and we have no time to worry about Janussi and the life of the cow. The other members are counting on our success. However, this Tien Zoben is not dead. The mummy continued to speak in odd language. There's no need to force her. Can she be rendered incapable of resistance? Dr. Victor said. Easy. The mummy stretched out a steel belt and suddenly hit Tien Zoben's neck, causing Xiaoan to faint. He then wrapped Tien Zoben firmly and threw it aside. After looking at Tien Zoben unwillingly, he quietly left here. To complete the plan that is great enough to go down in history. In the hallway, Mark is still walking. When he was about to reach the end, he suddenly stepped on the solace of his feet, and the whole person ran forward and fell to the ground. Whoops. What's going on here? Mark sat on the ground hard, rubbed his head, and looked at the place where he stepped on the solace of his feet. It was a pothole, about the size of a basketball, round, with cracks all around. It's not so much a pothole, it's a fist mark. Some monster punched the ground with its fist. Did the ground crack? Mark held his chin in his hand, speculating like this. Crushed. At this time, I don't know where it is, but there has been a dull sound, very dull, like it came from some room to the corridor. Mark followed the sound, quickly found the location of the room, and slowly opened the door. At the same time, in front of the spaceship, Dr. Victor took a deep breath, looked at the mummy who was coming, and said, now everything is ready, you can send Neo Emozhao to shoot the spaceship. Let's go up together. Good. The mummy nodded lightly, and said with a somewhat excited expression on her face, you can't do it. A inside voice sounded. By the side, the boss of the TNG organization, the Eternal Warrior, came slowly, holding a majestic samurai sword. A convoy stopped behind them. One after another, warriors from the Heavenly Secret Organization emerged from the convoy. TNG organization, I didn't expect you group of shitposters to come. Dr. Victor's face suddenly gloomy. Shit? We're here to protect the world. The Eternal Warrior said solemnly, the first Eternal Warrior, in order to protect the Earth, inhabited a terrifying biological dragon, became a dragon slayer, and founded our celestial organization. Today, I will kill you monsters. Dr. Victor said with a smile, you guys say it so nicely, you say it's for the Earth, but in fact it's just to realize your own ambitions? Shut your stinky mouth. The Eternal Warrior raised the black knife and charged towards Dr. Victor, while the mummy jumped high, waving 10 thin belts while spinning and landing, like a spinning top, instantly hitting all the warriors around. Back off! The two sides fought in an instant. Right here, Mark stood at the door of a room, lying on the door, listening to the movement inside the house with his ears. Broken pieces. The people in the room tapped the floor from time to time, making a burst of 947 noises. The purpose was to let people outside hear it, but he seemed to be worried about attracting the attention of the enemy, so he acted very restrained. After thinking for a moment, Mark took a deep breath and pushed the door in. It was a lounge he entered. There is an experimental table in the room. On the experimental table are Dr. Victor's work card and some of his daily necessities. There are bookshelves not far away, and there are various books on the bookshelves. And on the bed next to it, Xiao Chen's limbs were bound by an iron chain, which was locked at the four corners, like a kind of punishment. The 4 iron chains were far away, and the binding was so strong that Xiao Chen couldn't even struggle. There's no way to find a point of strength. And his Ektuwa divine sword is constantly being swiped from the sky, smashed to the ground, swiped again, and smashed to the ground. The sword that looks very light is actually very heavy, making a landing sound. Xiao Chen, you are here. Mark was very pleasantly surprised when he saw Xiao Chen. After locking the door, he quickly walked to Xiao Chen's side. Great, Grandpa, you're finally here. I wanted to speak, but the voice couldn't get out, so I had to resort to this. Xiao Chen looked at Mark helplessly, and said, I also only have the trick of another dimension, which can be used. Summon the sword first, throw it on the ground, then take it back, and throw it again. Same as card bug. As long as the range is not too far away from him, you can take it back into another dimension. Can't get it off. Mark tried to find a knife and a screwdriver from the room, but he still couldn't shake the chain, so he had to look at the watch on Xiao Chen's wrist. Xiao Chen, can you turn into a four-handed tyrant? Call out. The Excalibur came to Mark. Grandpa, pick up the divine sword and cut the chain, you can do it. Xiao Chen encouraged. Good. Mark took a deep breath, adjusted his mentality, and held the Excalibur in his hand. His firm heart was shaken by a mob mood, but he was unmoved at all, his eyes were still so persistent. At the same time that the exhaustion was swept away, Mark felt that his strength was greatly increased. Look at the sword. With a low voice from Mark, the Ikua divine sword swung down, 1 chain, 2, and after a few slashes, all 4 chains broke. Xiao Chen quickly retracted his limbs, constantly twisting his joints, moving his stiff body, and then took the Ikua Excalibur tile and loosened the chain on his hand. Ho, this side effect is indeed a bit scary. And without the divine sword, Mark, despite resisting his demonic nature, was still half knelt on the ground, sweating profusely. Grandpa, Xiao Chen asked seriously, did you encounter Xiaoben when you came by? I can only be sure that Xiaoben was the first to get separated from you. When I found you, I had already gone to the end. I didn't see Xiaoben, she should be the second to get separated. Mark said. Really? Xiao Chen frowned worriedly. At this time, Mark couldn't help but ask, Xiao Chen, how can you be caught by the enemy? This is rare. The loss of darkness, plus that guy was too smart at that time, he mastered my information and didn't give me a chance to resist. Xiao Chen closed his chest, and his body was still aching. Only, the monster's punch did not hit him in the head, but hit the ground beside him. In the end, while complaining, he dragged the half-conscious Xiao Chen into the room, tied it up, and left. Not an incurable person. In other words, there is still some humanity. Xiao Chen, I think that the monster that attacked you is most likely changed by Dr. Widow, because this is his laboratory, unless he is killed. Mark looked at the work permit on the table and said, one of Dr. Victor's diaries was there, so Mark picked it up curiously and slowly opened the first few pages. The first few pages seemed to have been written down half a year ago, just writing about the weather, mood, and what to do today, to form a line. Very brief. Occasionally, Dr. Victor's diary is not just a sentence, but with his only friend, to get together, drink and watch the favorite aerospace model together. They are also engaged in the research of rocket industry. It can also be seen from the diary that Dr. Victor cherishes this only friend, who have been friends for many years. As Mark gradually turned to the next few pages, Dr. Victor, who has always been taciturn, spoke more. The weather is sunny, 30 degrees. Today I met a cow. He took me to a factory and gave me a strange thing. I don't know what it was. I didn't feel it was a good thing, but I didn't dare to resist him. He later let me back. Next. Below this diary, there are a few lines of crooked words, which are like worms crawling, so Mark has a lot of effort to decipher. I feel terrible. I found my cells were mutating with a microscope. What's wrong with me? Who can help me? Obtaining superpowers is not happiness. Happiness is only relative to the protagonists, and for an ordinary person, this is a pain. Mark turned to the next page, and his mood sank. Next page. I mutated. I became a monster. The monster was very strong. I sat on the sofa like I always did, but the sofa collapsed. I studied my body. My body can control electricity, and it has terrible physical fitness is the pinnacle that is difficult for human beings to reach. I can become like this, save people, and become a superhero. When he got here, Dr. Widow, like all those who had just acquired superpowers, was excited, even looking forward to the future, and determined to do something different. Mark turned to the next page. Damn. Dr. Victor, next time you write an essay, can you segment it? It's maddening to see so many words not segmented. Xiao Chen also watched quietly. Today I rescued a girl who was in a car accident, and the girl thanked me very much. Her parents and passersby were frightened by me, and I clearly heard a person next to me say, maybe this guy is the culprit. Does he like this child? Who knows what terrible things can happen to someone like this? Although that girl is still grateful to me, I know that when she grows up and integrates into this world, she will lose her previous innocence and, like those people, will be afraid of me, and then let this fear turn into anger and let her embolden yourself. Dr. Victor's heroic deeds are not as glorious as Xiao Chen's. He also made a logical analysis of this, full of pessimism. Of course, children are the most naive group in the world. But when they grow up, they will still be the same people. Keep watching, don't worry. Mark said to Xiao Chen specially. Xiao Chen was indeed a little impatient, but he still suppressed his impatience and continued to watch. The next few pages are actually blank. It was not until Mark turned over 6 pages and found that the words on a new page penetrated directly through the paper, which was enough to prove how angry Dr. Victor was. I told my friend about me. My friend was tolerant of me at first and willing to help me, until he saw that there were aliens attacking people and that I could mutate into a horrible alien. He betrayed me, and I was wanted. Dr. Victor's only friend betrayed him, not so much betrayal, but rather that aliens and ordinary earthlings are not destined to be together at all. The worst thing happened. Mark muttered to himself, it's hard and easy to destroy a person, and a few bad things are enough to destroy a lot of people. Some people become villains, not what they want to be, for flowers. These words made Xiao Chen a little bit incomprehensible, but made his adult thinking a little guilty. Mark turned the page again. Dr. Vic continued to write a new diary. I met the cow, and a werewolf, and they told me that I was a mutant. After the special ore they experimented with, the creature will have 3 manifestations, 1, and nothing. It didn't happen, outright elimination, or negative mutation. Second, mutation is successful, forward mutation, but you can't maintain this mutation state, you need to take elements to stimulate mutation. Third, perfect mutation, you can mutate without eating elements, and the role of elements is even greater. Used to enhance, but not too much. Xiao Chen's eyes lit up. This is the information he wants. These are the 3 possibilities that will arise from eating the ding element. Wrote it here, but it's gone. Mark turned the page again. I got it. A great plan, Dark Age, is to put a lot of calcium into a spaceship, let the spaceship burst into the atmosphere with the spike, and at the same time, the people of the great organization that implements the plan will distribute in various regions, help to release the ding element, let the ding element flow into the atmosphere, and make the whole world mutate into new creatures. Only if everyone is an anomaly, I am not an anomaly, and I can restore my human identity. Even those who have not successfully mutated will be regarded as eliminated products and become that anomaly. This is the world I want. A terrifying conspiracy that could change the world completely appeared in front of Xiao Chen and Mark. Dark Age. This was their first exposure to the organization's program. 100 million Grandpa, shall we go? Let's intercept the spaceship first. Xiao Chen couldn't hold back when he saw this. Mark counted the time and said, don't worry, Xiao Chen, if the spaceship starts, it will have a terrible impact, and we will feel it. And according to my estimation, it will take 10 more years for the spaceship to start. Minutes, we still have time. Everything is under his control. Xiao Chen also understood why Mark was in such a hurry, because he was just right. #3. Xiao Chen looked at the diary. Mark turned the page again. Journal. Came to the next page. As a member of the September 47 and Zoo organizations, I joined this flight base. Relying on my excellent professional knowledge, I improved the rocket. To realize the greatest plan, is it not a kind of happiness in human history? Arriving here, Dr. Victor was obviously a little stunned. Xiao Chen also understood why he wanted to hit Tien Zoben in the first place. At his level, if he doesn't directly become a lunatic, he is considered to be mentally strong. Huh? The handwriting here is just dry. Mark turned to the next page. He just looked at the handwriting, touched it again, and quickly judged it. Did you just write it? It should have been written when I was in a coma. Xiao Chen immediately deduced. I hit the child and tied him, but I couldn't do it. Although I no longer identify with my own identity, my sense of morality has always bound me, which is the greatest weakness of human beings. If Janice she and they really killed those little children, then, after the big plan is realized, I will kill them with my own hands. Because I just want to realize the great plan and don't want to harm people. These are the last few lines. Journal down this page. It shows the path of a genius with high IQ, from obtaining superpowers, confused and afraid, to excitement, despair, and finally to madness. Grandpa Mark seems to have always disliked killing these psychic villains, except for alien enemies. Because he always wants to solve some deep-seated problems. He let me go, I owe him a life. Xiao Chen clenched his hands, took a deep breath, and said, but I will stop his plan, then knock him down, and then tell him what to do. Neither am I haven't experienced anything bad. In a previous timeline, Xiao Chen saw his family members die one by one. Alien heroes will go astray because of the malice of some people. Not to mention Dr. Victor. Xiao Chen, this matter is left to you. I'll find Xiaoan and find a way to help Zoben. Mark looked at Xiao Chen with firmness in his eyes. $7. Xiao Chen nodded slowly and walked out firmly. They are also very clear. If the Dark Era plan is to be realized, he must go to the launch pad and wait, so after he walked out of the room, he ran all the way to the launch pad. Monument. A samurai fell to the ground. The mummy with purple stripes all over the body finally knocked the eternal samurai to the ground with Dr. Victor. It's not fair, you are relying on this, using this kind of thing to improve your strength and defeat us. The eternal warrior fell to the ground and protested loudly. Dr. Victor just looked at him coldly. Do you think Ding element has no side effects? Mutating genes again and again will shorten our lifespan, especially excessive strengthening? Don't try to stop our plan, the spaceship is about to launch now. Cough cough. The eternal warrior fell to the ground, his face ashen. Kill the king and lose the bandit, kill me. Boom. Dr. Victor came over and slammed the eternal samurai out with a ruthless punch. After rolling a dozen laps, he stopped and stunned the latter. Damn guy. He walked over again, unceremoniously staggering the bones of the eternal warrior's arms, making a crisp sound, and then stopped. He's already a waste. The mummy also withdrew the terrifying look. He didn't want to kill a waste. Dr. Victor walked back, looked at the spacecraft, and took a deep breath. This is the end that hinders our plan. Boom. At this time, a burst of flames began to emerge from the bottom of the spaceship. The spaceship is about to start. Dr. Victor's expression became excited, and the excitement in his eyes could not be concealed. Your plan won't come true. Not far away. A voice came. Mummy and Dr. Vito turned around abruptly and saw Xiao Chen standing there with a dignified expression. You didn't kill him. The 4.5 mummy asked Dr. Victor excitedly. Dr. Victor just had an ugly face, and clenched his hands tightly. Why are you forcing me? Obviously I have tried my best to keep you from escaping, and I have to come to die. Sorry, my vitality is relatively tenacious, and I can't die. Also, I know that you are in this state, and it is impossible to reason. Let's beat you guys first. After speaking, Xiao Chen slowly raised his watch and patted it. The same terrifying and bizarre vampire king as Dr. Victor, Janusi, and the others, appeared in front of the two of them, like the same kind. Is this my own? Feeling the same dark aura, the mummy was obviously stunned, a little surprised by Xiao Chen's transformation. Call out? The next moment, the vampire king appeared behind the mummy like lightning, and a palm like a sharp blade swept across the mummy's neck. Click. In an instant, the sword-like light blasted the mummy's head out. Surprisingly, the underside of his head was also bandaged, and he couldn't see the flesh and blood at all, just like a paper figurine. Steal, sneak attack? The mummy's head fell to the ground, looking at the vampire king in disbelief and fear. Although it was a sneak attack, hitting him was a surprise. But if you play head-on, it only takes a few rounds, and he will die. This is the same terrifying combat power as the giant wolf, the power of crushing level. You're not dead. Your body is interesting, let me collect your DNA first. The vampire king came to the mummy indifferently, grabbed his head and touched the pattern in front of him. In an instant, Omnitrix scanned the mummy's DNA and recorded the mummy's DNA. The mummy had a grim face and tried to bite the vampire king's skin with a big mouth, but was taken away by the vampire king with disgust. You can get away. He raised the mummy's head high, learned the stance of playing baseball, and flew the head hundreds of meters, even more than 1,000 meters away, and the mummy's body ran directly towards the outside. It seemed he couldn't find his body in a few hours. So strong. Dr. Victor looked at the vampire king with fear. He no longer held back his hand, and took advantage of the moment when the vampire king attacked, punched the vampire king. Boom! His heavy punch was like the sneak attack on Xiao Chen before, and the sneak attack was successful again. Only this time, the vampire king just swayed his body, then steadied his body coldly, and pushed Dr. Victor's heavy punch away casually. I don't want to fight you now. Don't want to fight me, you. What do you mean? Dr. Victor looked a little unbelievable. Boom! The vampire king jumped in place, flew to the front of the spaceship, smashed a glass with one punch, and flew in. Quickly. Shhhhhhh. One by one, the nail elements flew to the side of the spaceship, and gradually piled up into hills. He's converting all the ding elements out, so my plan can't be realized. Dr. Widow looked very distressed. The window flew out and hit the ground hard. Exactly. In front of Dr. Victor. Dr. Widow clenched his fists, ready to fight hard, or even be killed. Under his unbelievable eyes, Xiao Chen patted the pattern with his palm and returned to his human state, his most powerless state. Why did you choose to become human? Dr. Victor asked. Xiao Chen said lightly, it's very simple, I just want to use this state to defeat you, and I don't want anyone to interfere in this duel. The human state, the state of mutation now, is the most perfect. Humans are just the most powerless race. Dr. Widow was convinced of this and said viciously, taste. Xiao Chen's palm saw the Excalibur sword. He carried the sword behind his back and clenched his fists. With a crisp sound of bang, some of his power seemed to be released, and his whole body instantly exuded purple light, looking domineering and awe-inspiring. That's an aura that's close to the power of darkness. Dr. Victor's face became surprised, and he looked at Xiao Chen with green and white. Take it. Xiao Chen leaned down slightly. Taste. In an instant, he rushed to the front of Dr. Vito, and Dr. Vito threw a fist at him, but Xiao Chen slid past Dr. Vito with a shovel. In 1947, Dr. Vito's punch was so powerful that he directly missed it, so that his center of gravity was unstable. Your punching power is too heavy, so the lower plate is very unstable. Although the strength is okay, the shortcomings are too obvious, and it is not even as good as Yunushiksi. Xiao Chen stood behind Dr. Victor and commented calmly, "Stop talking nonsense." Annoyed, Dr. Vito stood firm, turned around and kicked hard. The terrifying roundhouse kick struck with a terrifying force, but was easily dodged by Xiao Chen by squatting down. Octopus collapse? He moved straight forward again, but that small fist was filled with a flood of force, hitting the abdomen of Dr. Victor. Puff. In an instant, Dr. Victor's body bent, his face was full of pain, and he fell to one knee on the ground. Yes, damn it. Taste? Xiao Chen didn't give Dr. Weiduo a chance, and slowly lowered the Excalibur and aimed it at Dr. Weiduo's neck. You lost? Cough cough. Dr. Victor coughed, and showed a pale smile on his face. Xiao Chen, you should join us. However, you should not experience the feeling of being an alien. After all, even if you become an alien people, and your family are inseparable from you, you also saw my previous transformation. That transformation is called a vampire, and it can also be called the Vampire King. He used to be a misunderstood existence, but I made the Vampire King become one of the alien heroes by myself. You can too. Xiao Chen spoke calmly, with a very firm tone. Dr. Victor looked through, smiled and shook his head. No, Xiao Chen, you can say these words because everything you do is almost perfect, and you have to make sure that you don't make mistakes that day. Moreover, your true identity has never been exposed to the public, and when everyone knows that the aliens are yours, just as they know the fact that I am also human, then we will let us fall into a doomed situation? Neither aliens humans, and we who are not earthlings, are the unfortunate existences on both sides? Only when everyone is like this is the most fair. These words made Xiao Chen a little silent. That timeline, even though he's gone, but still fresh in my memory. But he could never be as extreme and stubborn as Dr. Victor, because he was accompanied by his family, friends, brothers, and pointed out, his journey was smooth, which made everyone envied. In comparison, Dr. Victor's fate was much more tragic. Just as he was thinking, boom, there was a huge force behind him, because it was a sudden attack, so Xiao Chen didn't react. He was knocked unconscious on the ground, and the light on his body quickly dimmed. Dot. The Eternal Samurai retracted his hand sword, showed a sinister smile, and raised his samurai sword. You people really ignore my existence. Dr. Victor, we might as well cooperate. You do your plan, I come and kill Xiao Chen. Dr. Victor was stunned for a moment, and then his face showed a gloomy color. Eternal Warrior, don't think I don't know, you just want to attack me when I go to adjust the spaceship. It's boring to say it too clearly, even if we are both enemies, it's still better than Xiao Chen as your enemy? At least you have a better chance of winning, isn't it? The Eternal Warrior took a step forward slowly and asked seriously. Seeing that Dr. Victor fell into contemplation, he no longer hesitated, and with the thought of cutting the mess with a quick knife, he raised his samurai sword and slashed towards Xiao Chen, cut the grass to get rid of the roots. Stop! Dr. Victor saw this scene, he didn't know how. He subconsciously threw a heavy punch, hit the chest of the Eternal Warrior again, and directly blasted the Eternal Warrior out, fell on the open space not far away, and was enveloped by purple light. Damn, I still can't do it. Dr. Victor clenched his hands tightly, his face was full of cold sweat, and he was panting heavily. Eternal Warrior, I want to kill you more than Xiao Chen. Die. I don't eat a toast and eat a penalty drink. Xiao Chen's previous state was exhausting his physical strength. When I attacked him, he was already quite weak. If I don't kill him at this time, I won't have a chance in the future. The Eternal Warrior said angrily, but his eyes slowly fell on Ding Element, who was beside him. That is the Ding Element piled up into hills. Although this ore has been researched within the TNG organization, although it can make people genetically mutated, it may also fail. Even if it is successfully enhanced, people's lifespan will be greatly reduced. But he needs strength. Boom! The Eternal Warrior directly lifted the mask, turned his back to Dr. Victor, picked up the nail elements and swallowed them directly into his stomach. One piece, another piece. Not good. Dr. Victor's complexion changed instantly, and he ran straight towards the Eternal Warrior. You can't let him take so much. What a terrifying power. The eyes of the Eternal Warrior became happy, and he could feel that when this strange outer space element was swallowed, it did not get stuck in his throat, but, Niu Emo Zhao, melted into his bloodline and genes. This moment, his face gradually grew pale blue scales, covering his eyes and everything except Pakistan. When Dr. Victor rushed behind the Eternal Warrior, click click, his armor began to fall off. The whole body is covered with azure scales, and the muscles of the body are indestructible as if injected with gas. With the scales, it looks like a terrifying weirdo. Call out. The most terrifying is, a pair of wings grew directly behind the Eternal Warrior, slowly unfolding. This is. Dr. Victor looked at the Eternal Warrior in disbelief. Could it be that after the first generation of Eternal Warriors slaughtered the dragon, they also obtained the blood of the dragon? No wonder, no wonder. After I became the Eternal Warrior, the organization gave me that thing. It turned out to be giving me a genetic bloodline. The Eternal Warrior looked at his hands in disbelief, and murmured in excitement. Bang bang bang, Dr. Victor punched and punched the Eternal Samurai frantically from front to back, left and right, and it was useless. The Eternal Samurai didn't move, just excited and looked at everything on his body with excitement. Crack! Another punch. Dr. Victor's heavy punch slammed into the face of the Eternal Samurai, causing his cheeks to slant to the side. Success. There was a look of surprise on his face. Next second, the Eternal Warrior's face slowly looked towards Dr. Vito. The eyes full of murderous intent made Dr. Vito in a trance. A palm fell on Dr. Victor's left shoulder, and a terrifying giant force came. Dr. Victor's face was in pain, and his whole body was half kneeling on the ground as if he had lost all strength. Trembling. Rumble. The distant spaceship began to gradually burst into flames, and 947 rose a little bit. Let you dedicate yourself to your favorite aerospace career. The Eternal Warrior showed a slight sneer, lifted Dr. Victor, and went in the direction of the spaceship. Boom! Dr. Victor crashed into a big hole in the spaceship and fell directly into it. Immediately after the spacecraft started to take off, the speed was unprecedentedly fast. With the improvement of Dr. Victor, the spacecraft took off really fast, and it did not fall. I told the flight director a long time ago that there will be no problem with my spacecraft. Trust me now. Dr. Victor firmly grasped the facilities of the spaceship with both hands, so as not to be blown away by the wind blowing in from the hole. The ascent of the spacecraft was getting faster and faster, and it soon broke through the atmosphere. Near the atmosphere, countless purple thunders gathered together, like thunderstorms, spectacular and gorgeous. Dr. Victor slumped on the ground, watching the thrilling and brilliant purple thunderstorm along the whole, BGEF, purple thunderbolt. The appearance of dark creatures will cause this extreme weather. Presumably all members of the organization are ambushing in this area. At least this city is to allow thunder to shred the spaceship and let Ding element explode. Pity. Impossible. Dr. Widow regrets that. He never understood why there were so many aliens on the Earth. What is the truth in the dark? From the time he first came into contact with Ding element, to now, it has only been a few months of events, and nothing can be studied at all. Gradually, the purple thunderstorm seemed to notice the spaceship and devoured it towards it. It was specially designed to cancel the lightning protection system of the spacecraft, and I didn't expect to kill myself. Dr. Victor showed a wry smile. The thunderstorm devoured the spaceship and completely tore it apart, and Dr. Victor was buried in the thunderstorm. This city. All the members lurking in the corner looked at the sky with big eyes and small eyes, looking forward to what would happen, but there was no change. Let's spread out. The plan has failed. Damn, I knew that person was unreliable and should be replaced. What are you doing behind the scenes? Only he can sneak in, and there can't be too many people, or the Heavenly Guild will intervene. One by one, the dark creatures left here in a hurry, because this terrible thunderstorm will definitely attract the attention of many people, and their organizations still try their best to hide, so as not to be discovered by the Heavenly Union. The Heavenly Secret Organization, the Zoo. The reason why these forces only dare to hold back secretly and pop up from time to time is because they are too crazy and will be severely suppressed by the Heavenly Organization. Only Mohath dared to act like that. Call. The Eternal Warrior looked at the splendor of that moment, showed a cold smile, turned around and looked at Xiao Chen, to the point of your death. The original position where Xiao Chen fell. But no one was there. Die. From the side of the Eternal Warrior came a cold low whine. The Vampire King opened his palm, and 5 sharp nails were like sharp claws, tearing towards the Eternal Warrior. Click. When his claws and scales interlaced, there was a crisp collision sound, sparks flew out, and the Eternal Warrior took a few steps back in pain. His scales were actually cracked several times, and blood seeped out. What a terrifying defense, the Vampire King said in surprise and disbelief. After waking up, he quickly moved to the side of the Eternal Warrior, and made this move. The damage is still not strong enough. Is this your trick? It's too weak. The Eternal Samurai instantly gained confidence and flew towards the Vampire King. Call out? Only momentarily. The Vampire King leaned on his side and easily avoided the Eternal Samurai's tricks. Next, no matter how fierce the Eternal Samurai's tricks attacked, he could easily dodge it without any difficulty. It seems. He showed a cold smile and said sarcastically, your genetic mutation power has all been added to your defense. Speed and strength are all inferior to Maha's. Can't beat it. The Eternal Warrior quickly judged. He stared at the pile of Ding elements, and flew directly over. Moths to the fire. The Vampire King showed a cold expression, but he didn't stop the Eternal Samurai. The Eternal Warrior quickly found several pieces of Ding elements and swallowed them desperately. The scales on his whole body instantly turned into purple scales, which was extremely brilliant. Ha ha ha, you are giving me a chance to kill you. He was extremely excited, opened his mouth to the Vampire King, and instantly released a huge purple energy wave. Energy absorption. The Vampire King said simply, raised his hand slightly, and the energy wave was lifted into the air. Blow. The Vampire King raised the energy wave into the air, and with a slight retraction of his palms, the purple energy wave gradually condensed into a spherical energy, and the compressed energy was even more powerful. This is. The pupil of the Eternal Warrior reflected the light with paint. How can you control the energy? Die. The Vampire King said coldly, put down his hands gently, and the energy wave fell towards the Eternal Warrior with a devastating power. Taste? In an instant, the Vampire King moved out dozens of meters away, hundreds of meters away, widening the distance. And the Eternal Warrior also spread his wings and flew upwards desperately, but the Vampire King manipulated the energy of the autumn outfit, and he turned a corner and flew towards the Eternal Warrior in the sky. No, not good. The Eternal Warrior looked at the flying energy ball, his pupils were filled with fear, his speed was even faster, and his wings became more and more skilled. But this time, the scales on his body are degrading little by little, and his wings are gradually weakening. It is the performance of mutation ability, weakening? The Vampire King showed a cold smile. It seems that this guy can't even control his own mutation. Bayu? He didn't laugh for long, and it was time for his transformation to come to an end. It seems. Xiao Chen reluctantly looked at the small broken watch in the cooling state. 2 transformations will consume a lot of energy than normal transformations, and I only transformed in less than 10 minutes in total. But the spherical energy in the sky continued to fall upwards, and the Eternals roared in fear because of the degeneration of the wings, and the whole person actually fell down and collided with the energy ball. But a dozen steel elements superimposed, and then compressed by the Vampire King, the Eternal Warrior and Xiao Chen. They have far underestimated the true power of this energy ball. Boom! At the moment when the energy wave collided with the entity, it quickly expanded into a semicircle with a diameter of several tens of meters, swallowing the figure of the Eternal Warrior, and then there was a deafening sound. Not only the place with a diameter of tens of meters, but the ground within a few hundred meters was destroyed by a violent explosion, and the hard concrete ground was directly shattered. Xiao Chen was enveloped in it for a moment, and subconsciously raised his wrist to block in front of him, not even having time to release his potential. His clothes seemed to be shaking constantly, and his figure ran back and forth, unable to even maintain his balance. The worst thing is, the other ding elements within the range also seemed to have caused a chain reaction and began to merge into this explosion one by one. The explosion fluctuations gradually began to color, turning into dark purple gunpowder smoke, completely shrouding the launch site of several hundred meters. From the outsider's point of view, this area looks like a separate world, full of terrifying extreme weather. This is Mark, Tien Zoben, and Tien Zoben. The 3 of them dragged a wolf and a cow out of the research institute slowly, looking at the launch site in the distance. Their faces were full of shock. What a terrifying power this is. They didn't even dare to get close. Once they got close, they would be dragged in, and they would die without a place to be buried. Even the ground under their feet was emitting a slight tremor, which must have come from there. A full minute passed. The light and explosions were gradually consumed. The formerly empty launch site is now a devastated land. Broken soil and cracked cement are mixed together, and the launch pad is even more ashes. Ask for flowers. Xiao Chen stood on the ground full of scars, holding the small broken watch on his wrist. His face was a little dull. Xiaoan and Zoben came running, and he could see their figures running over, but he couldn't hear the slightest sound in his ears, only a humming sound, and his mind was a little dizzy. The explosive force was terrifying. Broken. Just as Tien Zoben and Tien Xiaoan arrived, Xiao Chen fell in front of them. Xiao Chen, are you okay? Tien Zoben was startled and said anxiously, this explosion must have hurt Xiao Chen. I didn't expect him to be inside. However, in this explosion, Xiao Chen was not seriously injured. It is a fortune of misfortune. Tien Xiaoan checked Xiao Chen's heartbeat and breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at the small broken watch on Xiao Chen's wrist again. Effect? The hourglass pattern on the small broken watch suddenly changed from green, to red, to orange, and finally back to normal. Is this watch exhausted? She tilted her head in confusion, didn't care, and held Xiao Chen with Zoben and walked towards Mark. The people from the Heavenly Union arrived early, captured Yanussi and the Bull Demon King together, and escorted them back. And Mark and the others drove Xiao Chen to the hospital, where he was hospitalized. Tinnitus, he still has a little concussion. My God, how could such a thing happen to a child? The doctor said the diagnosis, said in surprise, and scolded Mark, how did you act like a grandfather? Excuse me. Looking at Xiao Chen on the hospital bed, Mark was full of self-blame. Please pay more attention. The morning light shone through the flawless white window, and the warm feeling made Xiao Chen wake up from his dream. Bright sunshine. He squinted and turned to look away, only to find himself in a single ward. Completely unknown place. Mark leaned back on the bed, resting on his own hands, and fell asleep like that, apparently sleepy. Tien Zoben fell on a table and fell asleep. This is... Xiao Chen subconsciously wanted to ask aloud, but looking at the two sleeping, he forcibly suppressed his own thoughts and quickly recalled them. In that explosion, his 947 lifted the small broken watch. The small broken watch had very powerful energy and helped him resist most of the impact, but he was still traumatized. However, the situation is much better than I imagined. At least the ears don't buzz. Xiao Chen, are you awake? The door of the ward was pushed open. Tien Zoben came over with breakfast, and a tired smile appeared on his face when he saw Xiao Yu. Xiao Chen looked at Tien Zoben. Even though his heart was full of distress, he still compared his fingers and asked her to whisper, "Hey, good." Tien Zoben also noticed the two sleeping, and quickly restrained his smile, and carefully placed breakfast on the table, which were all burritos. Pity. The hot steam from the burrito floated across Mark's face. He was very sensitive to the surrounding environment. He slowly opened his eyes and wiped them. Xiaoan, did you buy breakfast? His face was startled, and he suddenly noticed that Xiao Chen in front of him woke up, and his face became happy. Smell good. Tien Zoben was awakened by the scent and opened his eyes. Now, all three are awake. They hurriedly called a nurse to diagnose Xiao Chen, and the nurse said incredulously, "Here, this child's tinnitus and slight concussion are all healed. It's amazing. How can he recover so quickly, if there is no accident, and will be discharged from the hospital soon?" Very good. Tien Zoben jumped happily for a moment. Rest well. After the nurse warned, she turned and left. Xiao Chen, isn't there any discomfort now? Is your body better? The three of them were directly next to each other and asked each and everyone with great concern. Xiao Chen frowned slightly and said, "The bad thing is, of course, I'm very hungry. I'll brush my teeth and wash my face first, and then have breakfast." Scare me. Mark patted his chest. Tien Zoben patted Xiao Chen on the shoulder angrily, but all of them had smiles on their faces. After washing up, they started to eat breakfast, a burrito feast. Sizzle. During this period, from time to time, the broken watch on Xiao Chen's wrist burst out with sparks, as if it was about to explode. Huh. Mark looked at the electric sparks on the small broken watch suspiciously, a little wary in his heart. What happened to the Omnitrix? Why is the sparks flashing all the time? It may be because Xiao Chen said what happened when the explosion happened. Mark's face was tense and he said, that might be because that energy source is too terrifying. What effect did it have on Omnitrix? He also can't blame Xiao Chen, because in that case, people can't react at all. In other words, if it weren't for the small broken watch, Xiao Chen might have been seriously injured. After eating breakfast, Xiao Chen put his hands down, put them on the bed, and said with a smile, "It's all right, put. Taste." The quilt on his body was instantly lifted, his right hand was raised high, and the Omnitrix on his wrist flashed a violent red light. That light like a shock wave actually affected Xiao Chen's body and flew to the ceiling. Mark's mind went blank. His body subconsciously grabbed Xiao Chen's feet and hugged him tightly, so as not to let Xiao Chen hit the ceiling. Bang bang bang. There was a knock on the door, and it was the nurse's words, "I'm here to check the children again." Soft, wait. Xiao Chen has something to do. Tien Zoben hurriedly blocked the door, blocked it with his body, and said vaguely, "Our family has some whispers to say, come back later. He's not seriously ill." The nurse outside thought silently and left. Taste. Soon after, the small broken watch on Xiao Chen's wrist stopped shining, and he fell 4.5 on the bed, looking like he was still in shock. Mark sat there wearily and took a deep breath. Xiao Chen, it seems that Omnitrix really has a big problem. Xiao Chen looked at the small broken watch on his wrist, and saw that the hourglass with the DNA logo changed from green to orange. His whole body instantly stood up. Small break the watch, enter the self-destruct mode. On a distant ship, Omnitrix is about to explode? What's going on? The diamond face showed a shocked expression, and the detector on the wrist made a violent noise. Mark looked at Xiao Chen's wrist, but he noticed that the skin on his wrist had dense goosebumps. He looked elsewhere and found that Xiao Chen had goosebumps all over his body, showing an unbelievable look. He had never seen Xiao Chen so nervous. "Xiao Chen, what happened?" Mark asked hurriedly, his tone solemn. Xiao Chen took a deep breath. "I used Ziokaibing to study the small broken watch before. This color, and the light just now, indicate that the small broken watch has entered the self-destruction mode." Self-destruction mode? The three of them spoke in unison, their eyes filled with panic and anxiety. Isn't Xiao Chen finished? Self-destruction, it should take a few days. The self-destruction energy is enough to destroy the user. Xiao Chen said solemnly. Also, every time I use a small broken watch, the self-destruction event will be earlier. I'll help you contact the people from the Tiangong Union now. Mark set off immediately, walked 16 to the toilet next to him and made a phone call. Tien Zoben and Tien Xiaoan sat next to Xiao Chen, and Tien Zoben leaned against Xiao Chen's chest with his elbow. "Well, Xiao Chen, you are a lucky person, and you will be fine. Wait for Xiao Chen to break his watch. After the matter is settled, I will give you my favorite violent sumo game to play, lend you to play." Good. Xiao Chen forced a smile and nodded absently. After a while, Mark came out with an ugly expression. "The people in the Tianhui Guild don't know how to deal with the Omnitrix thing. It's too bad. We don't know who the producer is." Xiao Chen clasped his hands tightly. He was very clear in his heart. The producer is exactly Asmus, but in the original book, it was Asmus who was brought by Diamond and Zoben to find it. In other words, without diamonds, they would not have the chance to contact Asmus at all. Although the plot has been changed a lot by me, some things still happen by coincidence, so it should come. Xiao Chen thought uncomfortably. "Well, I have a solution." Tien Zoben's face became firm. "Xiao Chen, when the little broken watch is about to explode, you transform into a thunderbolt, and the thunderbolt can resist the power of the explosion. Then what if he is an alien forever?" Tien Xiaoan immediately objected. "It's better than being taken away by a small broken watch," Tien Zoben retorted. Xiao Chen's eyes were a little firm, and he said, "Have you forgotten that I still have the Excalibur? I won't do anything to the little broken watch unless I have to." "Not really. Then you can only survive by breaking your arm. Now they just need to be patient and wait. Grandpa, leave the hospital first, find a deserted place, we have to study the small broken watch." Thinking of this, Xiao Chen immediately got up and said to Mark. Mark helped him go through the discharge procedures, and everyone got into the old car and drove to a nearby wilderness to stop. During this period, Xiao Chen did a lot of research on small broken watches, but he didn't succeed. He also tried to transform into a little surprise soldier, but the state of the little broken watch was very unstable. Every time he twisted the screen, a mess of electric sparks would jump out, and he couldn't specify a transformation at all. I'll help you see. Mark parked the car and walked to Xiao Chen's side. After a careful observation, he said, Xiao Chen, it's really not good. Sigh, although the mechanical prosthesis is not developed enough, you are still young, maybe in a decade or two, you will have it. Method. No. Another Xiao Chen automatically appeared in Zoben and Xiaoan's brains, and they all resisted. Look at it again, Xiao Chen continued to say affirmatively. He still has to wait. Research? The sky outside the window suddenly darkened. Okay. Mark, Tien Zoben, and others instantly looked out through the window. The blue sky outside was blocked by a huge spaceship, which could be said to block the sky and the sun. The spaceship was pitch black, much smaller than Mohatha's spaceship, but it was also considered lavish, and it stopped straight towards the open space beside the old car. Here, the enemy comes at this time? Too bad. Tien Zoben looked at the lucky magic pendant in front of him, and patted the magic pendant with some blame. Boom! Tien Zoben took a photo of the reactor directly and put on a steel suit. Xiao Chen didn't have time to dissuade him. He pushed the door and flew out. Alien monster, get out of here. Tien Zoben flew into the air, looking at the spaceship parked in the open space, full of anger. Broken. The hatch of the spaceship opened quickly, and it opened downwards. When it fell, it happened to be a downward staircase. Inside, came out a tall man in black armor. Don't eat and drink a toast. Tien Zoben's whole body flashed with terrifying electric sparks, and in an instant, he appeared in front of the tall man. So fast? The tall man ducked back slightly and made a surprised voice.
Hello, everyone. As we wrap up this video, I want to share a quick note. I have a Patreon account. If you'd like to support me and enjoy on-demand audiobooks, you can become a Patreon member. Alternatively, you can check out my Google Drive link, which has 500+ novel audiobooks available through my Ko-fi or Patreon shop. I appreciate your support.